Kang Taeson walked, looking around in search of one person. The monsters prowling around the ruined city irritated him. He called the fugitive a fool for having come so far. It was somewhere in Anyang, he noticed, looking at the monsters that were tearing apart a corpse right on the street. The monster's victim turned out to be the very fugitive he was looking for. He came closer to look, but he did not like the sight at all. The red-eyed horned monsters also noticed Kang Taeson. The system announced the number of each monster that paid attention to the player. Kang Taesong said he would like to turn off this feature. The monsters turned to Kang Taeson and rushed towards him with a loud howl. Kang Taeson turned to face them and did not move. There were 3 creatures, and they attacked at the same time. Kang Taeson quickly took out his weapon, ready to fight. He activated addition and multiplication under the system comments. The sharp sword in the player's hands cut through the monsters, and, having destroyed them, Kang Taeson could leave here. He returned home, hiding behind the high gates. A hand in a black glove loudly pounded on the gate. The gate swung open, and a guy in a protective suit stood on the threshold. It was the hard difficulty player Gum Young-gun, and he came to greet the returning Kang Taeson. Kang Taeson asked Gum Young-gun to send someone in his place next time, but he objected that there was no one else who could do it, and then asked what happened to the fugitive. Gum Young-gun was shocked at how quickly the fugitive died, considering he was a player on a high difficulty level. Kang Taesong clarified that he found 3 A-rank monsters near the corpse. Gum Young-gun was astonished by this news. A-rank monsters were comparable in strength to players on the high difficulty level. Such creatures nearby needed to be dealt with urgently, and Gum Young-gun asked Kang Taeson where exactly he had seen them. Kang Taeson said that there was no need to look for monsters, because he had already killed them. The friends went to the dining room, but Gum Young-gun did not stop his questions. Gum Young-gun couldn't believe that Kang Taeson was playing on a low difficulty level. Kang Taeson reminded that this is easy to verify, because he made his way through the labyrinth not alone, but with other players. Gum Young-gun said that all the low-level players except Kang Taeson either died immediately or later died from their wounds. It was a challenging terrain even for those playing at an average level, and for lower ranks it seemed deadly. Kang Taeson's strength amazed his friend, because he himself was inferior to him, despite his high level. Kang Taesong explained it all simply. The other players were simply too lazy. The friends reached a tent where they could get food. They were not happy with the ever-present potatoes, and Kang Taesong asked why they couldn't replace them with sweet potatoes or corn. Gum Young-gun explained that potatoes are cheaper, and distribution restrictions also play a role. Kang Taesong reminded that, as a low-level player, he didn't have a fast cultivation skill, and there was some kind of food everywhere he went. Someone's screams could be heard from outside. Someone was furiously accusing everyone of lying, and they were trying to calm him down. Kang Taeson assumed that the man had returned from a cleanup operation and that he would be arrested for disturbing the peace. But Gum Young-gun noticed that it was someone high level, which meant Kang Taeson would have to intervene. A moment later, Kang Taeson was indeed called to the scene of the brawl. The unknown young man refused to believe that what he saw was planet Earth, because the nightmare should have ended after the last raid. Out of anger, the stranger started a fight with everyone who tried to explain the situation to him, because he believed that they were playing a joke on him. Kang Taeson peeked out from the dining tent to see where Lee Tae-young was. Meanwhile, people continued to try to convince the stranger to listen and try to understand how much the world had changed while he was in the labyrinth. In response, well-wishers received only furious blows. Gum Young-gun wished his friend good luck as he headed off to deal with the problem. Kang Taeson threatened to kill him if he ate his potatoes before he returned. The conversation with the stranger began for Kang Taeson the same way as for the others, with an accusation of lying. The player who came out of the labyrinth was sure that he and those like him represented a real force, capable of dealing with a bunch of monsters that had attacked the Earth. Kang Taeson had seen many such self-confident people. Players after the labyrinth often found themselves unable to accept the new reality and went crazy. There was only one solution for such a case: to call the system to declare a duel. The stranger introduced himself. His name was Lee Jang-chun. He had seen Kang Taeson's messages in the general chat more than once and had an idea of who he was. Lee Jang-chong found it funny that a low-ranking player would challenge a high-ranking player, even though everyone knew that the difference in their strength was huge. "Shut your mouth and fight." Kang Taeson cut him off, "and then I will show you the real reality you are looking for." Lee Jang-chong took out his weapon and was ready to kill his opponent. He activated skills that made his blows especially powerful. His sword was ablaze with fire, and the crowd admired the skills this player possessed. The fight started quickly, and Lee Jang-chun delivered a brutal blow. This strike did not cause any damage to his opponent because Kang Taeson activated the first strike nullification. This ability was unknown to Lee Jung-chong, so he didn't understand why his powers weren't working. Now it was Kang Taeson's turn to strike. Lee Jang-chong activated Fortitude to reduce possible damage by half. Kang Taeson's skills allowed him to bypass this defense as well. The injuries Lee Jang-chun received were not that great, and he was confident of his victory. Kang Taeson clarified the Date 12 opponent and added the enhancements available to him. These were abilities that made the player very powerful, and he could bypass any defenses. Lee Jang-hong tried to stop him after seeing the system's messages. Kang Taeson struck anyway and defeated his opponent. The damage dealt to Lee Jang-hong was 9604. The duel ended, and Kang Taeson reminded them that they were on Earth and they had to admit the obvious. Lee Jang-hong, struggling to rise from the ground, still tried to argue. The realization of the situation brought tears to his eyes and made him regret that he had once gone to clear the labyrinth. The land was once peaceful, but one day the skies opened up, releasing countless monsters. A system has appeared in people's lives that offers each person a choice of 4 levels of game difficulty. After selecting a level, players entered the labyrinth and could only return to Earth after clearing it. The home planet turned out to be teeming with monsters. Kang Taeson believed that humanity now had only one choice: to try to save their world together. Gum Joon-gun greeted Kang Taeson after the match with approval. The people who gathered nearby took Lee Jang-hong to help him come to his senses. Kang Taeson didn't think it was a difficult victory, but Gum Joon-gun was curious about where his friend got his skills from. The Last Judgment and First Strike Reset were unknown to any of the players except Kang Taeson. Kang Taeson replied that he acquired such skills through hard work. The friend's attention was drawn to another noise, as if one of the other players was returning. It was a girl who was greeted joyfully by everyone around. The girl's name was Lee Tae-young. Kang Taeson went to visit Lee Tae-young at her house, which, as always, struck him with its interior. Somewhat strange in a collapsing world. For Kang Taeson, all this love of luxury was unpleasant, and he said so out loud. Monsters roamed the streets, and Lee Tae-young brought huge paintings into her home. Lee Tae-yeon was the only one who quickly cleared the labyrinth. Kang Taeson was surprised that it was a girl. The girl herself believed that in difficult times it is useful to be passionate about something. She asked if it was true that it was Kang Taeson who taught the newbie a lesson. Lee Tae-young thought it was unusual for a low-level player to teach a high-difficulty player. The girl called the system, showing her indicators, and offered to show Kang Taeson his data. She thought Kang Taeson's level was pathetic, but when she said so, he assumed she was looking for a fight. Lee Tae-yeon extended her hand, retorting that it was just a test and that Kang Taeson had decent stats for an easy-level player. The player's level is determined by completing the labyrinth, and after that it is no longer possible to become stronger. Most high-level players had stats 1,000 times higher than Taeson, but due to his special skills, none of them could defeat him. Lee Tae-young told Kang Taeson to stand still. The girl activated skills that increased the power of her attack several times. Using maximum power and perfect accuracy, Lee Tae-yeon attacked Kang Taeson. Kang Taeson remained standing in place, unperturbed. Everything around was destroyed by Lee Tae-young's blow, but Kang Taeson remained unharmed and only asked the girl why she did it. She replied that she just wanted to have fun, but immediately asked how many special skills Taeson had. He said the number 230, and these were all skills that could be obtained regardless of the player's level. Lee Tae-yeon said that if Taeson had obtained these skills through his special strategy in the labyrinth, then everyone should have studied the capabilities of the labyrinth more thoroughly. Everyone was in too much of a hurry to clear out the monsters and get out. And now Kang Taeson saw no point in discussing past decisions. Lee Tae-young countered that if Kang Dae-sang had chosen the solo difficulty level from the start, then people would have been able to defeat all the enemies. Taeson himself knew that his skills were good on their own, but overall effectiveness in battle depended on other characteristics as well. Remembering the many people who died, Kang Taeson thought about what would have happened if he had chosen a high level. Taeson thought about those who had lost loved ones, and how he hadn't used his unique skills to even half their potential. Taeson didn't want to talk about this with Lee Tae-young. He preferred to ask her herself, since she had just returned from patrol. Lee Tae-young reported that there will be a new wave of invasion soon. This news worried Kang Taeson, and he said that they would not survive. A wave was a massive attack by monsters, the losses after which were enormous. In the first wave, people lost soul. In the second, half of the high-difficulty players died. The third wave has driven humanity into a single small town. Lee Tae-yeon claimed that the upcoming fourth wave would include 2 C-rank monsters, dozens of A-rank monsters, hundreds of B-rank monsters, and an apostle. Kang Taesong admitted that 2 C-rank monsters were a problem even for Lee Tae-young, and there were very few players left who could handle A-rank. The apostle seemed completely indestructible. Lee Tae-young asked Taeson to take over Class C. Kang Taeson tried to refuse, but Lee Tae-yeon was going to deal with the apostle, which meant there was no one else to fight the C ranks. Kang Taeson headed for the door when he was stopped by Lee Tae-young's question about whether he was going to tell the others. Taeson believed that people needed to prepare in advance, but Lee Tae-young believed that it was more important to have time to enjoy life. Taeson is strong. He can lead us to victory, the girl said, but I myself am a coward. She held a shining stone in her hand. Upon learning of the impending wave of invasion, people in the city became desperate. Gum Young-gun said that he had resigned himself to the inevitable, since humanity had already endured for a very long time in unbearable conditions. The player, who returned from the labyrinth just today, attracted the attention of his friends. Gum Young-gun was horrified out loud at such a fate. To break through the labyrinth, return to Earth, and learn that he would soon die. Gyum Jun Gyun asked Daesan how he himself was coping with this situation, since it was thanks to his efforts that people were able to survive for so long. The friends were sitting on the roof of one of the tall buildings and looking at the city, and Daesan admitted that he was angry. The 4th wave of invasion has begun. A huge crowd of monsters has broken through to Earth. Gum Jung-gun looked at them and asked Taeson who he should defeat in the upcoming battle. "See you in the next world," he said. "You will wait for me if you go there first." Kang Taeson activated long jump and stepped off the roof. During the flight, he also activated total city surveillance. Noticing the C-rank monsters, he landed right next to them. The system recorded a test of mental stability, self-control, and state of fear. Kang Taeson passed all the tests and received additional invulnerability. He was ready to fight and very angry. 2 huge C-rank monsters were right in front of Kang Taeson. The player activated full Overwatch, hoping that neither of the 2 monsters would be defensive. The system has determined that a defensive monster is present among the opponents and is preparing to attack. The monster was huge and had 148 million units of health. Kang Taeson was going to fight him with accelerated movements. He understood that in order to neutralize such a creature, he would need eternity. He turned to the second giant, studying its characteristics. It was a ranged attack monster with 1.2 million health. Kang Taeson managed to start the fight with the attacking monster successfully, damaging several of its tentacles. The tentacles were the monster's main weapon. They were so fast that it was almost impossible to dodge them. Kang Taeson was saved from their destructive power by the skill Zero First Strike. The only thing he could do next was try to predict the trajectory of the next blows. Kang Taeson activated the acceleration skill. He didn't have much time to fight. He managed to land several devastating blows before a second monster entered the battle. The defensive type monster was defending the attacking monster. It was not for nothing that they were sent out in pairs. Kang Taeson managed to break through into the field, where he could only be attacked by one of the pair of monsters. The attacking monster remained outside the battle. Kang Taeson remembered Lee Tae-yeon and regretted that she, with her high stats and legendary equipment, was not by his side. Kang Taeson had to activate all the skills that increased the power of his attacks. But it wasn't enough. If Lee Tae-yeon were in his place, he thought she would have taken care of the attacker first. But for Kang Taeson himself, a blow from any of these monsters would be fatal. He decided to deal with the one with more health units first. Launching his special skills, Kang Taeson attacked the defensive monster. Even with them, Kang Taeson was inferior to the C-rank creatures many times over. But this only meant that it was necessary to go to the limit and use everything that was available to use unique abilities. The damage that Kang Taeson managed to inflict on the monster was 922366816 points. After such a blow, the monster was defeated, and all that was left was to finish him off. There was still an attacking monster left, and it was necessary to fight it immediately. Kang Taeson used up all his attack resets, and only had enough stamina for one more hit. He had a hard and tedious job ahead of him. Hit, dodge, hit, and so on 25,000 times. Without unique skills, Taeson was left with only normal attacks. Kang Taeson did not think he was capable of winning such a fight. The player entered the fight with fury. The system noted that, while in a state of complete concentration of body and soul, he had earned the skill Height of Concentration. But because Kang Taeson was not in the labyrinth, this skill was sealed. Kang Taeson defeated the monster after a grueling battle. It seemed to him as if this fight had lasted for a whole month. Wounded and tired, Kang Taeson moved towards the base. He saw many people die and was angry at them, because they were high difficulty level players. But he, a player of the most basic level, was the only one left alive. He remembered all his acquaintances from the base. Kang Taesan walked past the bloody bodies and recognized their faces. Gyum Jun-gun died just like the others. The last one Kang Taesan found was Lee Tae-yeon, sitting on the side of the road. The strongest in the world, who completed the labyrinth on solo difficulty, she was also dead. Her killer, the Apostle, was next to her. The system has recorded that the Apostle has noticed Taesan, and this threatens the player with death. Kang Taesan managed to reflect the intimidation effect. He managed to activate high concentration. He was ready to fight the Apostle. It was a brutal fight in blood and smoke. The monster was too strong for Taesan. Is this the end? The player thought. The Apostle struck him down and threw him onto the stones, but system activated the skill Fortitude, which keeps the player alive for 1 minute. Kang Taesan couldn't feel his legs and wanted to die, because Fortitude only delayed the moment of death without bringing healing. In a minute, Kang Taesan was supposed to die. He thought about how he had made a mistake once, choosing too easy a level to complete the labyrinth. But remembering the high-level players who died, he transferred his anger to them, because they did not even try to obtain special skills in the labyrinth, but simply hurried to pass it as quickly as possible. He believed that if they tried to improve their skills, then together they could defeat their enemies. But Taesan understood that anger no longer mattered and could not change anything. Humanity was lost. He noticed the shining crystal that Lee Tae-yeon was still clutching in her hand. Despite the Apostle, Kang Taesan decided to try to get this thing. Severely wounded, he crawled towards the girl, using the time stop skill. The crystal that Lee Tae-yeon held was the Ouroboros Bezoar. This artifact could be used once to return to the past. Kang Taesan was amazed that Lee Tae-yeon had such an opportunity. He looked back one last time at the dying world and the monster that had almost killed him. Clutching the Bezoar in his hand, Kang Taesan was transported into empty space. He saw himself as a miserable, huddled child. He realized that he was vulnerable then in front of his parents, who took out their anger on him and assured him that he was worthless. Now he knew that he was not worthless at all and that he had abilities. A moment later, Kang Taesan woke up lying on the wooden floor. He saw empty bottles and boxes of prepared food. He picked up his phone and looked at the date displayed on its screen. It was just before the new year. People were enjoying the holiday. It was then that the heavens broke through and a different life began for everyone. Kang Taesan found pizza in his room and enjoyed the long-forgotten taste. After the apocalypse, there will be nothing to eat except potatoes and monsters. Taesan wondered why Lee Tae-yeon didn't use the artifact herself. He went out onto the balcony to look at the city, realizing that the nightmare was about to begin. People below admired the fireworks. Someone exchanged gifts. A bright flash lit up the entire sky in an instant. People did not immediately understand what was happening, mistaking the noise and flashes for a new show. Only after some time did some begin to suspect that something bad was happening. Kang Taesan watched the monster flying from the sky from his balcony. Now he knew it was a B-rank monster. The first notification from the system appeared in front of Taesan. Panicked people on the streets received the same notifications. All the inventions of mankind, all the technology and weapons were useless against the monsters. The monster that destroyed the combat helicopter was shown live on TV. The system promised a way out of this situation, the grace of a deity. In order to gain power, it was necessary to clear the labyrinth of monsters. The monsters destroyed cities and people by attacking and breathing fire. Even small children could not escape the common fate. Kang Taesan walked calmly among the frightened crowd. He did not consider the system's promises to be mercy. It seemed to him that the deity watching what was happening was simply enjoying the spectacle. Kang Taesan thought back to his childhood and his younger self before looking at the messages about the difficulty levels offered by the system. The easy difficulty level offered plenty of accessible food and safe places. The normal level was more dangerous, but with a little effort anyone could pass it. At high level, there were strong monsters everywhere except for a few protected places. There was also a solo mode, where the player found himself alone in the labyrinth, surrounded by hostile monsters and system characters. The system stated that the survival rate of players at the solo level was 0, but Kang Taesung reached out to the selection bar. "You are there, aren't you?" "Wait for me," he said, entering the labyrinth. The lone wolf mode brought him to the streets of a small town with old 3-story buildings. Kang Taesan looked around, feeling nostalgic. He opened the general chat, and the first message was already there. In solo mode, the chat was his only way to communicate with the outside world, but now he just wished him luck and closed it. He remembered Lee Tae-young telling him about the system characters on this level. She claimed that the characters seemed to have intelligence and a will of their own, just like real people. Near the wall, Right on the ground sat one of these characters and dozed. Kang Taeson looked at him. He was a young guy in protective clothing, and on a low difficulty level, the gatekeeper was a gray-haired old man. Kang Taeson studied the gatekeeper carefully. He saw that the power of this system character surpassed even Lee Tae-young. The gatekeeper revealed that his name was Brockenman, and that those who die in the labyrinth in solo mode become gatekeepers. Brockenman told Taeson that the labyrinth was an opportunity given to humanity by an all-powerful being. The gatekeeper suggested that it would have been better if humanity had simply perished painlessly in the first wave of invasion. Kang Taesong noted that Brockenman acts as if he has gone through the same thing as everyone else. Taeson thought that the system characters at this level were former inhabitants of destroyed worlds. The gatekeeper was puzzled by Kang Taeson's calmness, who did not react to his words in any way. Brockenman showed the door to the tower, from which the clearing of the labyrinth floors began. He told about these floors. There were 100 of them, and they were very different from each other. Not having learned anything new, Kang Taeson indifferently asked if that was all. Brockenman said that there is a merchant in the labyrinth. He will tell everything else. Lee Tae-young called the gatekeeper a rude person and said that she almost died before she even entered the labyrinth. The gatekeeper offered to give Kang Taeson items that would be useful for the first time. The gatekeeper took a spear with an unusual tip. He raised his spear as if to strike, but only touched Kang Taeson's shoulder. Thus, Kang Taeson received worn-out leather armor and a rusty sword with minimal power. "This sword is made of bronze," Taeson said to the gatekeeper. "Don't like it?" Brockenman asked, and Kang Taeson answered, "No." The gatekeeper thought for a moment and threw another item to Kang Taeson. It was a small leather bracer with weak properties. Lee Tae-yeon didn't talk about such things. The gatekeeper said that Taeson had received a couple of skills, and he needed to check by entering the labyrinth. When Kang Taeson crossed the threshold, the gatekeeper wished him good luck. He was surprised that the new player was smiling, as if he wanted to start completing the labyrinth as soon as possible. As a gatekeeper, Brockenman met various heroes who were never able to complete the labyrinth. Kang Taeson seemed completely different, and it wasn't a matter of talent and experience. The gatekeeper would like this player to survive. The system told Taeson that in ancient times the labyrinth was created by a great magician. The monsters of the labyrinth moved quickly and silently, killing all living things. Kang Taeson stood at the threshold, thinking about what lay ahead of him. The monsters on the first floor were not as dangerous as they might seem. They could be killed with stabbing blows. Kang Taeson knew that there were many secret places in the labyrinth, exploring which could earn him a special reward. Previously, Taeson was asked if the merchant was at his most basic level. Taeson believed that characters like the merchant exist in any mode and that you can buy potions from them. Lee Tae-yeon explained that the merchant's inventory is huge in single-player mode. She showed Kang Taeson her black bracelet, which reduced damage taken in battles by 50%. Lee Tae-yeon said that the merchant had many other interesting artifacts, but she did not have enough gold to buy them. Lee Tae-young found the door leading to the merchant's shop. The merchant was a gray-haired man smoking a pipe. He was surprised that the player had already come to his shop. The system informed Taeson that he had met the Lost King, but Taeson asked the stranger if he was a trader. Kang Taeson did not see any goods on the shelves and reported this to the merchant. The merchant replied that an entire floor would not be enough for his goods, and he was not obliged to show his treasures to Taeson. He slammed his fist on the table and declared that he was not there by choice, but because of what had happened to his world. He suggested that Kang Taeson show his worth before talking. It was necessary to go down into the underground corridor and get out of there alive in order to look at the goods in the shop. Kang Taeson asked if all he had to do was survive, and the merchant called him a weirdo. Kang Taeson asked if he needed to clear the entire labyrinth to buy something, but that wasn't necessary. The merchant looked at Taeson descending into the dungeon with surprise, because other players were afraid to enter it and hesitated at the threshold. The merchant had never seen players like Taeson before, but he was sure he wouldn't return from his first assignment. Kang Taeson walked down the stairs and still didn't notice any differences from the simplest level. At that very moment, he noticed his opponent, a large rat. On a low difficulty level, such a monster was the boss of the 5th floor, but here it was in the very first task. The first bite of the big rat deprived Kang Taeson of 10 health points. The player recalled how, on a low difficulty level, a large rat had to be attacked in a group because it was too fast an opponent. The large rat in this dungeon also had super speed, which Taeson remembered from previous experience. Last time, the players spent a long time chasing a large rat together in order to break through its defense. Kang Taeson checked his stats. They were even lower than the first time, and he couldn't count on anyone's help. Lee Tae-yeon said that she had to hide and run away from enemies. The solo mode required a feat to be performed in the first mission to receive a reward, so Taesun resolutely began to fight. Kang Taesun, when fighting the first monster, wanted to get the best skills and not just kill the enemy. He couldn't be faster than the big rat, but he could try to guess its attacks from its breathing and muscle contractions. Kang Taesun saw that the big rat was frightened by his agility and was becoming slower. He knew this was his chance, but he needed to take care of his defense. Kang Taesun remembered the bracer that the gatekeeper had given him. When the big rat attacked, he put out his bracer. Taesun used the bracer. A large rat hung on the bracer, clinging to it with its teeth. Kang Taesun managed to finish off the monster in a few blows. He returned to the merchant, who clearly was not expecting him. In a sack, Kang Taesun brought a large dead rat. Other single-player players have reported in chat that the trader is very difficult to communicate with. Lee Tae-yeon was very angry as she recalled her interaction with the merchant. Upon seeing Taesun, the merchant only expressed surprise that he had returned. Kang Taesun unfolded his bag and placed his trophies on the table. The merchant asked if Taesun had killed the big rat instead of running away from it. Looking at the meat and skin, the merchant noted that not only had Kang Taesun killed her, but he had done so without damaging the skin. He agreed to show Kang Taesun his wares. Kang Taesun would like to purchase a siege shield. He needed the biggest one they had in the shop. Kang Taesun wanted to use it to crush his enemies. The merchant opened a door made of radiance. He got exactly the kind of shield that Kang Taesun needed. After looking at the shield's characteristics, Kang Taesung noted that equipment of such quality had previously been available to him no earlier than the 7th floor. The merchant named a price, but Taesun didn't have that much gold, and he turned around to go down into the dungeon for more trophies. The merchant stopped him and gave him the shield as a gift. Then the merchant took out goods that Kang Taesun would have enough money for. These were various potions and artifacts. The merchant said he wanted to do something good for Taesun. Kang Taesun wanted to know the reason for this arrangement, but the merchant called the gift an investment. He urged Taesun to choose a suitable potion. These were elixirs of health and speed, very necessary when passing the labyrinth. But Kang Taesun believed that he needed something else more now. Lee Tae-yeon said that in solo mode, potions should be saved for the upper floors. Kang Taesun thought that he wouldn't need these potions right now. He would rather buy a bow and arrow. Long-range weapons have helped him avoid many dangerous situations in the past. Kang Taesun asked how much money the merchant would give him for the big rat and said that he would buy a bow and arrow with it. This act changed something in the merchant's behavior. The merchant reminded Kang Taesun that it was impossible to restore health in the labyrinth without additional funds. The merchant also told about the Living Spring, a place where you can heal as much as you want while you are on first floor. The merchant marked the location of the Living Spring on the map of Taesun and said that it was guarded by a tyrant old man. When the merchant told Lee Tae-yeon about the spring, he cursed and wished for her to hide there and die of hunger. Kang Taesun guessed that the merchant treated Lee Tae-yeon this way because the girl ran away from the big rat. Kang Taesun was able to win and return unharmed. Killing the monster changed the labyrinth character's attitude towards the player. When Kang Taesun met the next rat on the first floor and killed it with his shield, he gained new skills. Noticing the many notifications, Kang Taesun looked at the new features he now had. These characteristics could be earned last time, 20th or 40th floors, and now he got them on the first. The otherworldly interference skill allowed you to steal the enemy's power after each victory, but it did not work outside the labyrinth. Kang Taesun realized that he had not earned this ability now, but when he fought the C-rank monster, he was too exhausted to look at the notifications then. Returning in time, Kang Taesun found himself in the labyrinth again, and the skill he had earned was then revealed again. Kang Taesun didn't know if he had retained all of his abilities from the future, but he just needed to go towards his goal and become the strongest. After closing the notification windows, the player headed towards the source of life. In the long corridor, he met the big rat again. This did not surprise the player. He expected that the monsters would guard the passage to the source. In a moment, there were more rats. Surrounded by large rats, Kang Taesun found himself in a difficult situation. The system noted Kang Taesun's concentration and lack of fear. He began the fight with determination, using his new shield. His self-confidence allowed him to receive an immediate increase in all stats. This allowed Kang Taesun to match the rats in reaction speed. He defeated 2 rats and was able to level up. The remaining big rat was scared. Kang Taesun easily killed the last enemy. He reached the door and walked out of the corridor into a clearing covered with green grass. It was one of the safe places where enemies couldn't get in, so Taesun calmly approached the spring. He drank water without fear of attack. Water from the living spring completely restored all player stats. After resting near the source until the next morning, Kang Tyson opened a general chat. Solo player Kang Jun-hyuk asked if he had to enter the labyrinth. A normal difficulty player suggested that someone clear the floor together. Another player asked what the first monster would look like. Kang Taesung noted that players of all other levels can communicate with each other, while solo players can only use chat. He saw a message from Lee Tae-young in the chat. Lee Tae-young wrote that she didn't know what to do. Kang Taesun thought it was unusual to see Lee Tae-young flustered, but he remembered that the system had previously detected the girl's increased anxiety. Kang Tae-sang knew that singles would not start appearing en masse for at least a month. Lee Tae-young was surprised to receive a new message in the chat. Kang Tae-san wrote to the players about what awaited them in the labyrinth. He knew that of all the loners, only Lee Tae-yeon would survive. He closed the chat. It was time for him to move on. The system defined the meat of a large rat as conditionally edible only if there was nothing else to eat. Kang Taesun began to chew the rat meat. The system detected poisoning and Taesun felt unwell. He drank water from the spring, which completely restored his health. Kang Taesun continued to eat the poisonous meat, washing it down with healing water. When he had satisfied his hunger, the system reported that he had developed immunity to poisoning due to the poisoning he had experienced. Now Kang Taesun stood above the source, about to earn another unique ability. He entered the water reluctantly. Diving headfirst into the water, Kang Taesun tried to hold his breath as long as possible. It was not easy. He thought that drowning was one of the most painful deaths. Kang Taesun only emerged when he felt death was near. The system recorded that this test allowed him to obtain 2 unique skills. Kang Taesun also saw that his characteristics were largely the same as those he had before the time travel. He didn't allow himself to waste time thinking about it. He was going to train and earn abilities. Taesun's messages in the chat caused amazement among the other players. In these messages, they read about the ways in which Kang Taesung improved his skills. Player Kang Jun-hyuk couldn't bring himself to do as written. Kang Taesun continued to train his abilities, changing the combination of conditions to obtain more skills. He trained with the weapon while holding his breath. This gave him special skills in combat. Having gained over 10 unique abilities, Kang Taesun earned the title of Skill Player. He was pleased with the result achieved. The player will be able to use the acquired skills when fighting monsters in the labyrinth. After checking his characteristics, Kang Taesun headed away from the source. Skills like Last Judgment or Nullification allowed defeating much more powerful opponents. In the corridor, Kang Taesun was attacked again by a large rat. Kang Taesun raised his shield over her, but did not strike. The rat bit his leg. Kang Taesun waited until the system reported that he was in critical condition before he threw the rat away with his shield. He continued to reflect the monster's attacks, receiving the block ability for this. This was not the skill he was looking to acquire, so the fight with the rat continued. The endurance skill could nullify a blow that should have finished off the player and several subsequent ones. Kang Taesun once told his friends about this ability because no one except him knew about it. The others thought that Kang Taesun had some very unique skills. Special skills in the labyrinth could be learned from another person. It was still possible to do something that no one else could do. Kang Taesung found a way to create an effect close to the desired skill. To gain stamina that would reset a fatal blow, one had to withstand attacks that could have been fatal to the player. Therefore, Kang Taesun continued to fight while being seriously wounded. He did not refuse challenges because they provided an opportunity to acquire very useful skills. He told Lee Tae-young and Gum Jun-gun about his discoveries. His friends laughed at him, considering such behavior strange. Having gained new skills after the battle with the rats, Kang Taesun returned to the spring to recuperate. He turned to the system, trying to think of what other special skills he could learn here. He managed to come up with several options when suddenly he was distracted by a rustling sound. An old man in armor appeared in the living spring clearing. Kang Taesun reacted immediately, covering himself with his shield. Kang Taesun knew that the monsters had no way to the source, so the old man was a character from the labyrinth. The old man asked Taesun if he was a traveler. That was the name given to those who had passed the tests in the labyrinth, and Taesun agreed that he was one of them. Lee Tae-young told me about this old man, a servant of some god. While Taesun was remembering, the old knight attacked him with his fists. It was not a lethal move. The old man hit through the shield, and the system reported that the Deathline skill was activated. The blow was very strong. It was not easy for Taesun to withstand it. The system reported that Kang Taesun had withstood an incredible force. After the next blow to the shield, Kang Taesun opened the reflection skill. Then the old knight swung his fist at his opponent's face so that Taesun did not have time to dodge. "It's amazing," the old man exclaimed after that. I thought I would score many times more points. He broke the wall with Kang Taesun. The old man was pleased and said that Taesun had surprised him. After all, Taesun first covered himself with a shield, and then released it to reduce the force of the collision. Kang Taesun said that he couldn't stand still and made the old man laugh. The knight stretched out to Sanu hand and said that he did not intend to kill him, but believed that he would have withstood a mortal fight. The old man was impressed by the fact that Taesun fought like crazy, and also by the skills he possessed. Kang Taesun was surprised that the Labyrinth character knew about skills. The old man introduced himself as a seeker of God named Ainsal. Lee Tae-yeon was also at the Living Spring. She was very upset and exhausted from fighting with rats. She did not expect an attack in a safe place, and the stranger who attacked her with his fists scared her. The gray-haired knight in armor called her a coward and never hit her. He left the girl sitting on the grass and walked away. The old man took Kang Taesun by the hand and helped him up. Ainsal called himself a paladin who didn't like to bully the weak. What he did was a test for travelers in the labyrinth. Kang Taesun received approval from Ainsal. This explained to Kang Taesun why the knight treated him differently than Lee Tae-young. He asked the old man what god he was looking for. There were many gods in the labyrinth, which Lee Tae-young described as evil and disgusting. They could test and reward players. Gods can only be encountered in solo mode. Ainsal was happy to talk about his goddess. Her name was Levinanoff. She was the goddess of love. Ainsal worshipped her along with others since his youth. Now his world was destroyed, and Ainsal was the only one left who knew about the goddess. Ainsal entered the labyrinth in search of her, but found no trace of her. Kang Taesun looked at the knight and thought he knew where his Levinanoff was. This goddess was brutally killed. Lee Tae-young found her some time ago and shared her horror in the chat. Ainsal wanted to know one thing from Kang Taesun. He asked if Taesun was in a hurry to get out of the labyrinth. He offered to teach the player the abilities that the goddess Levinanoff gives. Kang Taesun immediately agreed. This surprised the old knight. He expected at least some doubts from the player. Kang Taesun just wanted to know what Ainsal would demand from him in return. Ainsal suggested that this be considered an apology for the surprise attack. Kang Taesun asked if the knight could have not attacked at all. Ainsal said that he only apologizes to those he considers worthy. It was important for the old man not to disgrace the gods with his behavior. He offered Kang Taesun to hit him with his shield. Many of the labyrinth skills are dependent on the player's weapon. Sword players received sword skill. Young Ainsal had a special talent called the Art of Air Weapons. The goddess personally praised this skill. Ainsal was going to teach Kang Taesun this skill. Kang Taesun informed the knight that he saw no particular benefit in combining skills. He thought about how he would prefer other skills. If you have an extra hit, Ainsal said, the damage should be around 4. Ainsal ordered Kang Taesun to attack. Kang Taesun brought his shield down on his head. Ainsal took 4 damage and asked if it was necessary to hit so hard. The old man told me to try again, but to use my fists. Kang Taesun attacked again, this time without a weapon. His fist dealt 2 damage to Ainsal. Kang Taesun realized that the damage changed depending on the type of weapon used. Ainsal explained that if you take a sword plus a 20 and a glove plus 50, then the damage to the enemy will be counted only from the weapon. If you hit with a fist, the damage from the glove will be counted, but the damage dealt cannot be combined. Kang Taesun said that these are obvious things, which is why no one hangs weapons on themselves. Ainsal believed that using only one type of weapon during a fight was foolish. Fighting in the labyrinth required terrible strain on the entire body. Ainsal stated that his body is his weapon, and his weapon is part of his body. Ainsal came up with a way to combine basic skills and damage from all equipment, and called it the Art of Air Weapon Mastery. Kang Taesun was amazed that the damage of the entire attack could be combined. Ainsal said that Kang Taesun understood correctly. Ainsal's special skill affected not only weapons, but every part of the body. When wielding it, one could strike with hands, shoulders, or feet, and the total damage was counted. Players used to receive inventory that they felt was useless. This could be very important as Kang Taesun progresses further into the labyrinth. Kang Taesun called this skill amazing. Ainsal said that ordinary adventurers would never gain such a skill. He was glad that Kang Taesun agreed to study without a shadow of a doubt. Ainsal placed his hand on Kang Taesun's shoulder. He shared his skill with the player. Kang Taesun instantly received a whole stream of knowledge. The creator of the skill was able to grant the player a top-tier skill. Ainsal advised Kang Taesun to train every day and gave him an old ring. Kang Taesun thought that in the past he would have simply thrown away such a trinket, but now he would wear it. Ainsal regretted out loud that now Kang Taesun would still not be able to fully use the abilities he had received. so he suggested that Taeson train together. Kang Taeson saw no reason to refuse. Taeson took his shield and stood opposite Ainsal. The knight attacked him again, trying to knock him down with his fist. Kang Taeson parried the blow with his shield. Ainsal hit the shield with his knee. Kang Taeson blocked all of his attacks, increasing his shield skill. Ainsal was stronger, and at the end of the two-day fight, Kang Taeson was thrown onto the grass. Kang Taeson gained unique abilities thanks to his battle with a more powerful opponent. Ainsal watched approvingly as Taeson checked his stats. The old knight asked Kang Taeson to promise him two things. Kang Taeson shouldn't pass on the skills he received from Ainsal to pathetic and useless players. Otherwise, the old man would kill him. Ainsal said he hoped for a meeting with Levinov as if it were a miracle. Kang Taeson thought that if Ainsal found his goddess, he would either save her or die with her. If Ainsal doesn't find her, then Levinov will definitely die. Kang Taeson was wondering whether to tell the old man about the goddess. When he told him that he knew where she was, Ainsal was amazed. The knight even accused Taeson of trying to play a joke on him. He said that he had been looking for the goddess throughout the labyrinth. Kang Taeson was not surprised by the distrust. Taeson had something that described the labyrinth. Ainsal cried out that there were no maps in the labyrinth. Ainsal asked if this could be a divine call. Kang Taeson encountered an object that showed the location of a deity. This horn was shown to Taeson by Lee Taeyeon because she couldn't help but share. The girl considered this object useless because the deities seemed terrifying to her. Kang Taeson considered the horn a useless trinket. He remembered where the gods were and was able to tell Ainsal the place where to look for Levinov. The old man was very happy and said that now he was in debt to Taeson. Now Ainsal had to make his way to the 78th floor. He wanted to thank Kang Taeson before he left. The old man gave Kang Taeson a bronze ring. Kang Taeson saw that this was a very powerful artifact. Ainsal said goodbye and set off on his way. He called out to his goddess as he walked. Kang Taeson thought that if Ainsal managed to find the goddess, she would survive. But it could also be that Levinov is already dead. Kang Taeson went to the labyrinth to catch big rats, which was now easy for him. The player tried to gain the powers of the killed creature, but failed, as he was much smarter than it. Before heading to the second floor, Kang Taeson was going to stop by one more place. He knew about the existence of secret rooms in the labyrinth. Those who found them received generous rewards. You could get a potion, a magic staff, or a ring. Only one person could enter the secret room, so players competed for this opportunity. Kang Taeson lost many of these rooms to competitors. In solo mode, he was able to open the room without interference. The room looked empty. The previous rooms that Daesan had visited were also arranged in this way. The room looked useless, the players walked past it. Kang Taeson began to examine the stonework of the walls of the room. He tapped each brick in different ways. He pressed on the bricks on the floor. He searched for the secret entrance for a long time, improving his own detection skills. Kang Taeson opened the secret room. There was a chest in the opened room. A large rat was waiting by the wall. Kang Taeson easily caught the rat by the tail. He threw it on the floor so that its weight would press the secret pedal. An arrow that flew out of the trap hit the rat. Kang Taeson managed to get to the disarmed trap. The player had to catch the next arrow with his hand. He walked forward, despite the arrows that were no longer flying one by one. Kang Taeson was clever enough to catch them. He took the arrows for himself. Now he wouldn't have to buy them from the store. He received paralyzing and poisoned arrows. Kang Taeson returned to the first trap and the shots were repeated. Having collected 100 arrows, Taeson headed towards the chest. It was necessary to deflect the arrows and quickly run to the target. Kang Taeson was going to show his best side. He activated the attack in one breath. He caught the arrows flying at him with both hands and added them to his armament. Some had to be blocked using the reflect skill. Thanks to reflection, Kang Taeson had more space to move. He stepped on the last trap. She fired 15 arrows at him instead of the expected 9, which Taeson was almost prepared for. Kang Taeson wasn't sure he could beat them all off, so he decided to take advantage of the situation in a different way. The arrows hit him, causing serious damage. Kang Taeson allowed his condition to become critical. While in severe pain, he gained the pain relief skill. Kang Taeson reached the lever in the wall and disabled the traps. Now he could open the treasure chest he had come to this place for. The chest contained an oddly shaped wooden staff. Although on the easiest difficulty level, there was nothing important to be found in the chests on the first floor. The system designated it as the Flame Staff, capable of generating fireballs. Kang Taeson received such a special item because he played on solo mode. Having received the trophy, he could leave the secret room. A large rat tried to attack him. Kang Tae-san easily repelled the attack despite only being able to use one arm. Even in his crippled state, he managed to kill a large rat, gaining a few more useful skills. Kang Tae-san returned to the living spring. With the help of water, he healed all the wounds he received. He checked all the new abilities he had acquired and noted that they would be useful to him on the upper floors. The most valuable acquisition was the Staff of Flame, which could produce fire charges. Kang Tae-san was convinced that there was nothing more to look for on the first floor. It was necessary to go to the stairs guarded by the most powerful creature, which was called the Floor Boss. Kang Tae-san approached the door behind which the stairs to the second floor began. A huge rat was waiting for him outside the door. Kang Tae-san greeted the monster. The rat squealed and bared its teeth. On the easiest difficulty level, such a creature was located on the 10th floor, and defeating it was not easy even for a team of players. The giant rat charged with a terrifying appearance. Lee Tae-young had to resort to trickery to defeat such an opponent. The girl spilled oil in the room and set it on fire. Kang Tae-san decided to use the flame staff. He inflicted significant damage on the giant rat early in the fight. Then Kang Tae-san took up his bow and arrow. He used paralyzing arrows first, then poisonous ones. The effect produced by the arrows fired from the secret room seemed curious to Tae-san. The player managed to paralyze the monster with well-aimed hits and then poison it. The weakened creature continued to attack, but received more damage from Kang Tae-san's blows. Kang Tae-san knew that soon after the giant rat's vital signs dropped to a critically low percentage, the Berserker mode would activate. In the past, it was a surprise to players when a monster stopped responding to their shots. Kang Tae-san held out his shield in front of the frantic rat. Tae-san's best stat was dexterity, which he used to fight the Berserker. He managed to hit the enemy, but he himself was also wounded. Kang Tae-san used his unique skill to keep his breathing from getting out of hand. He managed to hit the giant rat with a few well-aimed blows. The monster dealt serious damage to Kang Tae-san, taking away 24 units of health. This was becoming dangerous. Tae-san was afraid that he wouldn't survive even a couple of attacks. Kang Tae-san withstood the next attack with the help of the Reflect ability. Speeding up, Kang Tae-san successfully launched a counterattack, causing the rat to suffer significant damage. Tae-san was going to finish the fight faster. He dealt a crushing blow to the monster. The giant rat received 20 damage. The creature collapsed to the floor in agony. The system recorded Kang Tae-san's victory. The player has examined the rewards and upgrades received as a result of this battle. Kang Tae-san expected this, but the level up was nice. For defeating the boss of the first floor, Kang Tae-san received potions similar to those he had previously found on the 50th floor of the easiest level. Sitting down right on the rat's corpse, Tae-san drank the potions he had acquired. Both potions increase strength. All existing player characteristics have increased significantly. Kang Tae-san was pleased because he had only passed the first floor. The new skill still needed to be tested. It turned out to be counterattack, an ability no less useful than reflection. Kang Tae-san checked everything he wanted and lay on the giant rat. He remembered that he had posted his strategy for solo mode in the chat. Kang Tae-san opened the chat to check for new messages. What he saw in the chat surprised him, because differed from the usual picture. One of the players asked for directions to the source, but only the trader knew the way. Lee Tae-yeon insisted that it was necessary to get to the source for the sake of temporary safety, since in other places of the labyrinth one could die at any moment. Another player thought that the constant dangers were not so scary and laughed at Lee Tae-yeon's fears. Kang Tae-san followed the messages and didn't understand what was happening. In his previous life, the chat messages were filled with the despair of players being attacked. Players of the past suffered from hunger and fear. Lee Tae-young would sometimes go into the chat alone back then. Now the players were wondering where Kang Tae-san had gone. At this time, Kang Tae-san was standing at the stairs leading deep down. He managed to buy a pair of fighter's gloves from a merchant. He descended into the dungeon, refusing to sell the giant rat's claws and teeth to the merchant, as he had other plans for these trophies. The merchant guessed that the player wanted to find the blacksmith. Lee Tae-yeon said that without the help of blacksmith Harfin, she would never have gone far in the labyrinth. Lee Tae-yeon explained that they needed to go deep into the dungeon, where slightly different laws apply. The second floor assignment began with an exit from the corridors into a bright space. The reward for victory was potions that were so rare that they could not be bought in shops. The lively chat was filled with messages addressed personally to Tae-san. Kang Jun-hyuk sent a request to Dae-san for a private conversation. Tae-san was very surprised that after reading his messages, another player wanted to go through the labyrinth following his advice. Kang Jun-hyuk explained that people's despair at that time was at its peak. They were killed by monsters and tormented by hunger. Kang Jun-hyuk tried to talk to the guard, but the guard ignored him even when he shouted. Kang Taeson's post first helped Lee Tae-young. She shared her emotions in the chat, and her success made others believe in themselves. In his past life, Kang Taeson had never heard of Kang Jun-hyuk, which means he must have died very early in some stupid fight. Kang Taeson gave him some more advice, but Kang Jun-hyuk was surprised by this help, because he thought that everyone in the labyrinth was a rival. Kang Taeson called his statement delusional. He himself, Lee Tae-young, Gum Jun-gun, were people whose planet was destroyed. What was the point of them competing? Kang Jun-hyuk had never thought about this before, but now he was puzzled. Kang Taesung explained to him that he himself saw the goals of the players in the labyrinth as becoming stronger, and asked about the mood of the people. Kang Jun-hyuk said that many in the community try to force fights on others, some don't pay attention, and some go crazy. Kang Taeson said goodbye to Kang Jun-hyuk and entered the second floor of the labyrinth. Kang Taeson had heard before that the real labyrinth started from the second floor, and he kicked open the door to the corridor full of goblins. The system notification has detected several goblins armed with various types of weapons. A single goblin was not a dangerous opponent, but they attacked in a crowd, and it became much more difficult. Kang Taeson started the fight using a bow. He successfully hit the first targets with paralyzing arrows. Armed with a shield and sword, the goblin rushed at the player, forcing him into close combat. Kang Taeson drew his shield and easily blocked the attack, noting that the goblin's shield was much weaker. With his own shield, he dealt a powerful blow to his enemy. Kang Taeson destroyed several goblins, but new ones appeared from the hole in the wall. These monsters were armed with swords. Kang Taeson drew his weapon, meeting their attack. The long sword of one of the goblins caught the player's attention. Kang Taeson took out the flame staff and urged the goblins to attack faster. With the help of the staff, Kang Taeson was able to create a wave of fire. The flames engulfed the entire corridor with goblins, almost breaking through to the outside. After destroying the goblins with fire, Kang Taeson became the owner of a long, rusty sword. The player liked this sword. It will be much more convenient to fight monsters with it than with only a shield. In one of the walls that Kang Taeson walked past, there was a half-open door. Upon entering, Kang Taeson discovered a room filled with red light and a large structure that the system identified as the Altar of Rakiratas. Rakiratas was one of the labyrinth gods that Kang Taeson knew about. Kang Taeson stood in front of the altar, thinking about how some gods might be hostile, while others might help the players. The Altar of Rakiratas looked so ominous that Kang Taeson understood why Lee Tae-yeon had fled from here in the first place. The system reported that Rakiratas wanted to check on the traveler who came to his altar. Kang Taeson replied that he was ready for both the test and the task, which earned the deity's approval. The forces that swirled above the altar began to create something that looked like plate armor. Kang Taeson drew his weapon, intending to fight. The armor gathered into the figure of a knight, which the system designated as the illusion of the servant of Rakiratas. This opponent looked very powerful, and it was the victory over him that the system counted as passing the test. The knight's first attack dealt 25 damage to Kang Taeson, despite the player blocking it with a shield. Kang Taeson decided that if the servant of Rakiratas' attack was so destructive even through the shield, then there was no point in using the shield. Instead of a shield, Kang Taeson took a sword in both hands. It had been a long time since he had used two swords at the same time in battle. Kang Taeson attacked the servant of Rakiratas, and when both of his blades crossed with the knight's sword, the sparks that were struck seemed like a flash of flame. With two swords, Kang Taeson could block this opponent's powerful blows. When Taeson himself attempted to attack the servant of Rakiratas, his blade did not leave a single scratch on the knight's armor. This enemy was so much stronger that Kang Taeson saw no point in continuing the fight as before. The player chose a different way to defeat the enemy and began to dodge his attacks. Rakiratas' servant had to chase after his opponent. Kang Taeson suddenly turned around while running to continue the battle. He realized that he could move faster than the knight. Using his speed advantage, Kang Taeson managed to deal some significant damage to the servant of Rakiratas. The sword of Taeson got stuck in the knight's armor, but this did not stop the player. Kang Taeson began to strike at the servant of Rakiratas with his fist, using the air weapon mastery art that Ainzal had taught him. This attack also caused noticeable damage to the knight. The system has detected that the servant of Rakiratas is confused by the player's behavior. The following notifications noted that the servant of Rakiratas had fully restored all of his stats. The unharmed enemy looked at Kang Taeson, and the system no longer labeled him as an illusion. Rakiratas' servant easily threw the player aside. Kang Taeson noticed that the overall atmosphere of this fight had changed. He realized that the knight now had consciousness, so he needed to change tactics. Rakirata's servant rushed into battle, giving the player no time to think. Each blow from the knight took away more than 10 units of health from Kang Tae-san. The player was perplexed, because the knight was now moving completely differently than at the beginning of the fight. One of Rakirata's servant's blows sent Kang Tae-san flying into the wall, taking 25 damage. Kang Tae-san saw that his opponent was a perfect swordsman and moved like an experienced knight. Tae-san held a sword in his hand, but he couldn't control it with such ease, which made one wonder about the difference in skills. He stood before the servant of Rakirathas and thought that if in the labyrinth every move of the player was assessed and rewarded, then in this fight he could gain a valuable skill. Kang Tae-san realized that his opponent was far superior to him in swordsmanship. Tae-san was a player, and with only swordsmanship, the enemy would not be able to defeat him. Kang Tae-san used the flame staff for his next attack. Rakirathas' servant had to face fire that he could not cut with his blade. When the wave of flame disappeared, the servant of Rakirathas did not see the enemy in front of him and did not understand where he had gone. Kang Tae-san approached the Rakirathas knight from behind and struck with his sword, taking away 6 units. Now the opponent stood face to face again. Kang Tae-san tried to use the skill division and split the next attack, but Rakirathas' servant dealt him another 15 damage. Then Kang Tae-san activated his special skill, One Breath Attack, and continued the fight, with both opponents receiving damage. This gave Kang Tae-san a new skill, but the player had no time to figure it out during the battle. Kang Tae-san used the flame staff and Rakirathas' servant received severe burns from its effects. Tae-san was worried that all the injuries so far had not resulted in the death of the enemy, while he himself was losing less and less health and mana. There was no way to stop the fight, and there was nowhere to run. The next attack from the servant of Rakirathas was devastating and took 80 health from Tae-san. Kang Tae-san activated Death Blow Nullification, allowing him to completely negate damage from attacks that would take away the last units of health. The player managed to get close to the enemy and cut off his head by striking with 2 blades at the same time. Kang Tae-san fell to one knee, catching his breath, and looked at what was happening to his defeated opponent. The helmet on the knight's severed head was split, and one could see his human face and hear him call the battle that had just ended excellent. Tired from the fight, Kang Tae-san fell on his back to rest and, calling Rakirathas names, declared that the task was unfair. The power of Rakirathas enveloped the player in a glow, granting a huge amount of experience and leveling up. Kang Tae-san decided to check what had been added to his stats, and read that Rakirathas was pleased with the battle that had just taken place. This angered Kang Tae-san because the battle almost cost him his life. As a reward from the deity, Kang Tae-san received the ceremonial sword of Rakirathas, with a crimson curved blade symbolizing the absorbed blood. The system reported that after completing difficult training, Kang Tae-san earned an additional reward. The player also received the passive skill Trace of Struggle. The altar hall around him shook, and Kang Tae-san realized that the situation was not over yet. The orange system notification showed the player an offer from Rakirathas, which was the Apostle contract. Kang Tae-san thought deeply, because the choice could be made with one movement of the hand, and neither the system nor the deity gave any explanation. Kang Tae-san appreciated the kind gesture, but he knew that Rakirathas was not an easy deity. This deity created chaos and confusion, whether it was profitable to sign a contract with him. Kang Tae-san imagined himself as a puppet in the hands of Rakirathas, and was afraid that he would forever become his weak-willed slave. He rejected Rakirathas' patronage without hesitation and did not accept the apostle's contract. Kang Tae-san was glad that the god was not angry at his refusal, but Rakirathas' offers were not over yet. Kang Tae-san received an additional task. He needed to kill all the enemies on the 2nd and 3rd floors, and then come to this altar for a reward. Kang Tae-san tried to decline the task, not trusting Rakiratsu, but he failed. Had to accept the offer, and this choice satisfied the deity. Kang Tae-san returned to the merchant because he needed to buy something to complete the quest. The merchant was surprised that Tae-san needed potions, but the player was afraid that Rakirathas' errand might be difficult. The merchant noticed Kang Tae-san had a ceremonial sword and was surprised that Rakirathas was generous to this player. The merchant said that many had already died because of this mad god. Kang Tae-san wanted to ask the merchant about the apostle's contract. The merchant said that Tae-san was right to refuse the contract, because such decisions cannot be made spontaneously. But the old man did not explain the essence of the agreement with the god. The terms of the merchant's contract did not allow the old man to reveal the secrets of the labyrinth. He could only sell potions. It was the first time Kang Tae-san heard that the merchant was bound by a contract, but he said goodbye to him without explaining anything else. Kang Tae-sun decided that it was high time to check what was going on in the chat. Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk were happy to see Daesung. Kang Jun-hyuk said that the old knight at the Living Spring was not at all like Daesung had warned. He simply spat in Kang Jun-hyuk's face and left. Kang Jun-hyuk had failed to repel Einshal's attack and was now claiming that it was impossible to do so. Lee Tae-yeon admitted that she too was unable to even move when the old man attacked her. Kang Jun-hyuk tried to hold Einshal back by clinging to him, but the knight did not respond to his pleas. Kang Tae-sun was able to conclude that the characters in the labyrinth only help those who respond to the challenge. Lee Tae-young revealed that she continues to hunt big rats to increase her level. Kang Jun-hyuk said that only a few people had begun to go through the first floor of the labyrinth, while the rest still needed to get used to this world. Kang Tae-sun decided to explain a little about the further test to Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk, since they listened carefully to his advice. The players were excited about the fight with the giant rat that Tae-sun described, and they wanted to know how to deal with it. Kang Tae-sun advised his friends to look for the answer themselves. He believed that it would not be difficult for them. Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk were going to tell what they knew to the other players. Kang Tae-sun closed the chat and went to carry out Rakuradas' mission. The goblins watched the player from a hole in the wall. Kang Tae-sun headed towards them, armed with the ceremonial sword and shield. Tae-sun was going to try out his new skills on the goblins. He activated the struggle trace and entered the battle. The scarlet ceremonial sword of Rakurathas in his hands dealt fatal blows to the enemy. Kang Tae-sun noted that the new abilities allow him to avoid unnecessary worries during battle, and also heal and increase other characteristics. Now Tae-sun had few limitations and could fight indefinitely. Kang Tae-sun destroyed all the goblins and noticed something unusual in the corridor. It was a door with an image of two swords, something Tae-sun had never seen before in the labyrinth. Entering the new room, Kang Tae-sun saw an ivy-covered gravestone in the rays of light. Kang Tae-sun came closer. The system notification said that he had discovered a warrior's grave. Kang Tae-sun placed his hand on the gravestone. A flash of light emanating from the stone made Tae-sun take a couple of steps back. A small cloaked ghost appeared from the flash and greeted the traveler. Kang Tae-sun didn't have time to understand anything, and the ghost disappeared back into the gravestone. When Tae-sun touched the stone again, the ghost returned but disappeared again. Kang Tae-sun was angered by this fuss. As soon as the ghost appeared again, Tae-sun grabbed it and told it to stop joking and assign a task to the player. "How dare you ask for a task?" The ghost was indignant, not knowing who was in front of him. Kang Tae-sun called the other man the ghost of the fallen warrior, but he angrily stated that it was too easy to learn everything from the system's messages. Tae-sun asked if the system worked before the labyrinth appeared. The ghost's aura was different from the aura of the labyrinth characters that Kang Tae-sun had met before. The player asked the ghost if he would give him a task or if he himself was an object. The phantom thought it was rude, but he admitted that he was there to give out assignments, but was not obligated to do so for random weaklings. Tae-sun was surprised that the ghost was on such an early floor, but he himself did not know why he was placed in this particular place. The ghost told Tae-sun to leave and not return until he could reach at least the 30th floor. When Kang Tae-sun was about to leave the place, the ghost caught up with him, attracted by the ceremonial sword of Rakuratas. After learning how Tae-sun got this weapon, the ghost changed his attitude and flew right up to the player's face, promising to give him a task. The ghost believed that after passing Rakuratas' test, the player deserved to receive a new assignment. But now Kang Tae-sun didn't want to listen to him. The ghost said that he was once a glorious warrior who was predicted by everyone to reach the very end of the labyrinth. Tired and having lost a lot of health after a particularly brutal fight, he lay down to rest on this lawn. He was attacked by the boss of the 10th floor, who had an automatic attack and killed him in his sleep, which still enraged the ghost. Now the ghost wanted only one thing from Kang Tae-sun, for him to kill the boss of the 10th floor, and then the ghost would reward him. Kang Tae-sun agreed to accept the task and headed towards the door. The ghost caught up with the player and settled on his head, stating that he was going to go with him to watch him kill his enemy. The ghost talked a lot, communicating all of his thoughts and emotions and circling around Kang Tae-sun as they walked down the floor. Kang Tae-sun chose to ask the ghost about who he was in life before entering the labyrinth. The ghost said that he was a prince from the great royal family of the Karvat Empire, the eldest son, the future heir, a great warrior, and was liked by women. When the end of the world came, he tried to save everyone, but died on one of the first floors of the labyrinth. The reminder of exactly how he died irritated the ghost. Kang Tae-sun walked towards the door as the ghost spoke of his revenge and how he failed to save the world. There were many armed goblins waiting for them outside the door. Kang Tae-sun took out his bow and began shooting at one specific goblin. He brought the hilt of the ceremonial sword down on him, dealing 10 damage. Kang Taesun repeated the same actions, shooting at the same enemy and hitting him with a sword. The ghost asked why Taesun was doing this. Did he really hate this goblin especially? Kang Taesun continued silently, and the ghost himself guessed that the player was trying to gain a skill in this way. The ghost insisted that it was impossible to gain skill this way, but Kang Taesun was confident in what he was doing. The ghost reported that he had climbed 85 floors and was ready to argue with Taesun that he was wasting his time. Kang Taesun continued what he was doing and challenged the ghost to a bet, promising that he would become his slave if he didn't get the skill. If Taesun wins the argument, the ghost will have to answer all of his questions honestly. The ghost agreed with a laugh, imagining how he would humiliate his new slave and order him to crawl on all fours. Kang Taesun, continuing to attack the goblin, asked the ghost about the battle skill. The ghost knew this basic skill, and that when two people entered into a battle, other players were forbidden to interfere. Kang Taesun announced that he was going to get something similar and destroyed his opponent. The system informed him that he had gained the unique ability Forced Combat, and now he could fight one enemy and only take damage from them for 10 seconds. The ghost was amazed that such a useful skill, allowing one to survive in mortal danger, could be earned by doing some nonsense. Kang Taesung stated that it was because he did unusual things that he had special skills. The ghost agreed that Kang Taesun had won their bet and was ready to tell the player about himself, since he was different from the other characters in the labyrinth. The ghost asked if Kang Taesun had heard of a skill called Jump. Kang Taesun knew of such an ability, but under the name of Huge Leap. But to the surprise of his interlocutor, he understood that the ghost had not studied this. Together they entered the secret room, after which the ghost suggested that Kang Taesun would face some difficulties here. Kang Taesun was able to identify the right brick in the wall of the room thanks to strong premonition. The ghost was amazed at how easily the player was able to find what he needed. This was the detection skill that Taesun had trained in on the previous floors. Now one could see rows of arrows aimed at him on the ceiling. The ghost thought that the randomly set traps would be difficult to pass, and it would be better for both of them to return back. Kang Taesun did not listen to him, calculating his next steps. Taesun moved very quickly, considering all the traps, arrows, and moving walls, while the ghost only shouted after him. Kang Taesun deflected some of the arrows with Rakiratsa's ceremonial sword. The player did not stop even in front of a large trap containing sharp stakes. Kang Taesun managed to jump over this secret room trap as well. Using special power, Kang Taesun was able to smash the moving walls with his hand. He knew that this wall was not part of the labyrinth, but was built by goblins, so it was not very strong. By breaking it, you could disable all the traps. Kang Taesun received a timely reward for these actions, a ring of mana. The ghost asked Taesun who he was anyway. Kang Taesun asked him if he would understand if he repeated it twice, but the ghost didn't know what to answer at all. 10 days had already passed since Taesun entered the labyrinth, and it was worth entering the chat to check how the other players were doing. Players asked Kang Jun-hyuk how he dealt with the giant rat, and he relayed Kang Taesun's advice to them. Kang Jun-hyuk told others about Kang Taesun, who managed to go much further in the labyrinth than everyone else. Kang Taesun found the community page in the system and greeted all the players at once. Kang Jun-hyuk was surprised because it was Kang Taesun's first time using the shared page, usually preferring private conversations. Kang Jun-hyuk said that about half of the people who reached the living spring managed to deal with the rat. Kang Taesun asked how things were going for Kang Jun-hyuk and Lee Tae-young. Both admitted that they failed to follow Taesun's example, but Lee Tae-young was going to use a different method to defeat the giant rat. Kang Jun-hyuk asked why Kang Dae-sung decided to share his experience with other players. Lee Tae-young said that if someone had told her about the skills at the very beginning of the labyrinth, she would have understood little about it. But then the players were able to appreciate these tips and shared them with each other. Kang Taesun decided to tell everyone about the way to earn the easiest skill, pain relief. He said that you had to take a sword in your hand and thrust it into your own hand as deep as possible to reach the bone. The players were amazed and couldn't believe that Taesun wasn't joking when he suggested that they impale themselves on their own blades. Kang Taesun didn't see a problem with this, because being close to the living source meant one could quickly heal from any injury. Kang Taesung explained that while wounded, you can fight a large rat and unlock a skill that will later allow you to fight while ignoring any wounds. Other players did not believe in the effectiveness of this method. For them, it looked like a suicide attempt. Kang Taesung explained how to train your breath holding by staying underwater long enough to almost die and surfacing at the last second before death. This advice was even more disliked by the players and seemed even more like suicide. The skill endurance Kang Taeson suggested to be obtained by fighting a large rat in a state where the player had only 1 health left. The players did not take all of Taeson's ideas very well. They asked if it was necessary to go so far in these trainings. They did not understand how they could do such absurd things. Kang Taeson said that he was not going to force anyone, they would have to make the choice themselves. He understood that all these people had recently lived in a world where there was no need to risk their lives. Lee Tae-yeon asked Deeson if he didn't know another way to gain all these skills, but he really didn't know any. Kang Joon-hyuk and Lee Tae-young thought about what they heard and decided to try to do all these crazy things. Other players called them crazy, since Kang Taeson's stories could be lies. But Lee Tae-young and Kang Joon-hyuk did not think that Kang Taeson would deceive them, because everyone had already tried some of his attack methods and everyone had succeeded. Kang Joon-hyuk was going to start with the training that seemed the least dangerous of all and obtain the breath-holding skill. The players couldn't believe he was going to do this. Kang Taesong told everyone to work hard and promised to tell them about the rest of the skills when the players were ready. When Kang Taeson left the chat, the ghost watching him stated that all of these tips were completely useless and that players would still die in the labyrinth. The ghost hurried Kang Taeson. He didn't want to waste any more time because they were standing in front of the door behind which the enemy was hiding. Kang Taeson opened the door and told Ghost that he wasn't going to ask him about the boss. He wanted other information. Taeson opened the door and was excited about the upcoming fight. The system has noted the appearance of the Goblin Commander and Goblin Protector. The Goblin Guard was armed with a sword and was already approaching the player. The Goblin Commander wore a cloak and held a staff in his hands. The Goblin Defender struck Taeson with his sword at the shield he held out. A purple haze of power swirled around the Goblin Commander. The ghost circled in the air above Kang Taeson and advised him to attack the commander first, as his actions were clearly suspicious. Kang Taeson saw that the Goblin Commander was casting some kind of spell. Taeson fell into the ring of these unknown spells. He found himself in a completely different place, surrounded by mangled bodies. Dead hands reached out to him. He heard accusations that these people died because he chose the easy way out, that he was the only one saved. Then Kang Taeson saw Lee Tae-yeon, dead and bloody, just like she was before using the Time Bezoar. Lee Tae-young opened her eyes and tearfully asked Daeson why he left her to die alone. Lee Tae-yeon sat on a mountain of dead, mutilated bodies and cried, covering her face with her palms. The dead hands of the deceased reached out to Kang Taeson, clasped him, burying him under them. Kang Taeson opened his eyes and said that such techniques wouldn't work on him. The ghost watched as Taeson sat, befuddled by the Goblin Commander's purple magic, and thought that the player was wrong not to listen to his warnings. The Goblin Commander continued to cast his spell. Kang Taeson was in a purple transparent sphere, his head bowed and his eyes closed. Suddenly, the player pulled out the Scarlet Ceremonial Sword, and the system reported that thanks to his iron will, Taeson had passed the test. The ghost stared at Kang Taeson in surprise. The Goblin Commander retreated from his prey. The goblin went berserk and did something else with his staff. Kang Taeson waved it off, repeating that it wouldn't work on him. The Goblin Commander activated the curse. Kang Taesong stated that he never loses when it comes to mental attacks. He grabbed the Goblin Commander and raised him above his head at arm's length before killing him. After enduring multiple mental and magical attacks, Kang Taeson gained mental resistance and magic resistance. The ghost looked at Taeson. He didn't know before that a psychic attack could only be endured by one's own willpower. Only a madman could do that. Kang Taeson received a mana increase potion for this battle. He also received a set of master keys to disarm traps and pick locks. Kang Taeson drank the potion, and the ghost asked him if he missed anything when he passed the labyrinth floor. The Phantom was upset by such successes because he himself died, and for someone else everything was going well. The ghost and Kang Taeson reached the passage to the 3rd floor. Before going to the 3rd floor, they looked into the shop. The ghost flew up to the old man's face and called him an old fool who was more stubborn than a donkey. The merchant responded by calling the ghost a noisy loser and advised Kang Taeson not to let the creature influence him. The ghost and the merchant had clearly known each other for a long time, and sparks flew from their argument. Kang Taeson tried unsuccessfully to intervene in this squabble. He was tired of waiting for them to finish themselves. Shields, swords, and other weapons crashed down near the disputants. This was Kang Taeson's way of attracting attention to himself. He wanted to sell all his trophies. The merchant looked at the mountain with surprise and asked how many monsters Kang Taeson had killed. Kang Taeson tried on the spiked gloves and bronze shield. The player also equipped 2 attack-boosting rings and a strongman pendant, saying that he could now defeat the goblin in 2 hits. The ghost didn't understand how Tessin managed to increase his stats so much with these things. But the merchant knew that it was the art of air weapons. The ghost and the merchant were about to start their squabble again, but Kang Taesin interrupted their conversation to say goodbye. After leaving the shop, Taesin asked the ghost why he had such a relationship with the old man, but the ghost only cursed in response. The ghost flew up to Kang Taesin's ear and whispered that the merchant was only capable of treating well those from whom he himself needed something. The ghost considered the merchant an enemy and demanded that Taesin not trust him. Kang Taesin saw the shadows of goblins. A moment later, the goblins attacked him with weapons. Taesin walked through the crowd of enemies, crushing them with simple kicks. Kang Taesin cleared out the different rooms on this floor so quickly that the ghost even became bored. The ghost asked why Taesin was trying to fight every enemy if it didn't add any experience at the current level. Kang Taesin continued killing goblins, saying that this was a task from Rakaratas. The ghost said that he had also undergone tests from this deity, but they were completely different. During a break from slaying monsters, Kang Taesin asked the ghost about the apostle contract. The ghost guessed that Rakaratas had offered such a contract to Taesin. The ghost began to fly around Taesin and say many words that had no meaning. Finally, the ghost told that there are many gods in the labyrinth, and each is responsible for something of their own. Kang Taesin didn't really understand what it meant to be a god in the labyrinth. He was surprised that the ghost called those who helped build the labyrinth gods. The ghost reminded that when entering the labyrinth for the first time, all players receive a system window informing them that everything they see here was created long ago by a great magician. But even for a great magician, it was too difficult to create such a space from scratch. So the magician looked for those who would help him fulfill his plan. Great power was required to create the labyrinth. Many warriors and heroes answered the call of the magician, ready to undergo the most severe tests. He told them about the battles that would take place here, and also about the deaths that will also happen to those who fail. Many gods supported the magician in his quest to create a place where those who passed all the tests could have one wish fulfilled. The gods built the labyrinth, and they themselves took places on its top floors. The gods singled out certain travelers who entered the labyrinth and gave them tests to see what they were worth. Kang Taesin understood that the gods might show interest in players, but he didn't know whether it was good or bad. The ghost explained that if one became an apostle, one could receive as many abilities as God wished to bestow upon his follower. Kang Taesin asked what the disadvantages of the contract were. Problems could arise with other gods and their followers, and it was also obligatory to follow all the orders of one's god. It was impossible to refuse to carry them out. Lee Tae-young never said anything like that, nor did she talk about what wish the labyrinth granted her after completing it. She had the Bezoar of Ouroboros. Perhaps she once wished to obtain it. But Kang Taesin felt like the Lee Tae-young he knew would have chosen something other than rewinding time. Kang Taesin thought deeply, trying to piece together the pieces of the labyrinth's history that he now knew. The people of his dying world came to the labyrinth not of their own free will. Kang Taesin couldn't solve this riddle because he still didn't know many things. He abandoned his useless thoughts and moved on. We had to start by disarming the trap, after which Taesin received the disarm trap skill. Kang Taesin was glad that he was able to gain the skill after only trying to use his lockpick set 10 times. He tested the new ability on the trap in the secret room, but failed to disarm the trap. The ghost was angry, not understanding how a player who managed to discover the secret room with one move could waste so much time on meaningless things. He believed that traps did not need to be disarmed if they could be bypassed using strength and agility, like last time. Kang Taesin replied that he never knows what exactly he will need in the labyrinth, so he tries to get all the opportunities available. The ghost remembered his own path and inglorious death. Kang Taesin finished fiddling with the traps and his skill increased by 7%. In the treasure chest, he found a curved ring, which gave 3 units of strength. Kang Taesin looked at all the defeated goblins on the 3rd floor and said that only the boss remained to be defeated. The ghost asked the player if he had any idea who he should expect on the goblin floor. Kang Taesin entered the hall, on the walls of which were drawings depicting many goblins. His enemy was a large and powerful goblin chieftain. The goblin attacked the player with a wave of force that knocked them off their feet. Kang Taesin snatched the staff he had obtained from the goblin commander in battle. Taesan's staff was able to cause magical confusion in the goblin chieftain. Taking advantage of this, Kang Taesin attacked the goblin chieftain with the scarlet ceremonial sword. The player noticed that due to his huge size, his enemy moves quite slowly. With his special skills, great strength and speed, Kang Taesin defeated the 3rd floor boss without any problems. System notifications have recorded new increases in player stats. In addition, Kang Taesin received a vitality boost potion and a battered wooden staff. The ghost said that only with luck like Taeson's could one obtain the magic staff. Kang Taeson asked the ghost what this item was, and learned that with this staff he would be able to strengthen the various magic he had already learned. This was the first time Kang Taeson heard that magic could be studied. The ghost was sure that Taeson knew about this before, because he had encountered monsters that used magic more than once. Kang Taeson thought that magic in the labyrinth was limited to the specific properties of magic items, and without items, even Lee Tae-yeon couldn't cast magic. The ghost explained that spells could be invented or magic could be learned from someone who had it. The first option did not suit Taeson, but he could find a character from whom he could learn to cast spells. He hadn't met such characters before because they were only in solo mode, and Lee Tae-young hadn't met them because those characters were hiding somewhere. The ghost interrupted his thoughts, suggesting that he hurry to the 4th floor. Kang Taeson checked all the properties he had obtained, but he didn't find any secret rewards, which meant that there was something else on this floor that he hadn't discovered. The ghost said that the secret room was found, the boss was killed. What else could be on the floor? Kang Taeson knew that it would take too much time to re-examine the entire floor, and for the first time, he considered giving up and not collecting every single reward on the floor. Looking closely at the images of goblins on the wall, he noticed that they were all looking at one point. Kang Taeson used his trap detection skill on this spot. After this, a passage formed in the wall. Kang Taeson explained to the puzzled ghost that this part of the wall was made of the same material as the trapdoor in the secret room, so he decided to check it out. In the depths of the opened hall with columns, another goblin sat on a throne. The system labeled the goblin as the former lord, Hagaha, and the ghost admitted that he had never encountered monsters with names before. The lords were the kings of their race, and they surpassed them all in their power. Hagaha took the sword in his hands and said that he bore no malice towards Taeson, who was nothing more than a toy, forcibly placed in the labyrinth, while he himself was supposed to play the role of a monster here. The goblin lord waved his hand and broke the pillars in the hall next to where Kang Taeson stood. The player activated reflection, allowing him to remain unharmed. Kang Taeson rushed forward and, having reached the throne, crossed his scarlet sword with Hagaha's sword. He got a very strong opponent, while on the easy difficulty level, the indicators that Taeson had were enough for easy victories up to the 50th floor. Kang Taeson found it difficult to fight Hagaha, so he decided to use his advantage in agility. The Goblin Lord launched a powerful blow with the hilt of his greatsword, but Kang Taeson activated Reflect to avoid it. This did not help, and the power of Hagaha destroyed the player's defense. Now all of Taeson's actions would be delayed for 10 seconds. In this situation, Kang Taeson couldn't move on his own, so he turned on parry to be able to block attacks automatically. It was a difficult 10 minutes for Taeson when the fight was happening on its own, and he could not do anything of his own free will. Kang Taeson flew back a few steps from the throne, losing his advantageous position. Hagaha struck with a wave of power near Taeson, and he needed to activate Reflect to dodge it. It didn't help, and Kang Taeson took 46 units of damage. The ghost shouted that he couldn't handle someone like Taeson, and that he should retreat and return later when he became stronger. Kang Taeson was determined to continue this fight even though there was a lord in front of him. Kang Taeson knew how the labyrinth worked. If he left the floor and came back later, the reward would be greatly reduced. Everything Kang Taeson did, he did not for the sake of survival, but to become stronger. He stood in front of Hagaha. The system noted his determination and unusually high fighting spirit in the battle against an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. This state allowed the player to improve his characteristics. In addition, he received vision, which allowed him to identify the enemy's weak point. Kang Taeson knew that there couldn't be any absolutely invincible monsters on the 3rd floor, and his gaze immediately noted Hagaha's motionless legs and the fact that the Goblin Lord had never stood up from his throne. Hagaha stated that he liked to fight a warrior who did not retreat, so he would fight him for real too. The Goblin Lord asked the player how he planned to approach the throne this time. Kang Taeson activated the breath hold. He struck a blow that destroyed the columns in the hall. Hagaha sat on the throne, and the fragments of the columns fell around him and right onto the throne. The Goblin Lord deflected the rocks with his greatsword. He approved of the decision his enemy had made, but noticed that debris was also falling on the player. Kang Taeson took the psychic attack staff and activated Confusion. A spell enveloped the goblin sitting on the throne. The Goblin Lord saw arrows and fire flying from all directions, but he did not understand whether they were really aimed at him. Hagaha managed to overcome the psychic influence and exclaimed that it was impossible to harm someone like him. Kang Taeson walked around the back of the throne and pierced the Goblin Lord with the scarlet ceremonial sword straight through the back of the throne. The forced combat skill protected Kang Taeson from all dangers except the one opponent he was fighting. Kang Taeson pushed the throne with the Goblin Lord. Ha was impressed by his opponent's use of skills and thanked the gods that his last battle was with such an enemy. The ghost watched as the columns collapsed and the throne was thrown aside. Taeson used his abilities to win. The ghost was looking forward to the player's fight with a strong opponent. Both fighters were now fighting furiously. Their battle was accompanied by bright flashes that filled half the hall. The Goblin Lord enjoyed the fight, but he did not allow the player to get close enough to him to deal the finishing blow. Kang Taeson managed to bypass Hagaha's defenses and approach the throne. He took 462 damage, but activated Endurance, the effect of which nullified the fatal attacks. For 1 second, Kang Taeson will be completely invulnerable. This time was enough for the player to reach the enemy and strike him with a sword. Kang Taesong knocked over the Goblin Lord along with his throne and dealt him a mortal wound. "Impressive, warrior," said Hagaha before he died. Kang Taeson stood over his fallen enemy, feeling relieved that this fight was finally over. He looked at how much his level had increased and discovered that by using the qualities of the soul, he had obtained the skill trigger Powerful Strike. This skill reacted to how much mana was spent, increasing the damage proportionally. The secret reward that Taeson received was a Mastery Enhancement Potion. The player also received a necklace for the Master, which increases all the characteristics of the player who wears it. In an instant, Kang Taeson became stronger than he was when he completed the 5th floor on the easiest difficulty level. The player returned to the altar of Rakiratas to complete the deity's quest. The ghost was frightened by the power of the formidable god and hid behind Kang Taeson's back. Rakiratas expressed his approval and again offered Taeson the apostle's contract, but the player refused because, when sending him on a mission, the god could not have not known what a powerful enemy he would have to face, and did not warn him. As a reward for the completed task, Rakiratas presented Kang Taeson with the Unbreakable Shield. It was the first time that Kang Taeson and the ghost saw such an award. After checking what the system said about this shield, Kang Taesong discovered that while the Unbreakable Shield was active, the player's personal health would not be consumed. Rakiratas said goodbye. The fog over the altar cleared, and the ghost admitted that he never thought he would be able to experience such fear after his own death. The ghost and Kang Taeson went to the 4th floor. Lee Tae-yeon said that this was the floor of the orcs. They were very strong and smart warriors. But before passing through the floor, Kang Taeson was going to go to one more place. It was the altar of Baltazar, a tall and beautiful structure, illuminated by rays of light. Kang Taeson placed his hand on the altar to feel the influence of the deity. Baltazar wanted to test the traveler who visited his altar and offered to undergo a test. Kang Taeson immediately agreed, and a beam of light from the altar struck him. And the system explained that this was how Baltazar learned from the experiences of previous battles. The ghost said that as the god of victory, Baltazar had the ability to read memories. Like Rakiratas, this god offered Kang Taeson a test. The ghost advised to accept this offer, because with the current strength, it would be easy for Kang Taeson to pass it, especially since Rakiratas was the only one among the gods who violated the terms of the treaties. Kang Taeson agreed to the test, winning the deity's approval. The system noted that in order to appoint him, Baltazar first obtained the consent of the residents of the 4th and 5th floors. The floor where Kang Taeson and the ghost were located shook and began to change. Entire parts of the floor moved and changed places. When it was all over, the ghost said that it was the first time he had witnessed anything like this. Kang Taeson hurried out of the hall with the altar of Baltazar. What he saw outside was different from the usual labyrinth and looked like a bridge over an abyss, on which stood several cube rooms. The ghost reported that Baltazar was one of those who created the labyrinth. Kang Taeson resolutely headed towards the first room, noting that everything needed to be checked right away. An orc armed with a sword was waiting for the player behind the door. The orc started fighting as soon as he saw the traveler enter the room. The orc was huge and fought skillfully. He immediately managed to hit Kang Taeson, but this blow did not cause any harm to the player. Only his unbreakable shield was damaged. Kang Taeson himself attacked the enemy with the Scarlet Ceremonial Blade. The ghost, watching the fight, realized that the essence of Baltazar's test was a one-on-one battle to victory. The ghost also noticed that the god had strengthened the fighters deployed against the player. The system noted that the orc was satisfied with the glorious battle. Kang Taeson managed to hit him with a powerful blow, and the system counted this victory. The player was surprised that it wasn't that difficult, but the ghost believed that all the strong opponents would come later, because there was no point in starting with difficulties right away. There were still 9 rooms ahead, and Taeson was wondering how easily he could handle them. After passing through a few more rooms, Kang Tae-sun noticed that with each victory his skill was growing, and with it, the unbreakable shield was increasing. A fierce battle broke out in the 6th room. Kang Tae-sun used reflection to automatically counterattack the enemy. Kang Tae-sun was much stronger than the orcs, but for some reason he couldn't crush them with one blow. He assumed that this was due to the difference in skill. He realized that the orcs weren't just swinging their weapons but were following a certain sequence. There was no point in simply copying their fighting style. Kang Tae-sun thought that he needed to learn how to handle weapons from someone else. The ghost asked if Tae-sun lacked skill with a sword, but did not answer the player's questions, instead hurrying to the next room. In the 7th room, a similar battle with an orc took place. In the 8th and 9th, everything repeated exactly the same way. Having finished with these battles, Kang Tae-sun caught his breath. He managed to finish quite quickly. They and the ghost approached the door to the boss's room. Kang Tae-sun didn't know how he could find the secret room of this floor under the changed conditions. But the ghost couldn't help him with advice, since it was also his first time in such a situation. Throwing open the door, Tae-sun declared that he would now have to look around every corner of the area after defeating the boss. Now a huge orc fighter was waiting for Kang Tae-sun. He looked exactly as Tae-sun had been told before, which meant there would be no additional risk in this fight. Suddenly, someone's crying was heard from the room, and Kang Tae-sun and the ghost saw a figure in green clothes and a pointed hat, who was crying bitterly and begging for salvation. It was a girl who was shaking with sobs and said that everything happened so suddenly. "Hey!" shouted the ghost. "Why are you here? Are you still alive?" The girl turned around and saw Kang Tae-sun. She rushed to him, begging him to save her. The girl said that the labyrinth changed suddenly, and she was thrown into this place. She found herself right in front of the orc. The ghost mocked the girl's situation and said that the labyrinth had changed because of Kang Tae-sun. Kang Tae-sun thought that the secret room's reward would most likely depend on the girl in green. He went to fight the orc, and the ghost confidently promised the girl that everything would be fine. The orc hadn't even paid attention to the girl this whole time, which led Kang Tae-sun to conclude that his only target was himself. The player activated haste and attacked the orc. A fierce battle began. Kang Tae-sun activated Strong Strike and successfully hit his target. The orc fighter entered Berserker mode. Using acceleration, Kang Tae-sun was able to deal with the enemy. Now the orc fighter was noticeably slower than the player. Kang Tae-sun activated Strong Strike and attacked. Its crushing power knocked the orc fighter over and Kang Tae-sun finally won. After defeating the 4th floor boss, Kang Tae-sun leveled up again. The girl in green was surprised that a simple adventurer from the 4th floor was able to defeat an orc fighter so easily and quickly. She asked Kang Tae-sun what he was. He replied that he was a gambler, causing the girl extreme surprise. Kang Tae-sun sat down next to her and asked who she was. This question caused confusion in the girl in green. She said her name was Lilith and she summoned magic. Lilith admitted that she came to the labyrinth voluntarily to learn more about the great secrets. Noticing that the word magic surprised her interlocutor, Lilith guessed that he came from a world where witchcraft does not exist. Lilith took out her sparkling staff and explained that not everyone could learn magic. She herself had no talent for it at all, but she wanted to learn it more than anyone else. That's why Lilith came to the labyrinth. She considered the labyrinth a place where one could achieve one's dreams. Lilith thanked Kang Tae-sun for saving her, but apologized for having nothing to repay him with, as she had run out of all the potions and ingredients. Kang Tae-sun said that Lilith has magical powers. Lilith was very surprised that her savior was interested in exactly this. Kang Tae-sun told her that he wanted to learn magic. Lilith replied that she had risked her life to study witchcraft. She was grateful for the help, but it would be difficult for her to fulfill such a request. Kang Tae-sun and Ghost looked at the girl in bewilderment. The player didn't know if he should start persuading her, and Ghost directly asked why she was refusing them. The Ghost stated that Lilith had nothing but magic, which she valued very much, but saving a life was worth more than lessons, especially since there was also a benefit in this for the witch herself, and then asked how many floors she had managed to pass. Lilith burst into tears again and said she had reached the 9th floor. The Ghost said that with her abilities it was impossible to go further, but this guy would continue on his way because the gods themselves recognized him, and it was because of him that the labyrinth had changed so much. The Ghost assured that Kang Tae-sun would reach the very depths and perhaps save those in the abyss. This will be an opportunity for Lilith to learn magic that she never even dreamed of before. Lilith exclaimed that she had rethought everything and was ready to teach Kang Tae-sun. She was glad because moving forward together would be much more fun, but she would not be able to start teaching Tae-sun right away because she was not in her place, but where she was dragged against her will. Lilith said that she would return to her place in the secret room of the 6th floor and then threw an invisible cloak over herself, as if made of the fabric of reality, and disappeared under it. The ghost and Kang Taeson watched her go, surprised at what kind of magic she could use. Kang Taeson asked the ghost why he suddenly helped him, but for some reason the ghost got angry and started yelling at him. Kang Taeson suggested that Ghost's attitude towards him had changed greatly after defeating the Goblin Lord, and Ghost admitted that he saw potential in Taeson, and that the change in his behavior was due to his own redemption. He promised to help the player on his journey from now on, but he needs to hurry up and complete this test. Kang Taeson opened the chat and found out that Lee Tae-young and Kang Joon-hyuk had cleared the first floor, and although they had not acquired all the possible skills, the others did not try to follow Taeson's advice at all. The player himself decided to disassemble the trophies he had received, one of which turned out to be a scroll of engraving, which could be used on his equipment. It was a reward for saving Lilith, and Kang Taeson used the engraving on the ceremonial sword of Rakuratus, making it even more powerful. The player really liked how well the properties of the scroll complemented the capabilities of the Scarlet Sword. Having sorted out the rewards, the Ghost and Kang Taeson began to descend further into the labyrinth, stopping by the merchant's shop along the way. The merchant reported hearing chaotic noise on the floors and asked if this was another test for Taeson. The old man wanted to know what the player was going to buy, but Kang Taesong first wanted to sell what he had accumulated. The player's attention was drawn to a jar of shining powder that stood on a shelf in the shop. Kang Taeson knew what it was, because it was blessing dust, which was made from pollen collected from the wings of fairies. The merchant said that the pollen was believed to bestow blessings, but no one knew for sure if this was true. There were those who tried to bathe in it, but they slipped. Others dipped weapons in it, but they only began to shine. Kang Taeson asked Ghost if he knew anything about such a product, but Ghost had never bought it either. In Taeson's past life, many people bought pollen in the hopes of receiving a blessing, but no one was able to achieve any effect, so the product was considered trash. That was until Kang Taeson discovered the properties of the blessing dust. Kang Taeson asked the merchant how many jars of pollen he had and was about to buy them all. The merchant was surprised because he also thought that it was a useless but expensive thing. Kang Taeson knew that the blessing dust gave him minute control over chance, so he took the 3 jars and said goodbye to the merchant. The ghost was tormented by curiosity, but Kang Taeson did not explain anything to him, saying that the effect of the remedy could be seen with one's own eyes quite soon. The system reported that Baltazar was waiting for Taeson to give him his reward, and the ghost said that the gods were willing to reduce their area of influence in order to grant Taeson their favor. The ghost was amazed that Kang Taeson didn't know how important the zones of influence were to the gods. The gods never allow their spheres of influence to diminish for the sake of those who worship them, and grant people only minimal rewards, passing them off as something worthwhile. The ghost claimed that the gods' attention to Kang Taeson demonstrated how highly they valued him. Kang Taeson replied that he was only doing tasks because it brought him rewards, and entered the first room of the 5th floor. A huge orc fighter was waiting for him just outside the door. The fight had to start immediately. Kang Taeson activated Strong Strike and consecutive attacks. The Scarlet Ceremonial Sword crossed with the orc's sword, sparks flying. After a few moments of fighting, the orc fighter was defeated. Kang Taeson explained to the ghost that such a quick victory over such a strong opponent was possible thanks to the engraving scroll. The player concluded that if such a powerful monster was waiting for him in the first room, then the boss in the last room must be insanely strong, and the stronger the enemy, the higher the rewards. Kang Taeson went through the next rooms, killing enemies, but it became increasingly difficult to do so. The player was supported by the thought that by clearing this floor of monsters, he would not only receive a reward from God, but would also be able to begin studying magic. He asked the ghost how he knew Lilith. The ghost replied that when he was a traveler passing through the labyrinth, he also found a girl in green clothes on the 4th floor. She was sitting in front of a huge orc. He took pity on the girl and saved her from the orc fighter. The ghost said that time in the labyrinth flows differently than outside, but about 100 years could have passed since then. During this time, Lilith was unable to get further than the 10th floor. Kang Taeson thought that there were many more characters in the labyrinth than he expected to meet. In another version of the labyrinth, the door to the room full of goblins creaked open. Someone threw a pebble into the resulting gap, which skittered across the floor tiles. Lee Tae-yeon hid behind the door with her sword and distracted the goblin's attention from herself. The girl pounced on the enemy, taking advantage of his confusion. So, one by one, she managed to defeat all the goblins in the room. At this time, Kang Joon-hyuk reached the altar of Rakuratus. Kang Taesang advised Kang Joon-hyuk not to get involved with this deity, and he listened to the advice. Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk have come to trust Kang Dae-sun because thanks to his advice and the skills he helped them gain, they were able to survive in the labyrinth. Low-difficulty player Choi Jun-hyuk dismissed the stories of these players, believing that they were exaggerating. Lee Tae-yeon didn't understand why this man didn't believe her words. Choi Jun-hyuk believed that it couldn't be too difficult to defeat the rat on the first floor, and other players in the chat agreed with his words, accusing the solo players of lying and bragging. Kang Jun-hyuk was outraged by the attitude of the other players. He was angry at Choi Jun-hyuk, but he said that those who chose the solo mode were to blame for their own difficulties and had no right to whine. Kang Tae-sun looked at the chat, calculating how much time had passed since the labyrinth appeared in people's lives. This time was enough for the players of the simplest and normal modes to adapt to the new living conditions, and as long as they behave carefully, nothing will threaten them. People need to vent their pent-up emotions somewhere, if not on the enemy, then on other players they meet in the chat. Kang Tae-sun remembered this period from his past life, but things weren't so bad back then. Choi Jun-hyuk incited hatred among people online and directed it towards solo players and Kang Tae-sun personally. He believed that Tae-sun's advice on how to obtain unique skills was just advice on suicide. Kang Tae-sung entered the chat and Choi Jun-hyuk unleashed all his indignation on him. This guy had already created a guild of low-level players and needed a common enemy to control the crowd. So he directed the collective anger at the solo players. Players of different modes cannot meet in the labyrinth, and the stories of the loners sound impossible to others. Kang Tae-sun had knowledge that other players couldn't access, so he typed a message specifically for Choi Jun-hyuk. Choi Jun-hyuk read it, and it said that they would meet in a month. Kang Tae-sun closed the chat and ran to the last room, followed by a curious ghost who still had no idea what Tae-sun had done. In the last room was the vice chief of the orcs, Latran. This was a powerful enemy, against which not all adventurers could put up a worthy resistance. The ghost expressed confidence that Kang Tae-sun would have no problem with this enemy. Latran was glad to meet Tae-sun. He said that his orc comrades had already left satisfied. Kang Tae-sun remembered that all the orcs he killed met their deaths with a smile. Latran said that the battle itself was more important to his people than killing the enemy. Latran called the orcs slaves, locked in the labyrinth, not knowing when they would be freed, and Kang Tae-sun gave them all a noble death. This orc drew his sword and declared that he too intended to die with dignity. The system reported that Latran had activated powerful abilities. This was a formidable enemy. Kang Tae-sun was glad because this was exactly the kind of opponent he wanted to meet. He was easier to defeat than either opponent expected. And before his death, Latran asked if he had been defeated by an ordinary adventurer from the 5th floor. Latran managed to notice that Kang Tae-sun was not a master of swordsmanship, but he could use air weapon mastery and moved like a fighter with a lot of personal experience. Latran was glad to accept death from such an enemy, and he wished Tae-sun victory. The system reported that Baltazar's test was successfully completed and the 5th floor boss was defeated. Light feathers swirled in the air, and system notifications listed the trophies Kang Tae-sun had earned. One of the rewards was the trigger skill Proof of Victory, which allowed you to choose one stat that would constantly increase. Kang Tae-sung chose Mana and set Proof of Victory to this property. In addition, Kang Tae-sun was again offered the Apostle contract, but as before, he refused it. Baltazar was pleased with the choice the player made, and as a reward, 2 chests appeared in front of Kang Tae-sun. The ghost assumed that one contained a regular reward, and the other contained a reward that had been moved from the secret room when the layout of the labyrinth changed. In the chest, Kang Tae-sun found a shining, ornate sword, which had similar stats to the ceremonial sword of Rakarathas. The second chest contained the Knife of Self-Sacrifice, which allowed you to accumulate health. Kang Tae-sun immediately tested it, cutting his hand until it bled. The knife acted like potions, restoring health which could be useful in emergency situations. The reward for the stealth exploration was the Robe of the Dark Vaults, a cloak that lasted for 1 second. Kang Tae-sun put on his cloak and became invisible. Now he was ready to move on. The ghost asked if Kang Tae-sun would now be walking with 2 blades at once, and reported that his own sword school was similar. According to the ghost, he was a sword master and developed sword art himself based on the schools of the Kavert Empire. But he did not intend to teach Kang Tae-sun because his current stats were not suitable. Kang Tae-sun doubted his words, but the ghost told him to focus on diving into the abyss, and when he became even stronger, he would inherit the skill. The 6th floor looked like a swamp, with stunted trees growing and a greenish fog swirling around. Kang Tae-sun trudged through the swamp mud, remembering how Lee Tae-young had complained about this place. Lee Tae-yeon also said that the local monsters were not affected by the swamp and could move around it without difficulty. Two anthropomorphic lizards armed with tridents appeared from behind the nearby trees. Kang Tae-sun drew the flame staff and set fire to the ring of swamp around him. After that, he struck down the enemies with his weapon. The ghost asked how Tae-sun guessed that the swamp was also an enemy. The player did not answer him. The next lizard stood behind Kang Tae-sun, not approaching, and he called out to him. Tae-sun defeated this opponent with one blow. Ghost and Kang Tae-sun moved on, leaving the lizardmen's corpses to burn, and Ghost declared that it had been too boring a battle. They found a tower. One of the bricks in its wall was noticeably protruding. This was clearly a trace left by Lilith. Kang Tae-sun pressed this brick, and a staircase appeared around the tower. Lilith looked out of the window and happily invited the guests into her secret room. Kang Tae-sun and the ghost went upstairs. Lilith sat on a chair and looked thoughtful. There were shelves with books and vessels along the walls of the room. The ghost rudely asked the girl what she was doing, and Lilith happily reported that for the first time in her life she was posing as a great magician. Lilith began to explain what magic was. According to her, this art could not be simply trained on one's own. It could only be earned or found a teacher. Using magic, one could do things that were not possible with skills, because magic could change space and time, as well as control fire. Lilith realized that if Kang Tae-sun was now her student, then he should treat her with special respect. Kang Tae-sun thought it was easy for him and addressed Lilith as master, but this caused the ghost to become angry. Lilith called magic a real mystery and then created a cloud of flame above her own palm. She asked Kang Tae-sun what he saw, and when he answered, she explained that he could only see like those who did not possess magic. Lilith knew a reliable and easy way to get magical powers. For this, it was necessary to make a contract with the god of magic. The ghost said that there were no cases of gods personally training someone. It only happened with Lilith. Kang Tae-sun asked if he would also have to make a contract with the god of magic. He had already rejected several apostle contracts and did not want to make this one. Lilith replied that such a deal would not be necessary, and then touched him, and the system notification noted that Kang Tae-sun had received magic. Lilith happily announced that anyone who possessed such power could pass on their skills to others. The girl created a flame above her palm again and asked Kang Tae-sun what he saw now. Now the flame looked different, and Kang Tae-sun felt different. Lilith waved her hand enthusiastically and announced that she would now explain to her student the various ways to study all types of magic. Lilith said that the simplest method was extracting magical power from some tool or staff. Kang Tae-sun had two staffs and he showed them to his teacher. Now they could take both items and extract all the power they had, giving Kang Tae-sun the ability to create fireballs and psychic attacks. After completing this action, Kang Tae-sun and Lilith noticed that both staffs had lost their color and turned gray. Kang Tae-sun created a fireball with his own hand. The second method involved learning from another magician or worshipping a god of magic, but only those who had made a contract with him could approach the god. Lilith brought gifts to the god instead of Kang Tae-sun, and then taught him the knowledge she had received, while he only had to pass on his trophies to the girl. Lilith was happy because now she would start learning new spells, and Kang Tae-sun asked what she could teach him right now. Lilith admitted that she received all her spells from God, and therefore had to ask permission before sharing them with her student. In order to obtain such permission, it was also necessary to bring gifts to the deity. Kang Tae-sun clarified that in order to learn a spell that Lilith didn't know, he would clearly need to obtain 2 offerings for the god as payment for both of them. Lilith said that weapons or armor could be suitable as a gift to a god, but they should be valuable, unique items. Kang Tae-sun took out and showed Lilith all his trophies. Lilith carefully examined the presented mountain of items and said that all of this would not be enough for even one spell, because these were ordinary items. The gift to the god required valuables, so Kang Tae-sun removed the master's necklace from his neck. Lilith was amazed because she knew that this thing belonged to the Goblin Lord, and therefore was suitable for learning a basic level spell. Kang Tae-sun didn't think this was enough, so he showed Lilith the Scarlet Ceremonial Sword. Lily said that this thing would also work, but Rakiratas might try to deceive. Kang Tae-sun was not surprised. The last item Kang Tae-sun showed Lilith was the worn wooden staff. Lilith explained that although the items were of the same level, the gods preferred items that were related to them, so the staff was the best offering of all. The girl asked Kang Tae-sun what spell he wanted. She couldn't ask for an invisibility spell because it was a high-level magic. There were spells such as Fireball, Frozen Arrow, Enemy Search, and Concealing Curtain. The last spell allowed one to be invisible and not attract attention. There was also magic that could create water and food, and Kang Tae-sun wanted to learn exactly that. Kang Taisang believed that the staffs could do other things, and he could always come back to learn more. Lilith took her own magic wand, topped with a shining crystal, and addressed the god. Kang Taisang felt a heavy gaze on him, and it seemed to him as if God was laughing. He saw a huge eye, with a starry sky instead of a pupil, and a stream of radiance emanating from it. When this was over, the system noted that Kang Taisang had received a spell that could conjure some water and food. Lilith was surprised that it was so easy to get the spell, because she expected there would be difficulties, and reminded that the warrior, who was the ghost before, had encountered them. The ghost stated that Kang Taisang was a completely different case, since none of the gods hated him. Lilith asked if Kang Taisang wanted to learn anything else, but he didn't have anything else suitable to offer. They agreed that Taisang would return later, when he had obtained more trophies, and said goodbye. Kang Taisang returned to the ominous forest around the tower, and he could light his way with a fireball. It was much more convenient to summon flames now that it no longer required additional items. The ghost said that from now on, they just needed to go further along the floors and bring the obtained things to Lilith. But Kang Taisang didn't listen to him, looking at the system's notifications. The ghost also looked at the message and saw that Taisang's unbreakable shield had grown noticeably. Kang Taisang began to undress, which greatly surprised the ghost. The player was going to take off all his protective equipment to look like defenseless prey in the eyes of the monsters. The lizards noticed him and immediately attacked. The trident that Kang Taisang used to hit the first enemy dealt him 20 points of damage. With the next move, the player threw the lizard away. The ghost asked Taisang what this strange training gave him, but the system notification showed the received trigger skill, which completely nullified the enemy's first attack. The lizard attacked again, but failed to inflict any damage on the player. Kang Taisang was able to take advantage of this and defeat his opponent. The ghost admitted that this skill was incredibly useful. In the past, Kang Taisang used the skill Nullify First Attack and could cancel any attack that the enemy used as if it had never happened. The ghost suggested that it would be impossible to obtain such a skill without the Unbreakable Shield. But Kang Taisang knew that it would simply cost him a lot of effort. Kang Taisang was able to earn unusual skills and was now going to continue, because so far, he had only received the nullification of the first attack. The ghost asked in amazement if there really was a way to reset the second and subsequent attacks. Kang Taisang walked towards the nearest door unarmed, and Ghost continued to wonder how he was going to block 2 attacks in a row. After all, even with the unbreakable shield, Kang Taisang's health units were not enough to do this. Kang Taisang replied that he had 3 more jars of blessing pollen. The ghost thought that the pollen was just a pretty trinket, but Kang Taisang poured the contents of all 3 jars on himself. After this, Kang Taisang decisively opened the door to the room where the lizard was also. The ghost was scared. He didn't understand how pollen could solve the problems with the insufficient strength of the shield. The lizard's trident was supposed to pierce Kang Taisang, but the first attack's nullification canceled out the strike completely. The second hit counted, but did less damage than it should have. The lizard continued to attack, and Kang Taisang relied on luck, because he knew that a lot depended on it. The next blow crushed Kang Taisang's shield. Fairy Dust gave the player control over the chance that using 3 doses at once would cause minimal damage. Kang Taisang received a second attack nullification, as he was able to withstand the lizard's attack without much harm. The battle was still going on, but the blessing pollen had not stopped working. Kang Taisang dealt a powerful blow to the lizard. He managed not only to push back the enemy, but also to break through the walls of the room in which the battle took place. The ghost said that Taisang would go to any lengths to gain abilities, and they then set out to find new enemies. The next lizard was struck by Kang Taisang with a precise blow to the heart. This earned him the ability Vital Strike. They stood with the ghost in the middle of a clearing strewn with the bodies of defeated lizards. Hitting a vital point allowed for much more damage to be dealt. With this skill, you could go to the boss of the 6th floor. Before entering the last door of this floor, Kang Taisang created a glass of water and a bowl of porridge using magic. Sitting down under a piece of wall, he ate the food he had received. They discussed with the ghost how to use mental attack spells. Lilith explained that magic in the labyrinth is also a kind of skill. Kang Taisang tried to create an object out of fire using magic, but he was not satisfied with the result. He imagined the desired shape, but it did not affect the result. The ghost said that what Kang Taisang was trying to do was considered high-level magic, and Taisang was unable to control magic of that rank. Kang Taisang created 3 fireballs. Kang Taisang continued to practice his new skills and created a ring of fire using magic. This was not the result he was trying to achieve, and so he looked thoughtfully at the 2 fireballs in his hands. He wanted to be able to combine fireballs, but the flames just hovered above his palms. Kang Tyson came up with the idea of testing what would happen if he launched a fireball into flight. In flight, the flame looked different than when frozen. Kang Tyson had a new idea for skill development, but he wasn't sure it would work. The player drank a potion that restores mana. Having fully restored all of his abilities, Kang Tae-san created a new fireball. He waved his hand to make the magical flame move as well. After this, Kang Tae-san ran, moving in the same direction as the fire. He continued to create fireballs as he ran. Stopping, Kang Tae-san thought about what else he could do with fire magic. He managed to come up with a way in which several balls could be combined. The ghost was amazed by the discovery made by the player. Kang Tae-san continued his training, intending to deal with magic in the same way as he did with the other skills in the labyrinth. Gathering several fireballs into one huge one, Kang Tae-san sent it towards the wall. The system notification noted that the player had learned the new spell Fire Volley. Tae-san's plan had been a complete success. With new skills, the player went to the boss of the 6th floor, a giant lizard. Kang Tae-san created the fire blast that he had been training for this fight. The flames hit the wall above the lizard, but failed to cause significant damage. Kang Tae-san activated despair and madness and sent them towards the enemy. Overwhelmed by these emotions, the lizard began to tear his own face with his claws. Kang Tae-san created a fire blast and directed it at the enemy. The next moment, he sent powerlessness and confusion upon the lizard. The ghost realized that the lizard was unable to resist the psychological attack and the flames at the same time and received multiple injuries. The lizard was unable to repel the incessant fire attacks and was defeated. Kang Tae-san said that he had previously only used magic as a support, but now he would be able to achieve much more. In the chest, Kang Tae-san found the engraving scroll and the ice heart staff. He also got the fighter's necklace, but compared to the Goblin Lord's necklace, it was much weaker, and Kang Tae-san was going to take his trophies to Lilith so that she could teach him new spells. The ghost said that he hoped that they would just move on now, and called Kang Tae-san a very calculating player. They found Lilith and gave her the fighter's necklace as an offering to the god of magic. Lilith took her staff and turned to her patron to request a new spell. This new magic was Ice Arrow, and Lilith immediately passed this skill on to Kang Tae-san. Kang Tae-san and the ghost found Lilith in a small house on one of the tall trees in the forest. Kang Tae-san hadn't known before that new zones could appear on a floor after it was cleared, but Lilith assured him that she was a master at finding such monster-safe places. Kang Tae-san activated the ice arrow and looked at it, thinking about the new possibilities it would open up. The ghost guessed what Kang Tae-san was thinking, but Lilith looked at her friends in bewilderment. She asked what they meant and what improvement they were talking about. The ghost invited everyone to go out into the open space, and Kang Tae-san demonstrated the fiery power of magic that he had mastered on his own. Lilith was amazed because it was a high-level spell, and she herself in 100 years managed to learn only one low-level technique: invisibility. Lilith exclaimed that the difference between spells of different ranks was incredibly high, and spells for beginners only imitated real witchcraft. Kang Tae-san offered to show Lilith how he achieved such a result so quickly. After a few seconds of training, Lilith fell to the ground, her face turning gray. Kang Tae-san was surprised that she couldn't learn, but Lilith said that mages never go through difficult strength training, and that's why it was so difficult for her. Lilith quickly recovered and stood up to thank Tae-san for teaching her the difference between the teaching systems. Kang Tae-san said goodbye to the girl. They agreed to meet on the next floor when he would bring her new trophies. The player descended deeper into the labyrinth, checking the changes in his characteristics. Kang Tae-san thought that most of the stats were superior to those he had in his previous life. The exit to the 7th floor was like the exit from a cave. When they approached it, the ghost said that their journey together was coming to an end. Kang Tae-san asked the ghost if he would teach him his craft. The ghost smiled and said that what he wanted to teach Tae-san was the sword arts of his empire. He spoke of the great empire of Karvut, a rich and developed country where power and strength were revered. In this place, the weak were considered useless, and it was considered right that they should become fair game for the strong. The imperial family that Ghost was a part of was no different from the rest, and Ghost fought fiercely with his relatives for the throne. Everyone in the labyrinth wondered how the Ghost could live in a world full of such people. The boy that Ghost once was wore a bloody crown and loved his world. He dreamed of returning, but he no longer had a chance to save the world he loved. After all, he was no longer the prince of the empire. He had become a small ghost who wanted to leave a tiny memory of his world. Together with Kang Tae-san, they came to an empty and partly destroyed room, which they considered suitable for training. The ghost said that the peculiarity of his art is a power from which there is no defense. The Empire's warriors used a special method of attacking the place where the enemy pointed his sword. Kang Taisang countered that there was a type of move that couldn't be blocked, but Ghost explained that he had to use much more force. Kang Taisang saw the ghost in the form of the prince, who touched him and said that the Sword of Cutting Thunder was the only reminder of his world. The system reported that thanks to the Thunder/Swordmaster, Kang Taisang had learned a high-ranking skill. Kang Taisang looked at the ghost thoughtfully, and the ghost told him to go try out the new skill. The player noticed that his Thunder Sword mastery was at 0, and the ghost explained that he only had permission to transfer the skill itself. Kang Taisang was ready to train on his own, and Ghost was going to give him advice. The ghost explained to Tessun how differently one should move if one followed the rules of his fighting school. He had to use the flexibility of his entire body, but Kang Taisang didn't even understand what the ghost meant. The ghost exclaimed that it was not easy to explain swordsmanship in words. According to the Phantom, it was not that Taisang lacked talent, but that he lacked experience, and the Phantom could not show him the techniques by example. The player had to acquire the skill on his own, and the ghost couldn't help with that. Kang Taisang remembered that when he defeated Haga Ha, he received a mastery enhancement potion as a reward. Now that he had drunk it, the Thunder/Sword mastery and his stats had increased. Kang Taisang seemed to see a ghost in human form, who was showing him the techniques of wielding weapons. Now the player could try to repeat the movements he had seen. The ghost looked at him with extreme excitement. It seemed to him as if it were he himself who was running with a naked blade towards the bright sun. Kang Taisang moved completely differently. He stopped and noted that the potion had worked. The happy ghost agreed with surprise and then thanked Kang Taisang. They went to the shop, and the merchant, upon learning what Taisang was going to buy, called the goods he had chosen trash. The player bought a rusty sword and said goodbye to the merchant. Kang Taisang went to train on simple monsters in the art of swordsmanship. Ghost thought that the purchase would be worth it. Soon, Kang Taisang noticed that he could anticipate all the enemy's ways of responding. The player held a blade in each hand and fought a lizard armed with a trident. When he defeated the enemy, his lightning sword mastery increased. The ghost watched the fight and expressed his approval, although he could not resist making comments. Kang Taisang knew that the battle with the lizard could have lasted much longer, but thanks to the new art, he dealt with it very quickly. To continue his training, Kang Taisang would engage in combat with one opponent after another, with the ghost following behind him, explaining what could be improved in the technique. After all the training, Kang Taisang made a fire near a piece of the wall and went to bed, wrapped in a cloak. The ghost looked at him and thought that he had an unusual companion, because he spent 12 hours in battles and another 6 spent on training. Kang Taisang himself said that he didn't find it tiring to live like this, but that it was fun, and definitely better than the future. The ghost wanted to know what Kang Taisang's life was like before, and thought he was crazy. The player began his new training session by throwing several stones into the air. He swung his sword and the stones fell to the ground, already cut in half. It was 4 days after Taisang learned the Thunder/Sword art. Kang Taisang felt like he had become a more skilled swordsman, but he still felt like something was missing. The ghost suggested the player to close his eyes. He knew that one of the lizards was approaching them from behind the wall. Following this advice, Kang Taisang experienced the world around him differently. He emptied his mind and now relied only on the premonition that the Thunder/Sword art gave him. He managed to strike the lizard by listening to this feeling. Kang Taisang opened his eyes and continued fighting, but it felt like ghostly wolves were following his every move. These wolves followed him and seemed to strengthen his attacks. He felt them as he dealt the decisive blow. Kang Taisang defeated the lizard warrior, and lightning sword mastery increased by 3%. Kang Taisang was surprised by what happened. The ghost said that it was the first sword of the lightning sword art called Wolf Fang. He explained that there were many more swords that could be learned, but they required opponents stronger than could be found even on the 10th floor. At this time, Lee Tae-young was crying by the fire she had made under the destroyed wall. She ate the meat of the monster she had killed, and the food made her sick. But there was no other food available. The girl dreamed of returning to Earth, and at that moment, a notification window lit up in front of her. The system announced the start of a special mission to return to Earth. It was necessary to survive and return. Lee Tae-yeon entered the chat where all the players were excited about the news they had received. People were happy that they could finally leave this terrible labyrinth. Kang Jun-hyuk wasn't sure that everything would be happy and simple. The players did not understand his doubts because the news of returning home could not be anything but happy. Kang Jun-hyuk recalled that the reason they all ended up in the labyrinth was because monsters had invaded Earth. The players had forgotten about this and were now worried. But it seemed to them that now, having become stronger, they would be able to cope with many things. Kang Taisang continued to train in the labyrinth while simultaneously browsing the chat. The ghost asked him what was so interesting going on there, and Kang Taeson explained that soon all the players would exit the labyrinth. Kang Taeson practiced ice arrow magic. He told the ghost that he would find out everything when the time came, and that Taeson himself needed to try to conquer the labyrinth even faster. In the chest of the secret room on the 7th floor, Kang Taeson found the Rune of Dexterity, and his agility increased by 10 points. Defeating the boss of the 7th floor, the Elite Lizard, was not difficult. As a reward, Taeson received the Tattered Earrings, which increased mana by 10 units. The second trophy was Pure Leather Armor. Kang Taeson met Lilith again and was able to learn a new spell, Basic Detection. Lilith asked when Kang Taeson was going to learn something new, but he admitted that he would only do so after he had mastered everything she had. Kang Taeson glanced at the chat more and more often, and Ghost noticed that this was already called addiction. Taeson replied that he hadn't seen the player who wrote a lot of slander in the chat for a long time, and now he was probably going crazy because he didn't expect such a future. At this time, Jong Yoon-hyuk was tormented by various thoughts, and one of the players of his guild asked what they should all do when the players of other modes came to take revenge on them. Kang Taeson looked forward to the start of next week. They entered the 8th floor with the ghost, which looked like a green valley, in the sky of which huge birds, marcans, soared. With a furious cry, the bird flew towards Kang Taeson. Bright flashes struck the ground and a nearby wall fragment. Kang Taeson rushed towards the marcanda. He managed to defeat her in flight. The monsters in this place act according to their instincts, Taeson told the ghost, so catching them is easy. The ghost replied that the swordsman's skill was created primarily against other people, but Kang Taeson used it against animals. Kang Taeson decided to use this floor to try combining ice and fire magic. He was able to create ice cubes and encase his opponents in them. Walking along a narrow passage over the abyss, Kang Taeson saw a huge bowl filled with shining water. This was the altar of Omen, the god of trials, who delighted in adventurers discovering new powers and talents within themselves. The system reported that Omen wants to offer a trial for traveler who came to his altar. Kang Taeson said he had no reason to refuse. A column of water rose from the altar bowl. Kang Taeson and Ghost watched the scene, and Ghost guessed that Omen was creating a wall of water. And so it happened. A high wall of glowing water rose up around. Black smoke began to rise from the bowl. Following the smoke, black water spilled onto the floor, completely different from what was in the bowl. The black water turned into a tall figure with a sword. Kang Taeson decided that he should first observe this enemy while the water warrior attacked him. This enemy moved slowly and was easy for Taeson to defeat. Immediately, black fog began to swirl over the bowl again, and black water splashed out. Another monster from the water was ready for battle. This opponent was faster than the previous one, but he was still too slow for Kang Taeson, and the player easily defeated him. Kang Taeson guessed what Omen's test was. The ghost agreed that there were now opponents for the adventurers from the 1st and 2nd floors, and by the end of the test, Kang Taeson would know his own level. A new warrior attacked the player. Kang Taeson was happy about the test because he himself was curious about how great his powers were. Kang Taeson passed the 3rd test with ease and received an increase in intelligence. After the 4th test, the player's agility increased by 2 points. The 5th opponent was noticeably stronger and faster than the previous ones, and Kang Taeson also noticed that they were starting to use skills. The player has activated Ice Arrow. This weapon smashed the water warrior to pieces. Kang Taeson defeated the 6th warrior with the help of fire. The player was glad that after each battle his mana was restored. This gave Taeson the opportunity to explore many different techniques and methods. When the water shadows of the current floor of Kang Taeson were about to appear, the player used the confusion spell. The 8th battle was also easy for him, and he was looking forward to further developments. For some time, no one else appeared from the altar. The ghost suddenly laughed and shouted that he understood what was happening and that it was very ridiculous. Omen's test level was no higher than the floor the player was on, so in order to continue, the god had to pay a price. The ghost explained that the deity was curious to see Kang Taeson's potential, but Omen was not ready to reduce his area of influence yet. Kang Taeson stood thoughtfully over the altar and thought that this was taking too much time. It would be more useful to go through the labyrinth. The altar cup seemed to react to these words and splashed water again. Kang Taeson saw that Omen had decided to offer him a more challenging test. The ghost looked at this and laughed until he cried, because the system reported that Oman was experiencing mixed feelings. Kang Taeson waited impatiently for the shadows from the floors he had not yet reached. A new shadow rose from the altar. Kang Taeson managed to hit her as well by activating spiritual growth. In addition, the fight with the 9th opponent increased skill and dexterity. Kang Taeson noticed a detail that was unclear to him. The water shadows of the warriors did not resemble a specific person, but they must have had their own story. Among them were those who lost the trial, those who made a contract with God, those who sold their souls and ended up in the abyss. All of them were shadows of different warriors who were lost in the labyrinth. Kang Taesun activated Fire Blast and directed it towards the water shadow. He caused madness. And lastly, he created ice arrows, which finished off his 10th opponent. The player asked the ghost if these shadows were really not ordinary toys of the gods, since each of them had their own fighting style that they could try to adopt. Starting from the 13th shadow, the water warriors demonstrated new skills in battle. The shadow from the 14th floor relied too much on its unique abilities, so it was easier to defeat than the previous one. The 15th opponent was equal in strength to Kang Taesun or even stronger. To deal with him, the player used Fire Blast. Accelerating the flame to high speed, Kang Taesun directed it at the water shadow. Under cover of fire, the player launched an attack, augmenting his own strength with the Power Strike ability. Kang Taesun thought that he himself had more trump cards than shadows. After completing the 15th trial, Kang Taesun saw that these fights not only gave him experience boosts, but also increased his spiritual growth and other statistics. He found it amusing that there were about 60 different characteristics added in total. The ghost said that this was only possible with Kang Taesun. He was very curious to see how much stronger the player would become at the end of these trials. When it was time to fight the 18th shadow, Kang Taesun once again felt the presence of the ghostly beasts that accompanied his strikes. And yet, the water shadow got so close to him that he had to activate attack nullification to counter it. The Phantom commented on this fight, stating that the planned mutual destruction had failed, and Kang Taesun had defeated the 18th opponent. Ghost stated that nullification is easy to mislead the enemy because the system alert only appears after the hit has been dealt, and before that, the enemies cannot react to it. The 19th shadow attacked the player, and Taesun had to defend himself by using 2 swords at the same time. The system reported that this opponent was an enemy that could not be defeated, but this did not stop the player. The system counted this reaction as a passed test and assessed Kang Taesun's determination to go into battle against an invincible enemy. After going through so many trials, Kang Taesun had many enhancements against dangerous opponents. Water Shadow Raised Storm. This skill could make one spin and strike at 270 degrees. Kang Taesun knew the weak point of such an ability. When the water shadow turned its back and could no longer stop its movement, it was time to strike. Kang Taesun put extra power into this strike, and the enemy was defeated. The player understood that he managed to deal with this opponent thanks to his additional abilities, but such a situation might not happen again. The water shadow of the 20th floor stood in front of Kang Taesun. The system reported that this shadow will activate absolute victory. Kang Taesun was full of confidence not to retreat, so he passed this test as well. He missed the blows of the 20th shadow by using reflection. Even this ability did not help to completely avoid injuries. Kang Taesun activated Madness. Water Shadow used his counterattack ability, which trapped him in an impenetrable sphere. Taesun's attack was shattered by this defense, and he himself was thrown away from the enemy. Kang Taesun knew of such an ability, but he himself learned it rather late. He figured that the shadow didn't have much health left either, so he attacked it again. With the next blow, the shadow took away 210 units of health from the player. Kang Taesun used the Dark Vault Robe to make himself less visible to the enemy. The water warrior froze, not understanding where his opponent had suddenly disappeared to. Kang Taesun approached the shadow closely and struck. The ghost wolves accompanied this attack, and the enemy was defeated. Kang Taesun also fell to the floor to catch his breath, and didn't even look at the system's pop-up notifications. When he opened his eyes, he saw only what was happening with the Altar of Omen. Another water shadow rose from the spilled water. This shadow reached out to the player who was still on the floor. Kang Taesun looked at his new opponent, and strong emotions were reflected on his face. He raised his hands and said he wanted to end it there. The water shadow disappeared, and the system reported that Omen's test was complete, but God was silent about the results. After checking the player's stats, Kang Taesun and Ghost saw that the trial had given him incredible growth. Ghost was amazed that an adventurer from the 8th floor had defeated a shadow from the 20th. Looking at the altar, the ghost noticed that he could see how much Omen's powers had diminished. As a reward, Kang Taesun received the Ring of Witness and an ability that increased all of the player's stats when fighting an enemy of equal level. Omen also offered Taesun the Apostle Contract. The altar splashed water in farewell, and the wall around the duel site disappeared. Kang Taesun noted that his current strength level was equal to the 20th floor, but now he needed to return to clearing the 8th. After defeating the boss of the 8th floor, Kang Taeson found the ankle protector in the chest of the secret room. The boss of the 8th floor, Markonda Rutia, lay before him, killed by an ice block. Kang Taeson sat down right on this ice. Ghost admitted that the skills he had gained in Omen's trial had made Taeson even stronger. The reward of the 8th floor was the Marnaya rune, which granted attributes based on the probability of using runic weapons. In addition, Kang Taeson received a skill that, every time he attacked an enemy, sucked out some of the enemy's stamina, which was useful during protracted battles. Having collected everything he could from the 8th floor, Kang Taeson decided to speed up the descent, since there were 4 days left before returning to Earth. On the 9th floor, the enemies were goblins in thick armor and masks that covered their faces. Kang Taeson easily took on several opponents at once. The player was surprised that the goblins turned out to be stronger than the lizards. The ghost said that they obviously trained somehow, probably their leader taught them this. Kang Taeson knew that the one he had defeated before, Hagahwa, was the previous leader of the goblins, and the current one was somewhere on this floor. With 3 days left before returning to Earth, Taeson reached the Goblin Elder, armed with a sword and a staff with skulls. The Goblin Elder began with a psychic attack, which he sent using his staff. Kang Taeson wrapped himself in the cloak of concealment and moved closer to the enemy. He cut off the goblin's head with one blow. Together with the ghost, they stopped near a wall, the painting on which depicted many goblins. Kang Taeson activated trap detection and sent a search pulse towards that wall. Behind it was another room, in which sat a huge goblin. The system called him Looter, the Lord of Goblins. Looter said that if Kang Taeson killed Hagahwa in battle, he would die satisfied. Looter thanked the player for Hagahwa and said that in the end he was destined to be killed too, but he wanted to leave something as a memento of himself. He stated that dying as a goblin lord was better than remaining a simple fighter. Kang Taeson decided that Looter had ousted Hagahwa because of his greed for power. Looter stood up and picked up 2 long spears, stating that he knew this day would come, but still felt strange. The opponents looked into each other's eyes, and the Goblin Lord said, "Let us fight, warrior." Kang Taeson's 2 swords and Lutra's 2 spears crossed, sparks flying. Kang Taeson parried the goblin's blows, but he was wondering how long it would take until he returned to Earth. Looter roared that he couldn't keep up with Taeson's quick movements and couldn't resist his skills and sword mastery. Kang Taeson asked him if he was going to give up. Looter continued to fight, declaring that he would never give up. He didn't care that he had no chance of winning. He was going to do his best. Kang Taeson replied that he was also ready to give it his all. Kang Taeson's powerful blow shattered the brickwork, and the crystals that hung from the ceiling rang as they swayed. Looter, who had fallen on this wall, was pleased with the force of the blow dealt to him. "Go forward, warrior," said Looter. Kang Taeson stood before the defeated Goblin Lord. He received the title of Kingslayer. Now, when fighting against a lord or king, he became stronger. Kang Taeson turned to the ghost and said that it was time to continue on their way. After visiting Lilith, Taeson learned the Veil spell, which could hide him from prying eyes. Then they visited the shop and bought a variety of potions. The reward for the 9th floor was the boots of increased speed. The secret room brought Kang Taeson the shining sword of frost. Now the 10th floor awaited them. This floor looked like islands floating above the abyss, covered with grass and the remains of stone tiles. Kang Taeson remembered the task that the ghost had given him. The enemy that needed to be killed was waiting for them on the 10th floor. The ghost thanked Kang Taeson for the opportunity to leave a trace of his existence in the world. The Phantom's world died, and after it the Phantom itself, but now at least memories of them will remain. The ghost regretted that he would not have time to teach Taeson the second sword skill, but he was sure that the player himself would cope with this task someday. Kang Taeson looked at him and thought that he himself was unsure of his future. The next monster's powerful steps made the ground shake. The ogre extended its huge paw towards Kang Taeson. Kang Taeson calmly grabbed the monster by its giant finger. He threw it back, hitting the ground hard. It was an easy victory. At the edge of the island was the secret room of the 10th floor. Kang Taeson opened it by activating trap detection. The ghost was surprised that with his current capabilities, Kang Taeson was wasting time improving his skills when he could have simply destroyed all the traps. A skeletal hand appeared from the wall of the secret room. The trophy blue ring needed to be removed from it. Now Ghost and Kang Taeson stood in front of the boss's room. The ghost said that behind this door is the one who killed him, and when Taeson deals with this enemy, the task will be completed. Kang Taeson took out the engraving scroll and the Marnia rune from his equipment bag. He applied them to the shining sword of frost, enhancing its properties. Kang Taesong asked if the ghost is considered a labyrinth creature. The ghost replied that he was technically bound to his grave, but the mission allowed him to follow Kang Taeson. Kang Taeson guessed that it was the task he had received that had bound the ghost to him until it was completed. Taeson was curious which rule would take precedence. The ghost had no idea what the player meant. At that moment, reality above them split, and they saw the starry sky. The planet Earth appeared among the stars, and the system reported that there were 0 days left until return. The ghost watched what was happening, not understanding anything. Kang Taeson knew what would happen next and was prepared for it. A powerful force pulled the player back to his homeworld. He saw mountains and next to them a city consisting of high-rise buildings. Kang Taeson fell onto the asphalt and smelled the asphalt and the scent of grass, which was very different from what was in the labyrinth. Kang Taeson lay on his back, looking up at the sky, and thought that everything happened exactly the same as last time. Only this time he had an excited ghost with him, who wanted to know where they had ended up. The ghost had never heard of such a place in the labyrinth. At first, Kang Taeson decided to go into a grocery store where there was not a single person and all the shelves were destroyed. The smell in this place was unpleasant, because in 3 months most of the products had spoiled. Kang Taeson only took long-life canned goods. Using fire magic, Taeson fried the food. It was a delicious meal that he frankly enjoyed. The ghost realized that they had entered the world of Kang Taeson, and the player's ownership extended to the ghost as well. Kang Taeson wasn't sure if this would happen because the ghost wasn't an object, but a living being. The ghost looked around and asked what kind of square-shaped objects he saw everywhere, which he called machines. Kang Taeson drew his attention to the rift in the sky and asked what he knew about it. It looked as if the sky was glass and had cracked open, leaving a hole in the sky where darkness was swirling. A green, shapeless, multi-eyed monster emerged from the rift. Kang Taeson said that it was what was destroying his world. The ghost said that he felt some kind of force, but he could only figure it out if he got closer. The green monster pounced on Kang Taeson. The player grabbed him by his long tentacle. Kang Taeson held the monster out at arm's length and asked the ghost what he thought it was. The ghost assumed that it was a slave of a deity, but the energy of the monster felt completely different. He didn't understand what it was, or why anyone would want to create such a creature. The ghost said that this creator was very strong, stronger than Rakuradas, and Kang Taeson meanwhile burned the monster with a fireball. The ghost asked if Kang Taeson had brought him along to ask such questions, but the player didn't see anything wrong with that. The system sent a new task. It was to arrive alive at the Anyang City Hall. Kang Taeson and the ghost were walking down a ruined city street, and there were no people around at all. The player assumed that most people chose not to enter the labyrinth, hoping to hide and wait for rescue on Earth. The corpses that lay in the streets of the deserted city were the result of such a choice. The ghost asked why Kang Taeson was walking so slowly, and he replied that he was going to meet someone. Ghost assumed that these were the players that Taeson taught his moves to in the chat, but Kang Taeson was expecting another person. First they heard footsteps, and then they saw a figure in thick armor. Kang Taeson looked at the man who appeared while he asked where he was going. Then the armored player asked what difficulty level Kang Taeson came from. It was Gum Jun-gun, smiling as he extended his hand to Daesun, inviting him to join the group of survivors. Kang Taeson looked at him and remembered him from his past life, how he laughed, and how he later died protecting people. Gum Jun-gun waited for the answer with a smile. Kang Taeson said that he would go with him, but at that time he was thinking about their past friendship. Gum Jun-gun brought his new acquaintance to a group of people gathered on the street. These people made a fire and tried to warm themselves. They were very happy about Gum Jun-gun's return and the fact that nothing had happened in his absence. Gum Jun-gun introduced Kang Taeson to the others, but was mistaken in assuming that he had completed the labyrinth on the normal difficulty level. Kang Taeson saw that there were about 100 people gathered, and they were all from the normal and easy levels. Daesun didn't remember any of them except Gum Jun-gun. Gum Jun-gun announced that everyone was now gathered, and they could head to the city hall. People were worried that they might run into a monster, but Gum Jun-gun promised to protect them all. People believed him, and were happy that they met a player with a high level of difficulty. Gum Jun-gun took up his shield and sword and was ready to lead the people. The ghost, invisible to the people, flew over their heads in indignation. He did not understand how the adventurers from the labyrinth could be so weak. Only Jun-gun seemed worthy to the ghost, but even he didn't look capable of descending to the lower floors of the labyrinth. The ghost didn't understand why Kang Taeson wanted to meet this guy, and why he joined such weak people. One of the crowd pointed in horror at something in the dark alley, calling out to Gum Jun-gun. A green monster emerged from the hole in the wall with a growl. The people hid, and only Gum Jun-gun went to fight the creature. Kang Taeson understood that this monster was weak, and these people could also try to deal with it. But only players with a higher difficulty level were able to truly fight these creatures. Gun defeated the monster, which caused admiration among the people around him. Only Kang Taesun looked at what was happening without delight. Gun dealt with all the monsters that appeared on their further path. The rest of the group hid for their own safety. Sometimes during the battle, another monster would appear. Then everyone ran away in horror. The creature almost caught up with one man, and he cried and asked for help. Suddenly, the monster disappeared. Its victim turned around in surprise. All that was left of the monster was a blood stain on the ceiling. But the people around did not understand what had happened. Gun returned and asked where the second monster had gone, but everyone thought it had simply disappeared. Gun didn't believe it and didn't understand who else could defeat the monster, because he was the only high-level player here. Kang Taesun caught his attention because he didn't show fear and remained calm the whole time. Gun commanded the people to move forward. They still had a long way to go. While Gun stepped forward and fought with various creatures, Kang Taesun secretly killed the monsters that appeared later. The ghost hovered over the crowd in rage, asking out loud why these weak people did not join forces and try to fight. The way they ran away from danger made the former heir to the Karvat Empire furious, and he did not skimp on curses. People followed Gun and showed no desire to do anything. The Phantom saw it as a personal insult that such worthless people had ended up in the labyrinth. Gun consoled the tired and crying, assuring them that they only had to endure a little longer. Kang Taesun asked the ghost not to be angry at these people because they once chose the easy labyrinth. The ghost didn't even suspect the existence of the easy labyrinth. He thought that it was the only one. But Kang Taesun explained to him how the modes of passage differ. The ghost always knew that the labyrinth was not divided in any way. Only the gods could sometimes put up barriers, but this was only done temporarily. Friends suggested that some creature did not know how to design the labyrinth, but simply carelessly copied it several times. Kang Taesun thought that it was very difficult to do something like this. Only a god or even someone of a higher level could do it. He thought about the fact that all the monsters that appeared were F-class, and in order to kill all the people, creatures of a higher level were needed. It all seemed as if someone was watching how humans would cope. Taesun had heard that the gods liked it when mortals put in great effort. The ghost cursed and whined that he hated looking at the weak. He wanted to go straight to his destination. He felt like Kang Taesun enjoyed helping others, but he didn't understand why he had to hide it. Daesung countered that he only helps those he sees potential in, and now he can befriend Gun along the way. He didn't care about other people, but he knew that they were extremely important to Gun. Kang Taesun remembered that in his previous life, Gun had led people like that too. But when he got to the city hall, he was in despair because he had not managed to save any of them. The sun was setting behind the horizon, and many monsters filled the streets. People stopped to rest and have a snack. They dreamed of 24-hour stores, but were afraid to go anywhere for fear of encountering a monster. Kang Taesun caught their attention because he had real ham, not the meat of killed monsters like everyone else. A strong guy approached Taesun and offered to share his food with him. The people around him called him the leader of the Athens Guild named Lee Chang-suk. Lee Chang-suk stated that if Taesun did not want to die when he returned to the labyrinth, he should give him all the supplies. Taesun asked the man if he was sure they would be able to return there. Lee Chang-suk was indignant that someone dared to look down on him, because the Athenian Guild was known to many. Daesung remembered that they would all die during the second return, but Lee Chang-suk didn't know this and attacked him. Gun prevented the fight from starting by shouting at the disputants. Lee Chang-suk was not going to give up. He asked who Gun thought he was. He said that he would not obey a high-level player just because he decided to accompany the group. Gun grabbed Lee Chang-suk and covered his mouth with his gloved hand. "I know what you think of me," Gun said, "and that's your right, but don't cross the line." Gun hit his opponent. When Lee Chang-suk was lying on the ground, Gun said that he would chase him away if he continued to act like that. People were a little scared by what happened. They had never seen Gun act like this before. That night, everyone went to bed, only Gun sat alone by the fire. Kang Taesun came up and asked why the one who was the most tired during the journey was on guard duty. But Gun objected that the people were too afraid. Gun believed that he had no choice. There were still many dangerous situations ahead of them, so he had to force people to obey. Gun fought the monsters to protect the others. He believed that thanks to Taesun, they had a chance to survive. Kang Taesun asked him if he really needed to go that far, since if he were alone, he would have reached the city walls long ago. Gun looked at his interlocutor in amazement, And he added that a player at a difficult level cannot help but understand that everyone who is destined to survive will survive, but the rest will die. Kang Tae-san didn't understand why Gum Joon-gun was so obsessed with people who were going to die anyway. Gum Joon-gun got angry and yelled at D-san, but looking into his face, the guy felt something strange. It seemed to him that Kang Tae-san had seen countless deaths. He was clearly not at the normal difficulty level of the labyrinth. Gum Joon-gun grabbed his sword. "Who are you?" he shouted in the face of the man in the cloak who stood in front of him. Kang Tae-san turned around, throwing over his shoulder that it was the first time he saw Gum Joon-gun like this, and that he would tell him his name when they reached the city. The astonished Gum Joon-gun could only watch after him. In the morning, Gum Young-gun entered the shelter where the people were sleeping and called out loudly to them. They could reach their destination in just 2 hours, so they had to hurry. Gum Joon-gun walked ahead again, armed with a sword. The first monster appeared from the alley, and Kang Tae-san thought that the creatures would only attack those who were going to the city hall. Anyone who tried to get there without an escort was either already there or died. Following the first monster, 2 more appeared. People started running away. Some boy hesitated, and the monster almost caught up with him. Gum Young-gun rushed to his aid and covered him with his shield. He knew he couldn't handle 3 enemies at once, but he just needed to stall for time, because the mayor's office was already very close. Gum Young-gun activated breath, hold attack, and turned to face the monsters. A pouch of tranquility powder appears in front of the player. Upon contact with an enemy, the pouch will explode and create a curtain. A bright beam cut the bag in half. The curtain separated Gum Joon-gun from the 3 monsters. The player called out to the people who were holding on to him. He didn't understand why they hadn't left yet. From the other side of the crowd, 2 more monsters appeared. Now the huddled group was surrounded, with only 1 high-level player protecting them. Gum Young-gun was confused. He didn't understand why they wanted to destroy them so badly. The player no longer had useful trophies. He could not win against the 3 creatures. And after his death, all the other people would die too. With horror, Gum Joon-gun thought about running away alone. He would have had enough strength and speed for this, but people looked in his direction in tears and with hope. Gum Joon-gun thought that they all believed in him and followed him all this time. Would they really have to abandon him? He couldn't choose what to do, because if he wanted to protect someone, he had to do it to the end. People saw his confusion and asked what happened. Gum Young-gun was not ready to die for these people. He dreamed that he had more strength. A man in a cloak stepped forward from the crowd and asked if Gum Joon-gun was going to leave. The monsters were getting closer and closer, and Gum Joon-gun asked if Kang Tae-sang was reproaching him. Kang Tae-sang replied that he would not blame him no matter what choice he made. And at that moment, he drew the shining sword of frost. Kang Tae-san wanted to know what happened on this day the last time Gum Joon-gun couldn't save everyone. The monsters attacked Gum Joon-gun, but they were unable to reach it, struck down by alien magic. Kang Tae-san stood above them, clutching the ice sword in his hands. He said it would be a little fun. Everyone, including Gum Young-gun, watched the fight in amazement. Kang Tae-san turned his back to the monster. With a growl, he reached out to the player. Kang Tae-san acted as if nothing had happened. The monster flew into pieces, engulfed in flames. Kang Tae-san suggested continuing on to the city hall. Very soon they reached their destination. The building was completely intact and looked safe. Many of those who came met their loved ones at the city hall and were delighted. Those who had already been here were amazed that so many people had come. It was the first time such a large group had come here. Gum Joon-gun attracted everyone's attention. Everyone knew that he was the one accompanying the people. He wanted to explain how it really was, but Kang Tae-san put his hand on his shoulder. From the detached expression on Dae-san's face, Gum Young-gun realized that he did not want to share the glory with him. Gum Joon-gun had to accept thanks. They all entered the city hall building. There were so many people here, Kang Tae-san guessed that about 100,000 survived. Tae-san kept to himself, avoiding the other survivors. Gum Joon-gun walked up to him and held out a bottle of water with a smile. Kang Tae-sang approved of Gum Joon-gun's use of the breath hold attack. Gum Joon-gun beamed and admitted that he learned this ability thanks to the chat. But he didn't fully trust the rest of the recommendations. Kang Tae-san said that he himself simply did what he wanted, both in the labyrinth and when he helped escort people today. Gum Joon-gun looked at him almost in tears. He grabbed Kang Tae-san's hand with both hands and began to thank him warmly. He understood that not only had they shared useful skills with him, but they had also saved him from death. And now, he was ready to always follow Tae-san. He didn't have time to finish speaking. A bottle of water flew into his face along with a demand not to say stupid things and to behave as usual. Gum Joon-gun continued to express his emotions, ignoring the skeptical reaction of his interlocutor. At that moment, another man in armor approached them and called out to Gyum Young-gun. It was the dark-haired girl with the sword, Mentor Hui Yon. Kim Hui Young came because she needed to clarify something. Kang Taeson remembered this player leader from the high difficulty level. She also remembered Kang Taeson from the chat and called both boys with her, saying that out of the 100,000 people in the city hall, only about 1,000 could fight against the monsters. Kim Hui Young acknowledged that most came from easy or normal regimes, and there were very few safe places to sleep and food supplies. Gun said that it was obvious that Kim Hui Young should take command. Kang Taeson was surprised to hear that the easy regime guy Choi Yun-hyuk was demanding that the role of leader be given to him. Kim Hui Young believed that a commander who couldn't stand up to even one monster couldn't be one, but Choi Yun-hyuk claimed that she was simply underestimating the easy mode players. Choi Yun-hyuk took hostages in order to achieve his goal. Gum Young-gun asked excitedly who had been captured. The hostages were Lee Tae-yong and Kang Jun-hyuk. Kang Taeson asked why they allowed themselves to be caught. Kim Hui Young said she did not know the details and that the captives were already tied up when she saw them. Kim Hui Young was going to observe the situation before intervening, but Kang Taeson had no intention of doing so, which surprised the woman. Kang Taeson said that he was going to trample this man. Kim Hui Young sharply objected that crimes and violence should not be committed. Kang Taeson said that the world has collapsed and the old laws are no longer valid. Kim Hui Young disagreed. She believed that rules should be followed and people cannot kill each other. Kang Taeson thought that she didn't change. He remembered Kim Hui Young in the destroyed world. She had strictly adhered to the rules even then. She died during the third return. She tried to save everyone and obey the laws. Kim Hui Young looked at Kang Taeson and thought that this man was dangerous and could commit murder. She saw no other choice. She had to stop him. Without warning, Kang Taeson struck Kim Hui Young, sending her to the floor. Gum Jun-gun shouted at him. Kang Taeson used magic. He disappeared before Gum Jun-gun could figure out how to stop him. Kang Taeson was in a hurry to meet Choi Yun-hyuk. Choi Yun-hyuk stood by the window, admiring the city. He liked the power he now had. He liked it when people fell on their knees before him, begging for mercy. In his life before the invasion, he would come to these unfortunate people and demand money, threatening them with death. He was looking out the window that day, and a sound caught his attention. He saw the monsters as they descended from the sky. In the labyrinth, one guy saved his life. He smiled and said that it is at moments like these that you need to help your loved ones. Choi Yun-hyuk looked at the man with surprise. He himself killed other players for trophies. There were no laws or rules in the labyrinth, but in such a confined space, even the slightest push could change everything. This place hosted high-level players. In case of disagreements, they could negotiate or use violence. Sometimes a reward could be obtained in this way. Choi Yun-hyuk liked it when people obeyed him. Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk were sitting in the same room, chained together. Lee Tae-young stated that if it weren't for the trick, Choi Yun-hyuk would have died much earlier, but he laughed in response to these words. He believed that luck was on his side, since he was summoned straight to a safe zone near the city hall. He attacked another player, glad that those he feared in the labyrinth turned out to be weak in reality. Choi Yun-hyuk believed that the solo players were too focused on survival, and therefore were not particularly strong. When the two showed up, Choi Yun-hyuk was busy torturing another player. He held a knife to the player's throat and ordered Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk to follow his orders. Lee Tae-yeon was the first to throw down her sword and surrender to Choi Yun-hyuk. "You should have been thinking about fighting instead of the hostage," he told the tied-up girl. He mocked his captives, claiming that the loner players, nothing of itself, do not represent. At that moment, Kang Taeson entered the room and asked if Choi Yun-hyuk really believed it. Kang Taeson was wearing a cloak and was difficult to recognize. Lee Tae-yeon looked at him carefully and guessed who it could be. Kang Taeson threw back his hood, revealing his face. Choi Yun-hyuk looked at this stranger and felt how dangerous he was. They stood opposite each other, and something dark was swirling in the air. Yun-hyuk's instincts were screaming at him to not let this man get close. Choi Yun-hyuk grabbed the phone and shouted that if the stranger came closer, he would order the prisoners to be killed in other places as well. "Stop!" came a voice from the door, and everyone in the room turned around. Kim Hui Young and Gum Jun-gun stood on the threshold, ready to intervene. Choi Yun-hyuk said that he needed power and security, and then the captives would remain safe. Kim Hui Young replied that no one would give power to a player of the lowest level. Choi Yun-hyuk admitted that high-level players were strong, but he was the leader in his regime. He stated that Kim Hui Young had never commanded anywhere, so he did not dare to underestimate his experience. Choi Yun-hyuk thought that high-difficulty players were good at killing monsters, but they couldn't handle humans, and this Song wouldn't dare touch him either. The phone in Choi Yun-hyuk's hands disappeared in an instant. Kang Tae-sun used magic to take it away and crush it, causing the pieces to spray out. Choi Yun-hyuk didn't have time to understand how it happened. Kang Tae-sun looked at this man who disobeyed the laws, oppressed people, but did not remember that he himself could become an object of humiliation. In a rage, Choi Yun-hyuk wished for Tae-sun's death, and something jingled in his pocket. The building's massive metal supports began to collapse, breaking through the ceiling. Gum Jun-gun called out in fear to Kang Tae-san, who was standing in a dangerous place. Kang Jun-hyuk and Lee Tae-young watched in horror as the heavy structure collapsed on Kang Tae-sun. Choi Yun-hyuk looked at the scene with a crazy look. He couldn't believe that his seemingly invulnerable opponent was defeated. His madness only became more apparent when he saw the system notification that Kang Tae-sun had taken 0 damage. The others also saw this notice and could not believe their own eyes. Kang Tae-sun crawled out from under the rubble. Choi Yun-hyuk shouted to his accomplices to all rush towards him to kill Kang Tae-sun. Armed members of his guild burst into the room. Kang Tae-sun calmly summoned an ice sword. Kim Hui-young also couldn't believe what she saw. Kang Tae-sun stood surrounded by many people who were about to kill him. The ice sword in his hand glowed faintly. He struck so fast that it was impossible to keep track of them. Choi Yun-hyuk kept his eyes on him as blood splashed onto his face. Kang Tae-sun killed everyone and noted that Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk would have lost against so many opponents. Choi Yun-hyuk looked at him in horror and anger. Kang Tae-sun came very close to him and extended his hand to his face and said that he would not lose. People on the street took advantage of the safe time and even complained of boredom. The ghost sank down onto the green lawn to bask in the sun's rays. A loud noise caught their attention and they saw part of a wall collapse on one of the upper floors of a nearby building. The man in the cloak held the other by the head and pushed him towards the void. The ghost recognized Tae-sun and was delighted, thinking that something fun was beginning. Jong Yun-hyuk hung in terror above the void and tried to grab the hand that was holding him. He was less than half a step away from falling. He wondered out loud that a man like Tae-sun could exist. Kang Tae-sun replied that Yun-hyuk had said the same thing in the past, and both times he had died at Kang Tae-sun's hands. With these words, Tae-sun squeezed his fingers tightly. Blood spurted as Choi Yun-hyuk's skull shattered in Kang Tae-sun's hand. Kim Hui-young and Gum Jun-gun were shocked by what they saw. Kang Tae-sun unclenched his hand, noticing that he had killed the man in exactly the same way last time. People looked in horror at the dead body that had fallen on the asphalt. They were scared that the man in the cloak had killed someone. They shouted that he was a murderer. Kang Tae-sun, accompanied by the ghost, descended from the building and walked away, thinking about what and how happened in his past life at this time. At that time, he was one of the simplest level players, and Choi Yun-hyuk was the leader, and it was not so easy to deal with him. He looked at his hand, stained with blood, and was surprised that it had been so easy this time. He was standing against the wall, cleaning his hand, when Gum Jun-gun approached him. Gum Jun-gun was worried about him because Hui-young and the others told him about what happened. In one of the city hall offices, people came to express their outrage at what had happened. They believed that no one should allow themselves to kill people and take justice into their own hands. Kim Hui-young sat in front of them, covering her face with her hand. They demanded that she punish the criminal. She stood up abruptly, interrupting their screams. "How do you propose to punish someone who even I can't handle?" Kim Hui-young asked. The older man said that she didn't know how to do it because she used to be a university student. He believed that the world couldn't leave someone as reckless as Tae-sun unchecked just because he had power. Kim Hui-young had a hard time with this man, even though she invited him because he was a congressman and a member of the Civic Party. She had no idea that such people would be useless in the new world and would not even try to pass the labyrinth. Kim Hui-young couldn't imagine how to punish someone like Kang Tae-sun, who was not worth fighting with. Kim Hui-young thought that everyone around her only cared about their own authority. She looked at these noisy people and imagined that from the outside she might appear just as power-hungry. The system window that appeared distracted her from such thoughts. People nearby also received a message about the approach of the first wave of monsters, from which the City Hall building had to be protected. The excited people threw open the door to the office. They shouted about the attack of monsters and wanted to know what to do now. Those who were on easy mode did not want to take part in the battle. Kim Hui-young shouted at them. She turned to the table where those who had just given her advice were sitting. But the office was empty and only overturned chairs lay on the floor. Kim Hui-young was angry that these advisors of hers could only engage in useless talk. Kang Tae-sun also received the message, but he was confident that Kim Hui-young was able to handle the problem herself. Lee Tae-young and Kang Jun-hyuk called out to him. Kang Jun-hyuk thanked Kang Tae-sun for saving him, and then saw the ghost and asked what it was. The ghost didn't expect that people would be able to see him. Kang Jun-hyuk asked if Ghost was part of some mission, but Ghost stated that he was not going to give them anything. Lee Tae-young looked straight into Kang Tae-sun's eyes. He remembered what she was like in that past life, confident and strong. And he also remembered how he found her dead that last time. Now she was completely different from that girl. And Kang Tae-sun noticed that she was afraid of him. Kang Tae-sun said he was glad to meet them and asked if they had seen the system's latest message. When he told them to draw their swords, both players were surprised. Kang Tae-sun told Kang Jun-hyuk that he had become too bold in the labyrinth and that he needed to understand his limits. Lee Tae-young he said that she is too timid. Kang Tae-sun didn't want to see these two die, so he decided to teach them something. He sent them both a challenge to a duel. Taking out his sword, Kang Tae-sun said that testing their capabilities would be useful to them. Kang Jun-hyuk asked if their levels were too low to fight someone like Kang Tae-sung. Kang Tae-sung explained that during the training battle, all the participants' stats will be equal. The duel could have been refused, but Kang Tae-sun believed that they were obliged to accept the challenge. Kang Jun-hyuk agreed, even though Lee Tae-young called him crazy. Kang Jun-hyuk was happy to show Kang Tae-sun his capabilities and strength. He understood that he wouldn't be able to defeat Tae-sun in a normal fight, but if he equalized all the characteristics, he would have a chance. Kang Jun-hyuk drew his sword and began to attack. Kang Tae-sun parried his blows with ease. It was not at all easy to counter the techniques that Kang Tae-sun possessed. Kang Jun-hyuk took 8 damage in the first minutes of the fight. He was not at all prepared for this turn of events. He realized that no matter how hard he tried, he still couldn't block Kang Tae-sun's attacks. Kang Tae-sun whispered that Kang Jun-hyuk just needed to admit that he was weaker. This made the player furious. He rushed into the attack, burning with indignation. A moment later, he was on the ground. Kang Tae-sung listed what makes the difference between fighters, adding that normal strength is not enough to survive in solo mode. Kang Jun-hyuk didn't understand why feelings, thoughts, and sensations could influence a fighter's characteristics. Kang Tae-sun said that he would continue this fight until Kang Jun-hyuk understood. Half an hour later, Kang Jun-hyuk collapsed on the grass again. Kang Tae-sun stood over him and asked if he had finally realized his true level. Kang Tae-sun turned to Lee Tae-young. The girl said that she already knows her capabilities and will never cross the limit. Kang Tae-sun replied that her problem was different and told Lee Tae-young to get ready. He attacked the girl and she needed to react in time. Lee Tae-young closed her eyes and blocked his sword. She was forced to crouch, but she managed to block the blow. With a loud scream, she tried to attack herself. Kang Tae-sun's sword flew dangerously close to her. Lee Tae-young barely managed to block it. The girl made another attempt to go on the attack. From the outside, her movements looked haphazard, but so far she had managed to parry all attacks. Kang Tae-sun put his hand on Lee Tae-young's shoulder. With one push, he knocked her down onto the grass. He asked if he liked it, whether schedule. He told Lee Tae-young that she was not as weak as she seemed. Kang Tae-sun declared the training over and was now going to teach them how to gain new skills and pass the labyrinth. The sky over the city darkened as he finished his story. Kang Tae-sun allowed the information to be shared with other players, and as he parted, he asked Lee Tae-yeon and Kang Jun-hyuk not to die. They looked at each other, not quite understanding him. Kang Jun-hyuk said that he used to think that Kang Tae-sun was a very cold person, but he suddenly said warm words to them. Kang Tae-sun replied that if he were a cold person, he would not share useful information with them. Now it was time for them to rest, and they went their separate ways. Kang Tae-sun checked how much time was left until the first wave. Kim Hui-young was studying the defense plans in her office and felt like she was going crazy. "What happened?" someone called out to her from the window. Kang Tae-sun stood by the window, and it was unclear how long he had been there. Kang Tae-sun advised her to close the window, since those with high stats could easily climb through it. Kim Hui-young looked at the man in confusion, and he asked her about the current situation. She explained that she wanted to take people out of the city hall building, divide them into groups and place them on different sides. Kim Hui-young was upset because some refused to fight, and those who agreed were not easily convinced. Kang Tae-sun offered to leave one side to him. "Ready. I am protect it yourself." Kim Hui-young asked if he could do it, but Kang Tae-sun had no doubts about it. She thanked him, and Tae-sun asked her to survive before leaving through the window. The countdown to the start of the wave has begun. People didn't want to fight at all. On the south side of City Hall, Kim Hui-young inspired them by her personal example. On the western and eastern sides, the leading positions were taken by Gyum Jun-gyun, Lee Tae-young, and Kang Jun-hyuk. On the north side of the city hall, there was only Kang Tyson, alone. A crack, already familiar to many, appeared in the glass wall of the building. Kim Hui-young watched the scene with anxiety and determination. A wall of green light separated the people. Many monsters of different kinds rushed towards the city hall. People screamed that the creatures were advancing. They tried to run away and called for help. Others pounded their fists on the wall that had emerged, which was even inside the city hall. Kim Hui-young commanded, urging people not to be afraid and to return to their positions. She resolutely chopped down the monsters with her sword. The monsters attacked people who were unable to defend themselves. Young, who was caught by the monster, received 7 points of damage and froze, not running away or defending himself. Kim Hui-young managed to save the guy who almost got caught by the monster, and then shouted to the others that these monsters' attacks weren't particularly strong. They just needed to be more careful, and they could all fight them together. People looked at how this girl fought and thought that, depending on the result of the fight with the creatures, they could receive a reward, so it was worth a try. They entered the battle with courage and were able to deal damage to the monsters. Kim Hui-young turned around and thought with a smile that finally the others had gotten down to business too. On the other side of the building, Lee Tae-yeon quickly attacked the creature and cut it in half. Kang Joon-hyuk also successfully dealt with monsters, and he liked it. "You two are so strong," the man watching them said. "It's as if you yourselves were monsters." Kang Joon-hyuk laughed and said that he wasn't that good. And Lee Tae-young smiled and said that the real monster wasn't here, but on the other side of the building. At this time, Kang Tae-san was defending his area in complete solitude. He fought with such strength and speed that he cut the monsters into pieces. It was a very short and successful fight. The ghost noticed that there were many attacking creatures, but they were quite easy to kill, so it was unclear why people were intimidated by such insignificant enemies. Kang Tae-san stood in the middle of the battlefield covered in monster pieces, and the ghost asked why the quest wasn't ending, if they had already gotten rid of all the enemies here. Kang Tae-san explained that all 4 sides had to be cleared, and then tried to pass through the green wall that separated the final mission site. For some reason, the player couldn't get through it, and Ghost assumed that it was to prevent people from other zones from interfering. Having dealt with their share of monsters, the people rejoiced. Young-gun looked with relief at the notification that the special task had been completed, and a well-deserved reward awaited the players upon entering the labyrinth. Following this message, others appeared, which stated that a second special task was beginning. It was necessary to protect the city hall from a second wave of invasion. The crack in reality let the first monster through, and people thought that it wouldn't be that hard to kill one. Young-gun looked at the creature that appeared with sudden suspicion. One of the players rushed at the creature with a sword, inspired by the thought of a reward. The player swung his sword decisively and struck the monster. He saw with horror that the damage his attack had caused was only 1 health point. The monster's tentacles grabbed the player in front of the terrified crowd. The monster tore off the player's head, and his body fell to the floor, covering everything with blood. Young-gun stood among many others who did not understand what exactly had just happened. The monster turned out to be invulnerable and more dangerous than all the previous ones. With its mouth open and tentacles spread, the monster moved towards the defenders of the city hall. Panic began in the crowd. People ran away with loud screams. Young-gun turned to them and shouted that they must not run away, because if they retreated now, they would all die in vain. The guy himself was frightened by what he saw now. A flash of light whistled right over his head. Young-gun turned around in confusion and asked what that was. He sat among pools of blood and many dead bodies. The monster approached, emitting waves of flame, and Young-gun wondered if they were really going to win this battle. Kang Tae-san sat on the carcass of the slain monster, thinking about how they had all literally become creatures that needed to risk their lives in order to win. People tried to pass through the transparent wall of greenish light, wanting to escape from the monsters. They couldn't penetrate the side that had already been cleared by Kang Tae-san. Kang Tae-san stood up from his seat and declared that he had to do it now. He started running along the wall, and the ghost flew after him. The ghost asked if the wall prevented him from leaving the zone completely, and Kang Tae-san replied that it did. In one of the multi-story buildings, there was a gaping hole from which monsters were emerging. Kang Tae-san killed everyone he saw with 1 blow and came closer, immediately receiving a message about the start of a special mission to destroy the vessel of the Black Swamp. Kang Tae-san knew that if he completed this task, there would be fewer monsters. A huge beast, similar to a wolf and a dragon, rose up to meet Kang Tae-san. Armed with 2 swords, Kang Tae-san rushed into battle. He already knew that he was facing a D-class monster. The numbers in a monster's name indicated their strength. The lower the number, the higher the rank. The monsters that launched a full-scale attack during this wave of invasion were F and E class. The beast that Kang Taeson was about to fight was a D-class monster with a 6-digit number. Once upon a time, humans were on the brink of extinction due to attacks by D-class monsters. Kang Taeson in his previous life had a hard time getting rid of this after his third return. This time, Taeson rushed at the enemy, and in his hand was the ceremonial sword of Rakiratus. Ghostly beasts accompanied his attack. The player was sure that now everything would be different. With 2 strikes, Kang Taeson dealt 64 and 72 units of damage to the monster. The monster's eyes glowed with a scarlet light as it continued to attack Taeson. The player thought it was useless and activated complete nullification of the first 2 attacks. Grabbing the monster's paw, Kang Taeson resorted to ice magic. The monster's paw became covered with an icy crust, but this did not stop him. Kang Taeson thought that he had a strong and persistent opponent, but the player had infinite stamina and could continue the fight using 2 swords at the same time. Kang Taeson struck the fireball straight into the gaping mouth. The monster retreated briefly, engulfed in flames. Kang Taeson looked at his opponent closely and realized that his goal was actually achievable. An hour later, the player drank the potion from his supply. The monster was defeated and Kang Taeson stepped on its carcass. He activated Ice Arrow. This blow was aimed straight at the rift in reality, and the gates between the worlds slammed shut. Kang Taeson successfully completed the special mission. The reward was due to him upon returning to the labyrinth. Kang Taesong thought that if there were no more reality rifts, then his work was finished. And at that moment, a message appeared saying that the special mission was completed. The ghost asked why the system sent the same notification twice. Kang Taeson explained that the other side had also completed their mission. At this time, Kim Hui-young, her armor splattered with blood, leaned heavily on her own sword. Finally, it's all over, the girl thought. She sat on the carcass of a fallen enemy and looked around, assessing the consequences of the massacre. Kim Hui-young thought about the people who tried to avoid participating in the battle. But after seeing hundreds of dead fugitives, they realized that there was no other way to save themselves except to finish off the monsters. The monster easily destroyed those who sought salvation at the transparent wall, and most of them died in vain. They had no opportunity to do anything. Kim Hui-young cried and blamed herself for what happened because she wasn't good enough. The people around noticed the changes with curiosity and how the wall was disappearing, which meant that it was really over. Kim Hui-young thought that she had to help Kang Taeson because no matter how strong the player was, the monsters that came this time couldn't be defeated by oneself. The girl started running towards the north side and called on the others to come with her. People were exhausted, many died or were seriously injured. Kim Hui-young said that she could not lose someone who would be a great strength and help to people in such a situation. The girl stumbled, but Kang Taeson managed to catch her in time. He reported that the northern side was cleared, and he did it even better than before. Kim Hui-young looked at the many dead people here on this side. She noticed that Kang Taeson was completely fine, but they had to risk their own lives here. Taeson replied that they would have to risk their lives to fight in the labyrinth as well. People looked at the messages that congratulated them on their victory, and those who survived were to receive rewards based on their own contribution and the results they showed during the battle. Of the 100 people, approximately 30,000 survived. Kim Hui-young told Kang Taeson that she was convinced that he was more suitable for the role of commander than her. Kang Taeson refused. He was a stranger to these people who loved Kim Hui-young more. The girl listened sadly as this man explained to her that she couldn't protect everyone. But these people knew that she had fought, risking her life, and done everything she could. People actually called out to her and asked what they should do next. Kang Taeson put his hand on the girl's shoulder and said that she needed to come to terms with the close and constant presence of death nearby. Kim Hui-young climbed onto the remains of some structure so that she could be seen better by everyone gathered. She told these people that many had died today, and that they had all ended up in a world where civilization and laws had been erased, and the world itself could disappear tomorrow. Kang Jun-hyuk and Lee Tae-young looked at their commander, realizing that this wave of invasion would not be the last. Kim Hui-young exclaimed that this was why they all had to survive. They had to do this for the sake of all who died, at least in order to find out the whole truth about what happened to the Earth. They had to survive and become stronger. Kang Jun-hyuk saw Kang Taeson and rushed to catch up with him. He asked if they would all be sent back to the labyrinth, scattered across different locations. Kang Taeson approached the rift in reality that had formed before them and confirmed that it was time to return to the labyrinth. Lee Tae-young asked if they could see each other again. Kang Jun-hyuk laughed and exclaimed that he would beat Kang Taeson at the next training session. Gum Jun-gun also called out to Daesun to thank him and promised that he would try to become stronger. Be sure to survive, Kim Hui-young told Daesun. We'll see each other again. Without turning around, Kang Tyson noticed that this was always his phrase, the wish to definitely survive. Streams of power enveloped the player, pulling him into the abyss of the rift. Kang Tyson looked thoughtfully as the reality of the labyrinth approached. Soon they and the ghost were already on one of the floors, so they returned back. They were right in front of the 10th floor boss's room. System notifications began to flash, informing about all the rewards the player had earned during battles on Earth. Crystals of different colors could be exchanged for gold, stats, skills, or mastery levels. The crystal could be exchanged for gold at a rate of 1 to 10, which was a good rate, but in the labyrinth you could always get yourself some gold, so it wasn't worth it. It would have been possible to buy any of the player's attributes at a ratio of 1 to 5, which would have given him around 96 points, but with his current average, it was a waste of money. In addition, it was possible to exchange the reward for a mastery level in a ratio of 10 to 1, a figure that could only be raised independently with time, experience, and effort. Kang Taisang knew that when the skill level increased by 20%, the essence of the skill changed. At level 1 of the detection skill, one could only find out the weaknesses of creatures. If you increase this skill by 20%, other important information will sometimes be provided. Kang Taisang called out to the ghost, who was deep in thought. Kang Taisang noticed that after returning from Earth, his companion was constantly thinking about something. The player asked him what would happen if he instantly increased the mastery level of the Thunder/Sword. The ghost replied that he had no idea what Taisang was planning, but he wasn't sure that it would end well. It was better to try to develop the body. Kang Taisang opened his stats and thought deeply about what he should improve so that it wouldn't be a gamble, because there were many good skills that could be improved. It was unexpectedly difficult for the player to make such a choice. Kang Taisang asked if he should find confirmation first. The 9th floor's safe zone looked like a tower, the top floor of which was ablaze, as if it had been destroyed by the fire blast. Lilith, who was in the tower, was coughing from the smoke. Kang Taisang entered and informed the sorceress that she had used the wrong combination. Lilith was amazed when the player told her that he could now instantly increase his skill level. She couldn't believe that Kang Taisang could interfere with the labyrinth's internal systems, since she herself was incapable of doing such a thing. Lilith explained that skill levels are regulated by the labyrinth, a place where untalented people can become stronger, but they are still limited by the rules. The girl assured that even the gods could not change the rules, and then asked to what extent Taisang could increase his skill. Lilith didn't expect to hear that the player could do it up to 50%. Kang Taisang sat near the table, on which there were many flasks and vessels for potions, and saw the excitement of his interlocutor. Lilith said that Taisang shouldn't tell anyone else about his powers. She guaranteed that people would try to kill him as soon as they found out. The player was surprised that everything was so serious. Lilith felt like Kang Taisang was making fun of her, while she was ready to cut off her finger to improve her skills by even 1%. Lilith explained that the higher the level of mastery in magic, the greater its usefulness. Kang Taisang's magic was only at a 2% level, meaning that he was unable to use even entry-level spells properly. Lilith said that there are several levels of magic in the labyrinth: basic, beginner, intermediate, advanced, superior, and all can be used. Normally, a mage could learn spells depending on his skill level, but Kang Taisang was able to master intermediate-level magic right away, which was a unique case. Lilith explained at what skill level which spells can be used. The girl hoped that her explanations would help Kang Taisang make the right decision. The player thought deeply about everything he had heard. When he and the ghost returned to the corridors of the labyrinth, he already knew what he would do. One of the crystals Kang Taisang used to increase his detection skill, and now he could easily find hidden rooms and obtain important information about his opponent. Kang Taisang decided that the faster he increased detection, the more useful it would be. After this, the player increased the level of magic skills, receiving magic acceleration and magic explosion. Now he was able to use magic properly, control fire, ice, and wind. Activating magic acceleration, Kang Taisang launched the blazing ball, noticing that it had become larger. This flame has noticeably increased in both speed and power. Encouraged by the result, Kang Taisang decided to test other skills and activated Ice Arrow. The player magically directed huge blocks of ice in any direction. Adding a magic explosion to this would cause the ice to shatter into sharp pieces. Large chunks of ice were embedded into the floor, with Kang Taisang standing between them. He thought he had made the right decision, and it was turning out pretty well. The boss of the 10th floor was a huge ogre fighter. Kang Taisang created a blazing ball right from the doorway and immediately launched it at the enemy. A bolt of flame hit the ogre in the face. Kang Taisang activated confusion and added magic acceleration to it. The ogre fighter clutched his head, overcome by magic. This technique drove him crazy and prevented him from continuing the fight. Kang Taeson added magic explosion and directed his power towards his opponent's head. The ogre fighter rolled his eyes and began foaming at the mouth. Kang Taeson saw how his abilities with psychic magic worked and added a few more techniques. The ogre fighter fell to the floor, seeing ice spears and gouts of flame aimed at him from all sides. Kang Taeson summoned a magic explosion, and the ogre's figure was swallowed by a wall of flames. The ogre fighter took devastating damage and was defeated. Kang Taeson said that with this magic he could easily climb up to the 20th floor, and the ghost confirmed that magic in the labyrinth is the basis of everything. Kang Taeson asked if the ghost had finished thinking about his difficult problems, if he had finally decided to speak up. The ghost said that all this time he was wondering why something like this appeared. Kang Taeson asked the ghost who it was. He wanted to know who destroyed his world. Some mortals transcend themselves through trials, which may be strength or faith. But once they reach a certain level in their field, they become more than human. The ghost spoke, and Taeson imagined a wild-looking warrior with a huge axe. The warrior's eyes were red and wild. The ghost explained that a Superman could become great, get rid of mortality, gain extraordinary strength, but his power would still be limited. The ghost knew that monsters had invaded the cities of Earth, and there were a lot of them. But when superhumans interfere with the affairs of mortals, they experience a great loss of power. It is considered madness, and they usually do not do so. There are other beings capable of this, who can interfere without losing their strength. These beings from the past, their names have long been lost. The ghost called these creatures the Old Gods. Their lifespan was not predetermined initially, so when they entered the mortal world, they did not lose their powers at all. The ghost never saw them personally, but learned about them from legends, found some information in the labyrinth. It took him a moment to think about all of this, including the fact that there had once been a war between superhumans. Kang Taeson asked why such creatures would attack the Earth, but the ghost did not know the answer, only suggested that these creatures also had some limits to their strength. Kang Taeson thought that even if these powers had limits, the apostle sent to Earth was unable to defeat even Lee Ta-yeon. The player decided that he had learned enough, and he and the ghost continued their journey. They came to the place where the Phantom's enemy was hiding, the one who had once killed him in his sleep. Now, Kang Taeson had to defeat this enemy and the task would be completed. They came to a room where an ogre sage in simple clothes was sitting at a table and reading a book. Noticing the appearance of the guests, he greeted the warrior. The ogre sage told the ghost that he had been waiting for this day to come, but it had happened sooner than he had expected, and now he suggested they talk one last time. Kang Taeson watched this scene, and the ogre sage remarked that he would hardly be able to defeat this adventurer, but before he died, he wanted to satisfy his curiosity. The ogre said that the ghost had acted very arrogant and reckless in the past. He drew a short blade and said that the seekers of the gods had rejected the ghost, and the lost king had despised him. The ogre sage met the ghost when he was still a man, and the ogre was the only creature who listened to the arrogant youth. The ghost was cheerful and carefree, and the ogre sage believed that he himself was to blame for what happened. The ogre pointed his blade at the ghost and said that he was an adventurer back then, while he himself was only doing what he had to do as a monster of the labyrinth. The ghost trembled and demanded that Kang Taeson simply kill his enemy, but the player wanted to hear the story to the end. The ogre sage was surprised because he thought that Taeson was just a puppet under the warrior's control. He didn't expect him to be different. Kang Taeson came closer and asked where the ogre sage got his weapon. The ogre sage pulled his short sword aside. This weapon was very valuable and could not possibly end up in the hands of an ordinary monster on the 10th floor, and the ghost looked at it with a strange look. The ogre sage chuckled and said that he could see that it was the adventurer who had changed the warrior. He said that there were countless beings who hated the ghost's arrogance, and among them were not only gods, but also other travelers of the labyrinth. The ghost tried to stop him. The ogre sage revealed that he was given a weapon by the Sin Guides and ordered to kill the warrior. He had no choice but to accept it or die himself. The ghost, in a rage, began to call the ogre sage names. He continued to stand with his arms crossed over his chest and was completely calm. Kang Taeson remembered hearing about the Sin Guides from Lee Tae-young. The ogre sage explained that his employers were afraid to attack the warrior themselves because he was too strong for them to kill. They had to enlist the help of a monster, the ogre sage explained, and threw up his hands. He said that now they could do whatever they wanted, and Kang Taeson prepared to fight. He pointed the scarlet blade of Rakirada's sword at the ogre sage, who said that he had managed to survive in this place for quite a long time. Although he was weak, He took advantage of the loneliness that many people felt in the labyrinth and used his skill in oratory to build trusting relationships with others. Kang Taeson struck him, and the ogre sage said that strength was the answer to all questions in this place. He wished for Taeson to become so powerful that no one would dare touch him. Kang Taeson bowed and assured that he would become the strongest. The ogre's last words before dying were that he hoped the player would conquer this place and become the salvation for everyone. Kang Taeson felt that the creatures of the labyrinth were beginning to pay attention to him. There was both kindness and hostility in their looks. For defeating the giant sage, Kang Taeson received the Edge of Disaster, that same short blade. The ghost looked at his fallen enemy and said that he did not know whether to thank him or curse him. Then he said that he had to reward Kang Taeson first. The reward was an imperial relic, the blood-infused sword. The system revealed that the sword came from a world that was now destroyed, and that the blade had taken countless lives of the royal family. Kang Taeson looked at the new trophy, and the ghost advised him to accept this weapon because it has a very deep history. Even the forefather himself fell from it. The ghost was once again burning with anger, directed at those who had refused to conquer the labyrinth themselves, and then stood in the way of the warrior. The system informed Kang Taeson that after realizing the truth, the warrior was hungry for more revenge, his condition being to destroy everyone who was involved in his murder. Kang Taesong asked if Ghost would continue to accompany him, and Ghost replied that he wanted to see how far this player could go. Kang Taeson accepted the Ghost's mission. An unknown warrior in a hooded cloak watched this scene from a cliff overlooking the road along which the friends were walking. The warrior had long red hair and eyes that sparkled with fire, and sparks of fire seemed to swirl around his cloak. He said that he was going to see if there were any useful newcomers here. Half of the adventurers who were unable to overcome the labyrinth on their own joined forces and created their own group, which they called the Guides of Sin. They limited the number of floors that travelers could go through and created their own hierarchy and laws. The ghost became an adventurer who broke their rules and refused to be one of them, so he was killed. The boss of the 11th floor was a huge skeleton, and Kang Taesong dealt with him quite quickly. The player stood above the battlefield and spoke to the ghost, asking if there were any sin conduits on the floors below. The ghost explained that the leaders were on the deeper floors, and the rest, all those of lower rank, could be anywhere in the entire labyrinth. Kang Taeson put on the response bracelet and the ogre ring. In addition, he received the lion ring, which gives 3 points of damage in combat with the undead. The player said that in any case, the essence of the fact that they must move on does not change. The boss of the 12th floor was a half-decomposed ghoul. Kang Taeson fought him effortlessly, thinking that there were skeletons on the 11th floor, and that he encountered ghouls on the 12th. The theme of the labyrinth changed every 10 floors, with the main monsters from the 11th to the 20th floors being the dead. Kang Taeson walked down the hallway with tombstones, smelling the stench, but suddenly noticed something interesting. A cracked statue of a woman holding a scale was at the end of this path, identified by the system as the Altar of Mary. Kang Taeson thought that unlike the Altar of Rakaratas, this one looked quite simple. If the system hadn't told him about it, he wouldn't have even guessed that it was an altar. The player asked the ghost what he knew about Maria, and he replied that she was the goddess of choice. The ghost flew up to the statue and said that he and Taeson were in different conditions, so he could not tell about the test of this goddess. But he knew that among the gods, Maria was very strong. The ghost asked if Kang Taeson knew that strong gods were very fickle. And now the player looked at the statue's face thoughtfully. Kang Taeson didn't know if everything would be okay, but he no longer had time to be afraid or run away. He raised his hand to touch the altar. The player stood in front of the statue, reading the system's messages, which stated that Maria wanted to test the traveler who found her altar. Maria's area of influence was reduced so that the goddess could offer Kang Taeson an intensified test. Kang Taeson rubbed his eyes, surprised that he was immediately offered a stronger one, and the ghost assumed that rumors about Taeson had already spread among the gods. The player accepted the offer, and the system reported that Maria was laughing. Maria was given the choice of fighting many enemies or a small number of them. Kang Taeson looked at the scales. It was the first time he had encountered such a choice, but he assumed that he still wouldn't be able to guess the correct answer. He chose to answer honestly, choosing few enemies because he did not want the goddess to dislike him for pretending. The next choice offered a variety of enemies or multiple enemy types. Kang Taeson chose several types of enemies, and the system reported that Maria was satisfied with the choice. The scales in the statue's hands burst into flames. Fire and clouds of smoke spread throughout the room. Kang Taeson noted that the room was getting bigger. Many different monsters began to appear from the clouds of smoke. Among them were the already familiar goblins and markans, as well as those that Kang Taeson had not yet encountered. The flames defined the boundaries of the zone from which it was impossible to leave. The monsters surrounded it. The huge Markanda bird spread its wings, and a monstrous wolf headed towards the player. Kang Taeson activated breath-holding attack. The player took up both his swords, determined to take up the challenge thrown at him. The ghostly beast that accompanied the sword art of the cutting dawn came to his aid. Kang Taeson thought that this battle was completely different from all the types of fighting he preferred. The player managed to push the goblin away from himself. The skeleton in the purple cloak was in the second line of attackers and was creating some kind of magic. Purple glowing smoke was emanating from it. Kang Taeson used one of his new blades against this enemy. The blade pierced the skeleton's eye socket, and Kang Taeson understood something about this test. He stood among the enemies and thought that Maria wanted him to risk everything to win under the worst possible circumstances he could wish for. Kang Taeson has activated the testimony of struggle. Now he will become stronger with every enemy he defeats. Hordes of large rats rushed at the player. He did not go beyond the small area assigned to him, but he could repel enemy attacks with fire projectiles. Kang Taeson cut down with his blades those who came closer to him. The huge ogre was armed with a club the size of himself, but Kang Taeson could parry his blows. The player activated strong attack to deal with the enemy. Enemies attacked him from all sides. The skeleton's eyes lit up red as he used a staff with magical power. Kang Taeson fought off many opponents with great difficulty. At some point during the fight, one of the lizards hit the other with its tail. They suddenly found themselves fighting each other. Kang Taeson dodged their attack and managed to strike them down with a sudden blow. The player stood in a ring. Some of the enemies were already defeated. The multitude of still living opponents continued to approach in a crowd, reminding Taeson of a colony of ants. Kang Taeson shouted at the monsters to attack all of them. It was a very tough fight. At one point, Kang Taeson fell to his knees inside the circle in exhaustion. Most of his enemies were dealt with. The ring of flame that could not be crossed had not yet disappeared. Kang Taeson heard the approaching footsteps of the last enemy. It was a Death Knight. Completely clad in red armor, Lee Tae-yeon said that the boss of the 20th floor was like that. The knight wore a Rakarada's bell on his neck, an ornament not worn by normal monsters, and Kang Taeson guessed that this enemy might have once been a human. Suddenly, 3 more exactly the same Death Knight appeared next to one. Kang Taeson used the Sword of Sacrifice to restore the health he lost after a long battle. The Red Knights were approaching confidently. In order to deal with 4 such opponents at once, Kang Taeson had to activate parry. But in a fight like this, it wasn't enough. Kang Taeson activated Forced Duel. Now he had to fight only one enemy. This was his chance. Using Powerful Strike, Kang Taeson knocked the Death Knight back, causing him to end up outside the allowed area. The player had to resort to magic. He summoned the Blazing Sphere and the Ice Arrow. By adding magic acceleration to them, Taeson was able to unleash a blast of ice and flame on his enemies. The player saw that combining swordsmanship and magic could work, but using only one would be ineffective. The Death Knight raised his sword for a crushing blow. He plunged his sword into Kang Taeson's chest. The player grabbed the opponent's hand and activated Forced Duel again. Now he could try again to defeat only one Red Knight at first. Kang Taeson began the battle by holding his breath. With a powerful blow, he drove the blade into the knight's armor. It was a hard-won victory. Kang Taeson only had 1/10 of his health left, so he couldn't resort to this method anymore. The player thought that in a 3-on-1 fight he could no longer afford to take hits. It was very difficult to block the attack of all 3 at the same time. Kang Taeson delivered a sharp blow and continued to parry. He thought his attacks were too rough. He began using the Storm Scar's first sword, Wolf's Fang, again. Kang Taeson thought that all his movements up until now had been awkward and heavy. The player began to try to move more smoothly, but in such a way that the sword in his hand retained its lethality. Kang Taeson needed a little more effort. He watched the technique of the moves he performed. Eventually, he managed to defeat another opponent. The ghost watching the fight said that he had thought about teaching Taeson this, but he hadn't expected him to be able to do it on his own. The player has finished off the remaining 2 enemies. He asked the ghost what kind of sword technique it was. The ghost explained that it was the second sword of Storm Scar. It was called Dance of the Muse, and it silently destroyed the enemy, reducing the sharpness of the blow with optimal movement. Kang Taesang thought that it was the combination of opposing swordsmanship styles that caused confusion among the knights and greatly helped in the battle. The Ring of Fire changed to a shining one, and the system reported that Maria was very pleased with the traveler's honest choice and his achievements. Maria rewarded Kang Taeson with the shape transformation weapon and then offered him an apostle contract, which the player immediately refused. The ghost was surprised by what was happening. The scales in the statue's hands swung, one filled with radiance and the other with darkness, which spilled out of the bowl. Kang Taeson looked thoughtfully at the new system notification, which indicated that Maria was inviting him. But both selection keys meant to accept the invitation. Darkness surrounded the ghost and Kang Taeson. The player could choose only one and accept the deity's invitation. The world turned upside down. Ghost and Kang Taeson began to fall. They found themselves at the temple of the deities and now sat looking at the star-studded abyss above. Kang Taeson thought that this is what the emptiness of the universe looks like. The ghost trembled with fear and cried out that this was impossible. He did not understand how God could have arranged such an invitation, why Mary did this. They approached a light-colored building, the roof of which rested on many columns. Kang Taeson asked, "Is this the same place?" The ghost said that the player couldn't just enter, but Kang Taeson objected that he had to see such an outstanding figure. Kang Taeson walked through the endless corridors of the Temple of the Deities. Precious stones were scattered around the columns, reminiscent of a flower garden. Kang Taeson tilted his head back, but he couldn't see the ceiling. The columns seemed to go on forever. A huge female figure awaited him in this temple. The goddess bowed to the guests, golden hair covering her face. Kang Taeson could hardly believe that such a thing actually existed in the world. Mary, the goddess of choice, reclined on the floor of the temple and smiled at the visitors. She extended her hand to Kang Taeson and said that she greeted him. The system windows flashed around, talking about confused judgment, desperate judgment, mad judgment, and instant death sentence. The ghost made a strange coughing sound. Kang Taeson asked why the goddess was doing this to the guest she had invited. Maria smiled and pulled her hand away. The ghost exhaled and thanked her for taking pity. Maria said that a lot of water had flowed under the bridge since that unfortunate meeting. The ghost didn't answer but looked very confused. Mary said that she was a goddess who forced another choice on mortals who had done terrible things. Kang Taeson felt the enormous power emanating from the goddess. This power was on a completely different level compared to everything he had known before. Could there really be tens or hundreds of such creatures? The ghost asked Maria for permission to ask one question. He wanted to know if it was possible to invite mortals into the temple of a god. Mary replied that mortals may indeed not be able to bear the presence of a god, but the deities solved this problem from their side. Maria's finger touched the floor tiles next to the ghost, and the goddess said that she had not summoned him at the time for a very simple reason. Maria said that the ghost was not worthy of this. Kang Taeson asked if the goddess meant that he himself was worthy. Maria said she wanted to see Kang Taeson in person. She said that few people agreed to undergo her tests, and even fewer travelers were able to complete them, and no one had ever withstood the intense test before Kang Taeson. The player looked at Maria and asked what she would do if he deceived her in court. Maria said that in that case, she wouldn't like him. The goddess had shining blue eyes, but darkness flowed from them. Maria said that the ghost did exactly that in the past. Kang Taeson looked at the ghost, but he only laughed nervously. Mary touched Kang Taeson and asked if he really did not want to become her apostle. The goddess said that whatever her apostles desired was available to them, and they could descend into the labyrinth as her representatives. Maria said that no one would dare to say anything against Kang Taeson then. The goddess assured that she respected the traveler's choice, and Kang Taeson asked permission to ask one question. He asked how much Maria knew about him, and the goddess replied that she too was not here for the first time and understood that the Bezoar of Ouroboros had been used. She called Kang Taeson a poor child who was entangled in troubles and lost his way. The player did not understand what this meant. Maria said it was a disaster when someone was prevented from getting to where they rightfully should have been, and they were also tortured. Kang Taeson thought that the goddess might be referring to other modes of the labyrinth, and clearly knew something. Mary said that such stories demand a corresponding price, and she cannot speak of these things for no reason, but she can tell about them to someone who will become her apostle. Kang Taeson was deep in thought, and Maria said that the time had not yet come. He had to become stronger and go down to this place again. The meeting was over and trouble came, said the goddess. Maria suggested meeting again later and waved her hand. Kang Taeson and the ghost fell back into the dark void. Maria turned around, feeling the attention of someone familiar. Reality split red, and the goddess said that if the newcomer was angry, then in that case he himself should have made the first move. The return to the labyrinth was painful. Kang Taeson hit his back hard, falling onto the stone floor. Together with the ghost, they looked up in amazement, not understanding what it was. Kang Taeson wanted to know what happened to them. Before that, He thought that in the labyrinth it was enough to constantly increase his indicators. He planned to reach the previous level of Li Tae Yan, or Einzal, whose characteristics were even higher. The player realized that he had just encountered incredible power. Kang Tae-san looked at his own hand and thought that all the other labyrinth modes were fakes. If he can obtain everything that is possible in the real labyrinth, will he be able to stand against the gods? Due to Maria's invitation, Kang Tae-san was unable to collect the challenge reward. By activating freedom of choice, Kang Tae-san was able to increase some of his stats. He didn't find any more trophies in this place, but suddenly one thing caught his attention. It was a rose with rainbow petals, a gift from Mary that the goddess could give to the person she loved, but which currently had no effect. Kang Tae-san asked the ghost what it was, but he admitted that it was the first time he had seen something like this. The player thought that since the rose was given to him with good intentions, there was no harm to be expected from this gift. "Let's continue descending further," Kang Tae-san said to the ghost. Kang Tae-san defeated the boss of the 12th floor, the Rotten Ghoul, quite quickly. He thought that now the normal bosses were too easy for him, so he could no longer get decent rewards. Now there was no choice but to collect what was available. The 13th floor looked like an abandoned cemetery, where crosses and graves were lost in the fog. Hordes of zombies attacked Kang Tae-san with growls. They were too easy to deal with, too. The player was unaware that the man standing on the cliff was watching him. It was a red-haired warrior in a cloak with a hood. During the next fight, Kang Tae-san felt that there was someone nearby who was not a monster. Kang Tae-san saw a flash on the cliff. The red-haired warrior appeared next to Tae-san, as if he had jumped out of somewhere. The warrior grinned and asked if he saw a newcomer in front of him. Kang Tae-san saw that the stranger's level was 14 units higher than his own, and the warrior said that he was one of the Sin Guides. The warrior said he was glad to meet him. He took out a large horn and blew it. The monsters in the area heard the sound and began to approach. The warrior threw away the horn and turned to face his enemies. He stated that he doesn't like being interrupted, so he will take care of everything in advance. The warrior launched a swift attack. It was Rebeba's, the conductor of sin, and he was definitely strong. Kang Tae-san didn't understand why this guy was killing other people's monsters. The ghost said that this man was always afraid of him and ran away when he met him. Now Rebeba's didn't even look at the ghost. Back to back, Kang Tae-san and Rebeba's repelled the monster's advance. Rebeba's was cheerful and approved of the skills that Kang Tae-san demonstrated. Rebeba's declared that he would not lose. He activated a powerful strike and attacked the monsters. "Well, how do you like it?" he asked Kang Tae-san. Kang Tae-san found it strange that Rebeba's was so frivolous, that he was fighting with all his might on the 13th floor, while he was on level 42. Rebeba's decided that Kang Tae-san was very boring, but could be useful, so he looked for him in the area. Kang Tae-san thought that Rebeba's was acting as if he had already joined him. Rebeba's laughed and said that he had one request for Tae-san, and then invited him to join the Guides of Sin. The ghost said that Kang Tae-san can do whatever he wants. It should be his own choice. Rebeba's explained that in the labyrinth one can become infinitely stronger. It is a blessing. But to think about destroying this place, despite having already received so many favors, is something only ignorant fools can do. Rebeba said that he did not give up, but let himself go free, because the labyrinth was not meant to be cleared at all. The warrior said that the cursed gods of this place try to kill travelers during trials, as if they were their toys. Even in hidden places there are traps that are impossible to pass. And the ghost died from this. The ghost was indignant and said that he died because of the conductors of sin, and now Rebeba's was talking about it so easily. Rebeba said that the group of sin guides was created so that people would not die in vain and would become stronger safely. They create the law and manage the order in the labyrinth. The warrior noted that if Kang Tae-san decided to join them, he would have to abandon the ghost's mission, because the guides would not be able to accept someone who had broken the law and attack them. Kang Tae-sang said that he heard that sin conduits needed permission to even become stronger, and asked if that was true. He had to listen to the fact that this was a minimum safety measure, because the deeper you go, the more dangerous it becomes. Kang Tae-san drew his sword and said that even the magicians and superhumans who created this place gave it freedom, and a group of travelers creates laws. He pointed his sword at Rebeba's and declared that it was all just talk, and that there was no chance for him to accept the challenge. Kang Tae-san said outright that he didn't like the sin guides. Rebeba's replied that he had no idea what his interlocutor meant. The warrior's face darkened and he asked if Kang Tae-san would refuse his offer. Kang Tae-san said that he understood everything correctly. Rebeba's replied that he was very sorry. Kang Tae-san knew that the sin guides were looking for new members, and that those travelers who refused were killed before they became too strong. Rebeba's fiery power was very great. The warrior looked at Kang Tae-san, not quite understanding what was happening. Kang Tae-san effortlessly stopped Rebebus's strike. The player suggested that the enemy try to punish him for breaking the law, but he was not sure that the warrior would succeed. Kang Tae-san responded with a blow for a blow, and Rebebus flew back to the wall, not really understanding what had happened. Rebebus was sure that a simple adventurer from the 13th floor would not be able to defeat him. They crossed swords furiously. Kang Tae-san thought that his opponent had cleared the 20th floor. He was definitely not a weakling. He had raised his skill level through many hunts. Rebebus couldn't understand why he was being pushed aside so easily by the adventurer from the 13th floor. He wondered who Kang Tae-san really was. From one of the blows, Rebebus received 12 units of damage. Kang Tae-san noted that his opponent had a high defense stat, but his movements weren't particularly good. The ghost hovering over the fight said that Rebebus was a commoner and had never been trained in martial arts. He had nothing to offer in this labyrinth, and he could do nothing here. The enraged Rebebus shouted at the ghost and launched a new attack. The flame struck near Kang Tae-san, but he activated Reflect. Rebebus took 6 damage from his own attack. Kang Tae-san's own attack was more successful. Rebebus took another 6 points of damage and couldn't believe it. He wasn't sure if he had managed to hit Kang Tae-san. He assumed that Einshall, who had no regard for the Sin Guides, had given the skill to this traveler. "Who are you?" shouted Rebebus. A pillar of flame pierced the stone floor. Kang Tae-san asked his opponent to think about his answer on his own and continued to attack. He asked Rebebus if he himself was not a traveler. Rebebus thought that this fight could not continue like this, and he would have to use his secret weapon here. Rebebus was the owner of the Gauntlet of Explosion, an artifact that could only be used once a month. The warrior wanted to defeat Kang Tae-san with just one blow using the explosion glove enhanced with a special skill. Kang Tae-san activated nullification and received no damage. Rebebus could not believe his own eyes. He sat on the floor, and his enemy stood over him with a sword, and Rebebus wanted to know who he had really been fighting all this time. This adventurer looked like he had special powers. He seemed like a monster to Rebebus. At the end of the fight, the bloody warrior fell, leaning against the wall. The ghost said that this traveler was not so weak before, but he had not fought enemies that could compete with him, and his abilities had regressed. Rebebus asked whether Kang Tae-san would let him live if he answered his questions, but Kang Tae-san said no, which meant Rebebus had no reason to answer. The ghost from above asked if Rebebus knew what offerings they could make here to the superhumans. Rebebus's eyes widened in horror. He fell to his knees and began to beg for mercy. Now he was ready to answer all questions, just so long as they wouldn't give him to these creatures. Kang Tae-san did not understand why Rebebus was so afraid. He asked the warrior out loud how many people were in his group. Rebebus replied that he did not know exactly. He was only allowed to go down to the 20th floor, but the further he went down, the more people there were. Most of the adventurers agreed to join, so perhaps there were hundreds of Sin Guides, and only a few like Kang Tae-san and the ghost. Kang Tae-san asked if the number of floors one could go down to was limited. Then now that he had broken the law, would the guides from the lower floors come up for his head? Rebebus said that the labyrinth was divided into 10 floors. The 20th floor was on the 2nd tier, the 30th on the 3rd, and so on. Each level had its own absolute rules. The deeper the travelers descend, the more reluctant they are to return, because they feel that this will affect their dignity. No one will come up from the lower floors unless there is a need. Kang Tae-san noted that talk about dignity was nonsense, and Ghost added that it had always been like that since a long time ago. Everything revolved around a few strong people. Rebebus admitted that he knew nothing about the leaders from the lower floors, but there were a lot of people on the 2nd level. No matter how strong Kang Tae-san was, he couldn't handle them all. The warrior was puzzled to hear that Kang Tae-san didn't care about any of them. This adventurer's confidence matched his skill level. Once upon a time, Rebebus was like this man. He bravely fought monsters. The labyrinth's difficulty level gradually changed. Rebebus wondered if he had refused the offer of the Guides of Sin back then. Would he have been able to die more nobly? Kang Tae-san looked at him and said goodbye. He defeated Rebebus with one blow. The system has recorded an increase in morale. Kang Tae-san saw all of his stats increase noticeably. Increasing spirit power also increased strong attack mastery. Kang Tae-san was surprised by the incredible increase in stats. It's time to get into the chat and ask your buddies how far they've gotten. Kang Jun-hyuk and Lee Tae-young were visibly happy to see D-san and said that they had already passed the 3rd floor and were now entering the 4th. Lee Tae-young said that thanks to the glasses they received after returning to Earth, they did not encounter any serious problems. Kang Jun-hyuk said that those who are currently on easy mode are having a hard time because quite a lot of people died upon returning to Earth. Kang Taeson replied that nothing could be done about it and that everyone should get used to the fact that death is lurking nearby. Gum Joon-gun entered the chat and said that most of the people on hard mode survived the mission to return to Earth. Meeting Kang Taeson was a great incentive for them then. Everyone tried to become even stronger, and Gum Joon-gun guessed that Kang Taeson would notice many changes the next time they met. Kang Taeson smiled and said he was glad to hear that. Kang Joon-hyuk said that when he went up to the 4th floor, he found an altar of a god named Baltazar. Kang Taeson remembered how he himself had gone through the test of this deity, and what changes it had caused in the labyrinth. Kang Joon-hyuk wanted to hear advice on whether he should take the test. He wanted to take it seriously, and now he was asking Taeson's opinion. Kang Taeson assumed that Lee Tae-young would refuse such invitations even if she received them. But the girl said that she accepted the challenge this time. Lee Tae-young explained that she could no longer allow herself to be afraid, as Taeson had told her when they met, and that she would be braver from now on. Kang Taeson thought that the two people had changed a lot, and that Lee Tae-yeon was not like her previous life self, and he wondered if he was the reason. Kang Taeson said that their tests were different, so he didn't know which one they would get, but if they thought it through and made a decision, he wouldn't stop them. Kang Taeson said that they should meet again, alive, and close the chat. He asked the ghost if he had received a test from Baltazar in life. The ghost replied that, unlike Rakurata's test, it was easier and quite doable. Kang Taeson hoped that his friends would be okay and not die. The player took the gloves of explosion from Rebeba's body. Kang Taeson checked his stats and noticed that he had been steadily improving by defeating monsters until now. But this was the first time he had received such a powerful improvement. The ghost said that Rebeba's was at the lowest rank, but he was still a member of the Sin Guides, and Taeson defeated him. Kang Taeson and the ghost were confident that the rest of the Sin Guides would soon begin to act. Deep in the labyrinth, in the conference hall of the Sin Guides, there were two men in hooded cloaks. One told the other that there was trouble on the 2nd level and one adventurer had killed someone. The one sitting at the table struck fire from the tip of his finger and asked if the traveler from the 10th floor had killed the player from the 2nd level. He threw back his hood, revealing a clearly inhuman appearance and flames dancing in place of hair, and said that this traveler had a seductive talent, but since he chose to become an enemy of the Sin Guides, they had no choice. He wrote the order in fiery letters on special paper and ordered it to be distributed so that the rest of the 2nd level would kill this traveler. The 2nd level Sin Guides learned of Rebeba's death and speculated as to why someone had managed to defeat him. The bald man asked if the rest of them were going to do nothing further, or if they should show what they could do. He had an order to capture Kang Taeson. If they can kill this adventurer, they will advance to the 3rd rank. The Sin Guides were full of enthusiasm, each one wanting to kill the traveler himself. One of them said that if no one was going to give in, then it would be possible to determine who would get the task in the usual way. He took out a cube with many faces. The one who rolls the highest number on the dice will be the first to go on this hunt. Each conductor of Sin took turns rolling the dice. The winner was the one named Aldawata. At this time, Kang Taeson dealt with the crowd of zombies from the 13th floor. The ghost couldn't believe that the player had defeated the monsters that were supposed to be killed using traps instead of attacking directly, and he recognized Kang Taeson's exceptional strength. The friend's attention was drawn to a growl from the depths of the labyrinth. The warrior appeared before them, and the system reported that it was Aldawata from the 2nd level of the Conductors of Sin. The stranger grinned evilly and asked if this was the traveler who had defeated Rebeba's. Kang Taeson thoughtfully wondered what the warrior would do if that were the case. Aldawata growled that he would kill him, of course. He thought that the boy from the 10th floor would become easy prey, and then he himself would rise to the 3rd rank. Kang Taeson's hand in the explosion glove crashed into Aldawata's face. Aldawata flew into the wall with a loud scream. He became furious and quickly rose to continue the fight. The ghost remembered that the man was very noisy, but not particularly strong. Kang Taesong clarified whether his opponent was a member of the Sin Guides and noted that they had arrived faster than he expected. This opponent seemed more stupid and weaker than Rebeba's. Kang Taeson watched as he burned with rage. Aldawata scraped his claws across the floor and transformed into a huge wolf. Previously, Kang Taeson did not know that people were capable of transforming into animals. Aldawata growled that he acknowledged his enemy's strength, but now he would meet his end. Kang Taeson replied that Aldawata had good strength of spirit, but he was too slow. The player used his magical power against Aldawata. Having received the blow, the wolf howled, opening its mouth wide. The ghost watched in triumph as the enemy collapsed in convulsions. Kang Taeson said that there was no point in getting in his way. The transparent crystal that the Sin Guides kept in a special room attracted people's attention. The crystal smoked and went out. The conductors of Sin said that it was the fire of Aldawada's soul. Now that they knew that Aldawada was dead, they assumed that he was killed because he was unable to transform and was incapable of anything in human form. Giuseppe, a man who walked the path of magic, was going to be the next one to go after Kang Taeson, and he was not going to let his guard down. He was amazed at how easily Kang Taeson threw him into the wall. He asked why the traveler attacked him without warning, but Kang Taeson pointed out that Giuseppe was here to kill him, so there was no point in waiting. To repel the next attack, Giuseppe activated a magic shield. Kang Taeson was curious to see how Giuseppe had created a grid from the energy lines that blocked the blows. Giuseppe activated the madness, but Kang Taeson dispelled it with the help of the indomitable spirit. Giuseppe wondered if the man who had repelled the mental attack simply by using his spirit could have defeated Rababas and Aldawada for more than just luck. The next magic technique that the Sin Conductor used was one that allowed him to restrict the enemy's movements. Giuseppe activated Ice Arrow. Kang Taeson did the same and also chose the Ice Arrow. Giuseppe did not expect such an answer. The adventurer's Ice Arrow shot down the Sin Guide's arrow in midair. Giuseppe thought that even the magic tower recognized his own talent, but a mere newbie had a higher level of magic. Giuseppe activated Lightning Strike. A bright flash illuminated the room where the battle was taking place. Giuseppe was confident that he had now managed to hit his enemy. Kang Taeson activated Nullify and took no damage. Giuseppe didn't understand what was going on at all. The Sin Guide was horrified. He sank to the floor and dropped his staff, pressing himself against the wall. In the room of the Sin Guides, another soul stone went out. The people gathered there assumed that he died because he used magic incorrectly. The next contender to capture Kang Taeson suggested that the ghost warrior who accompanies the newcomer gave him some advice. After some time, in the room of the Sin Guides, they admired the third extinguished soul stone. The fourth hunter did not expect that it would be his turn, but he readily set out to carry out the task. His extinguished soul stone no longer seemed like a coincidence to anyone, and they thought that they were not obliged to go alone at all, and that the 5 of them would definitely deal with the enemy. Their 5 stones all went out at the same time. It had only been 2 hours since they had gone hunting. The next guy didn't want to go on this mission because he thought something was wrong. The difference in strength between travelers on the 13th and 20th floors was about the same as between a small child and an adult. But a newbie was still able to kill half of the second-level Sin Guides. The extinguished soul stones lying in several rows on the table were proof of this. One of the remaining guides thought that he himself had been initially forced to join the group under threat of death. He suggested leaving this newcomer alone, hiding and waiting it out. Another Sin Guide grinned and reported that the others had not changed one bit. Demon Zagan appeared from the 3rd level of the labyrinth and said that they could not move from the 2nd level because they continued to behave as before. The cautious Sin Guide thought that the 3rd-rank creatures might have stayed on their 30th floor, but this one kept going up and annoying everyone. Demon Zagan assessed that only half of the group members were present and asked where the rest were. They told him that everyone had recently moved to another floor. Zagan smiled at these words. He dealt a magical blow to the speaker, declaring that he did not dare to lie so brazenly. The blow that the Sin Conductor received was quite powerful. He replied that everyone else was dead, and Zagan dismissively asked if half of the level 2 guides had died because of someone from the 13th floor. Zagan said that he came here just like that, but now everything had changed. He was going to prove his strength by killing this newbie. He ordered the level 2 guides to take him to Kang Taeson so that he could avenge them. If they did not agree, he would simply kill them all. Kang Taeson finished the battle, blood still dripping from his sword, and said that the assassins were flocking to him like moths to a flame. The player said the last 5 threw their pride aside and tried to attack him all at once. He looked at them and thought that this decision was too late. These people had high defense, but they had never fought together before, so a coordinated attack did not work. Kang Taeson was happy to be able to increase his stats just by killing one of them. He had already gained 11 levels. One of the new skills was the particle dispersion magic, which caused a huge amount of ice particles to collide with each other and disperse. It was a profitable skill, and Kang Taeson was pleased. Both friends believed that the Sin Guides were now finished, since they must have realized that they were not able to deal with Kang Taeson. With surprise, Kang Taeson saw Demon Zagan and a crowd of Sin Guides standing at the door. The ghost chuckled, recognizing Zagan, and Kang Taeson felt that the demon was different in power from all those who had been sent as the conductor of Sin before. Demon Zagan bowed his horned head and looked at Kang Taeson, noting out loud that he was the one who defeated the 2nd-rank travelers. Zagan looked at the player in deep thought. The demon said that Kang Taeson's strength surpassed the 20th floor. He couldn't believe that it could be obtained on just the 13th floor. Zagan asked Kang Taeson if he was a dragon. Kang Taeson was very surprised by this question, because the dragon was rumored to be a species that could even split dimensions. No one dared to touch this species unless they were high-level demons. Even the weakest dragon cannot be defeated unless it has reached at least the 40th floor. Kang Taeson cheerfully asked Zagan what he would do if he was a dragon after all. The demon bowed and said that if he had indeed met one of the dragons, he had no intention of stopping him, and that the adventurer should continue on his way. The Sin guides watching this scene were outraged that everything ended so easily, because Zagan walked here very confidently. The ghost could no longer hold back his laughter. He stated that his enemies had once again shown themselves at their worst, and Kang Taesong asked him if dragons were really that strong. The ghost replied that they were ancient creatures comparable to gods, and Zagan's face twisted with anger. Darkness rose from his hands. The demon exclaimed that the traveler did not dare lie to him. Zagan activated Decaravia's distorted vegetation. The tree roots, which looked like giant tentacles, headed towards Kang Taeson. They wrapped around his arms and legs. The player had never seen such magic before. He decided to deal with them using fire magic. Zagan saw that his opponent used Blaze Ball, but he believed that his opponent could do anything. It wouldn't change anything. The demon summoned the spirit of the Raven of Decaravia. Enormous figures of monstrous birds created from darkness attacked Kang Taeson. The player waited for their attack, holding a sword in each hand. He shot down dark birds in flight using both hands. There were too many enemies. Even the first sword's ghost wolves couldn't help defeat them all. The ghost exclaimed that Taeson was using the magic of a deity, which was clearly different from the magic created by demons. Zagan demanded that the ghost stop interfering. This was a battle between just the two of them. The ghost said that the demon didn't have to worry. He wasn't going to interfere. Zagan suggested that the ghost easily agreed not to help his companion because they were not on very good terms. This was only to the demon's advantage, and he activated the false flame of Marcosia. A swirling spiral of dark fire emanated from Zagan's hands, consuming everything around him. Kang Taeson activated Ice Arrow, but for the first time, the energy from this skill did not work. The player frowned and activated Nullification. Zagan was surprised that such a skill existed, but it didn't matter to him. Kang Taeson received 24 points of damage. The demon's next blow took away 36 units of health from the player. The demon thought that he could win and used Neberos's despair. Dark magic that affected the deep mind enveloped Kang Taeson. Zagan watched the enemy from the side and reported that this was the end. Kang Taeson had never been in this state during psychological attacks before. He pressed his palms to his ears. The ghost said that black magic is difficult to understand, and those who encounter it for the first time can hardly resist it. He hoped that things would be different with Taeson. He called out to his friend, as if he were imprisoned in a dark sphere. Kang Taeson pulled himself together and grabbed the sword. He said that this was a good experience. He could also learn dark magic. Zagan saw that his mental attack was reflected, and the enemy used only his spirit to do this. The crows of Decaravia flew again towards the invincible adventurer. The raven spirits of Decaravia were weak individually, but now there were too many of them. Kang Taeson activated Reflection, surrounding himself with a golden glow of power. The Reflection skill created a dome of energy around its owner that repelled all attacks aimed at him. Zagan was amazed that his opponent had already figured out how to counter his attacks. Kang Taeson deflected the dark flame that the demon sent at him with a swing of his sword. The player thought that such a flame should have melted him, but he only got a little burned. Kang Taeson touched this flame and had a strange feeling that it was just a substance in the form of fire. Zagan called Taeson a worthless boy and activated Decaravia's distorted vegetation again. Kang Taeson suggested that the principle of demon magic was the same. The roots only emerged from the cracks in the darkness, and Kang Taeson could predict and warn of their movements. This time, the demon managed to create a trap from the intertwining tree trunks, but Kang Taeson managed to dodge them all and remain unharmed. Zagan asked how the player was able to dodge them all, and Taeson replied that it was easy, then lit a glowing sphere on his palm. The ghost noticed that this was exactly what he expected. Kang Taeson understood the essence of the skill and used his findings. The fight continued, the opponents dealing blow after blow to each other. The ghost thought that this traveler was able to deal with the black magic that he saw for the first time. This was Taeson's strongest point. The ghost thought that this was how Kang Taeson learned elementary-level magic. Then he found out that the sword movements in the Stormscar technique were very sharp, so he removed this and obtained the second sword mastery. The ghost realized that Taeson had a talent for grasping the essence of something, even if he saw it for the first time. But he didn't know if it was right to call it a talent. Kang Tyson ended the fight, and the demon Zagan fell against the same wall as his predecessors. This is Tesson's own way, the ghost thought. Zagan looked at his winner. Kang Tyson said that he wanted to know about black magic and what he needed to do to learn it. Zagan replied that dark magic is used together with demonic energy and mana. It is possible to study it. Previously, demonic energy was only possessed by the Zagan race. But here in the labyrinth, it can be obtained by fulfilling a condition. They needed to find the demon goddess who had once abandoned them. Zagan said that this deity loves strong creatures. To please her, you need to pass all her tests. Kang Taeson turned to Ghost to ask where this demon goddess might be. Ghost believed that it was not far from here. Zagan asked that his death not be used as an offering to the goddess. He wanted complete non-existence. Kang Tyson agreed to this condition and struck the demon with his sword. The system reported that the player has obtained the entry-level dark magic, Marcosius False Flame. This magic caused a flame-like substance to form, but Kang Taeson couldn't use it until he obtained demonic energy. Now Kang Taeson could address those sin conductors who were hiding in fear behind the door of the hall where the battle was taking place. Only when he promised to pull them all out and kill them one by one did the crowd approach hesitantly. The one who led this group asked Taeson what he wanted from them. The player directly said that he needed experience, characteristics. He initially planned to kill them all, but at his current level this could no longer bring him much benefit. The sin guides were visibly frightened, and Kang Taeson asked if they wanted to stay alive. In exchange for their lives, the player ordered that the other conduits of sin not be told that he was alive. They didn't believe that they were being asked to lie to their superiors, but Kang Taeson told them to say that he had died at the hands of hunters. He suggested that they mix lies with the truth, so that it would look like he died in a fight with someone from the 30th floor. He knew that many had joined the sin guides against their will, and now they did not want to die, and so they agreed to his offer. Kang Taeson asked the ghost if he minded, and he replied that he was not killed by an ordinary person, so he didn't care. The ghost wanted to know who exactly ordered his death. They told him that it was better not to know anything about the person who ordered the murder, but the ghost objected that he would decide for himself and ordered him to speak faster. Then, the leader of the group said that this enemy, who inherited the lineage of the Cursed Kingdom, was the Woman of Dust, Societa Gardenia. The ghost seemed to be struck by lightning. The ghost remembered the forest, the sunlit clearing, the girl next to whom she herself was sitting, still in human form. This girl held his hand and looked into his eyes. Kang Taeson let go of the dream guides and decided to visit the chat, where he immediately met Kang Jun-hyuk, who was noisily rejoicing over his victories. Lee Tae-yeon was also there. She couldn't believe that they both passed Baltazar's test. The girl said that during the test she had to face her greatest fear, a huge spider. Kang Jun-hyuk fought with an elephant, and Lee Tae-young was very surprised that the guy was afraid of elephants. Kang Taeson thought that such a test of courage was worthy of the god of victory. He was curious to know what would appear before him. Kang Jun-hyuk understood why Kang Taesung had advised them to take the divine trial, because the difference in the rewards for winning was so big. Kang Taesun closed the chat and turned to Ghost, stating that it was time to talk. The Ghost tried to avoid the conversation, but Taesun said that he didn't want the mission he worked so hard on to fail because of one participant's regrets. Kang Taesun looked at the Ghost carefully and he, lowering his head, began his story. The Ghost reminded that he came to the labyrinth from a destroyed world in which only monsters remained. And here, he met a girl. She was the only person the Ghost could communicate with. They felt a kinship because they had similar fates. Now the Ghost would like to know why she ordered him to be killed. He assured Taesun that nothing would change in their mission. Kang Taesun agreed that this was enough. They cleared the 14th floor of the labyrinth. Then Kang Taesun rid the 15th floor of the skeleton army. Before entering the 16th floor, the friends met an excited Lilith. Kang Taesun told the sorceress that there was almost nothing he could do to increase his level. He had no choice but to come here and bring some new magic items. Having received the trophies, Lilith took out her staff and called upon the deity. Kang Taesun was able to learn basic magic and now had mastered invisibility and slowing spells. Lilith admitted that this is the first time she has seen slow magic, so she doesn't know how it works. The girl suggested that Taesun practice on her. The player used his new skill on her and concluded that the slowdown was about 20%. Lilith said that it was time to dispel the spell, but Taesun didn't know how to do it. Lilith was very afraid that she would now remain enchanted forever. As they went further down into the labyrinth, Kang Taesun and the Ghost talked about how they now knew that the spell lasted for 10 minutes and then dissipated on its own. The friends entered the 16th floor of the labyrinth. The Sin guides warned Kang Taeson that there was a room on the 16th floor where he could meet a blacksmith. The player needed exactly this door, and he easily found it. Opening it, Kang Taeson found himself at the threshold of the forge. A strong man in a leather apron turned from the anvil he was working on. It was the dreamsmith, Kofrun. In her past life, Lee Tae-young said that she met a blacksmith who exorcised dreams named Hafran. The girl described him as a cold and unemotional person who always saw her only as a business partner. Due to the disdain and insults she received from the other characters in the labyrinth, Lee Tae-young was grateful for his treatment. Kofrun asked Kang Taeson if he knew what he was doing. He added that local monsters can drop two things: equipment and materials. Kofrun said that from the materials the travelers give him, he can create any equipment they want, and for the first time he is willing to work for free. Then Kofrun greeted the ghost, whom he had last met when he was still alive.